The story begins with the final thought of Takuto Ira, who believes he is dead. After spending his days fighting illness for years only to die at 18 seems tragic, but he has accepted his fate with grace. As his consciousness starts to fade into darkness, Takuto realizes, so this is death. But suddenly he feels his finger brush against something, maybe a stone, and then he catches the scent of grass and hears the rustling of leaves. When he opens his eyes, he finds himself sitting on a stone throne in the middle of a forest. Takuto thinks this must be the afterlife. He takes a deep breath and remarks that the air feels so fresh. Just then, a mysterious girl appears and asks him if he has woken up. Takuto is shocked to see the person standing in front of him. He cannot help but notice her uncanny resemblance to someone he knows and calls her Atu. In response, she regards him with respect, addressing him as her king. Takuto can hardly believe it, as Atu is a character from a nation management simulation game called The Eternal Nation, where she is one of the hero units. The game is turn-based, allowing players to control a variety of species and nations in their quest to conquer a fantasy world. Each game can take over 10 hours, which made it perfect for Takuto during his life. Abandoned by his parents and spending his days undergoing tests and treatments, he became deeply absorbed in the game, finding solace in it. Eventually, he climbed to the top of the rankings, earning a reputation as a legendary player. He died feeling that he had left a small mark on the world, all thanks to a character named Atu. However, Takuto cannot understand why Atu is standing in front of him now. Seeing his confusion, Atu laughs gently and asks him to calm down. She explains that he is the first person to have ever completed the game on Nightmare difficulty, a setting in the Managra civilization of ruin, said to be the most challenging of all. Known as a legendary player even among the game's developers, Takuto is amazed and asks how she could know all this. She admits that she remembers everything, the way he spoke to her, the countless times they conquered the world together, and even their many defeats. She assures him that she has never forgotten him. Hearing this makes Takuto a bit emotional, and he tells her that he made it a rule to use Atu whenever he played because his body was weak. Perhaps, he thought, he wanted to be more like her. Atu responds warmly, saying that she is grateful to be able to speak with him like this. Still, Takuto struggles to understand where he is and asks Atu if he's in heaven, or if she somehow summoned him here. However, it seems that Atu is also uncertain, as she too suddenly found herself in this place. It's not exactly heaven, she says thoughtfully. If anything, it feels more like the world of eternal nations. Takuto is surprised to hear about an unknown world. Atu acknowledges that it might sound cliché, but respectfully suggests that Takuto start a new life in that place with her. Although shocked by her offer, he expresses his concern that they don't know where they are, whether it is a game world or perhaps something else. But Atu suggests just like before they should build their kingdom in this unfamiliar world. Takuto contemplates the offer, considering the possibilities now that he has regained full mobility. Desiring to test his newfound agility, he proposes that they build their own kingdom just for the two of them. She readily accepts and says that she is Atu the Sludge, the world-ending bastard child of the mire. A system message appears, announcing that the new game has begun with Takuto as the player, the civilization as Manogra, and the alignment set to evil. However, the game's difficulty level remains uncertain. Both Takuto and Atu feel a sense of embarrassment as they formally embark on this new adventure, but agree that it's for the best. Takuto asks Atu if she remembers the objectives for their evil nation of Minogra: to lead the world toward destruction. The first step is clear. Those familiar with the game know that only one person has ever cleared it with this particular civilization, using a secretive playstyle that requires adopting a secluded lifestyle. Despite Minogra being labeled the most evil nation, its civilization trait specializes in internal administration, giving it a combat handicap. It stands as a super-specialized country focused primarily on domestic affairs. Suddenly, a massive dark shadow materializes in the distant forest of the Dark Continent, in the Cursed Lands. This looming presence serves as an omen of impending disaster, raising questions about its sudden manifestation. A mysterious figure appears before the shadow, addressing it as Your Holiness, and announcing that the time has finally arrived. In response, the shadow refers to the figure as a cardinal, and expresses a desire to discuss an important matter. Meanwhile, Takuto and Atu observe with a mixture of shock and fascination as they summon a long-legged insect from the scout unit using mana. Although both are familiar with its 3D model from the game, seeing the creature in reality proves unsettling. Unsure of what to do next, Takuto instructs the bug to scout the surrounding area and avoid encounters with other creatures if possible, all in the name of glorious Minogra. The bug complies obediently and departs. Initially uneasy, Atu soon understands that the creature's main purpose is to follow commands from unit leaders. Takuto is even able to share its vision to some extent, allowing for smoother scouting. Atu inquires about Takuto's remaining mana. He informs her that he began with 200, and after summoning the bug, he now has 100 left. Though he possesses the ability to create almost anything if he has sufficient mana, emergency production is costly and unwise at this stage. Understanding their surroundings is crucial, but wasting resources is not an option. Atu pledges her commitment to doing her best as a militia unit, although her strength as a hero unit will grow over time. Currently, her combat power is only 3, meaning an encounter with a level 5 enemy could prove overwhelming. Her gradual power increase is one of the reasons why Minagra is challenging to play. The high difficulty level of this world is an inherent feature. The bug continues to scout the area, providing Takuto with a comprehensive view of the terrain, which is predominantly covered in vast forests. He assumes the forest is extensive, and Atu confirms that they haven't encountered any food icons or other creatures such as animals or monsters. Forest terrains typically offer concealment, making them advantageous for Takuto and Atu. However, the lack of wildlife strikes them as unusual. Despite this, they decide to continue their exploration a little longer. Atu feels somewhat inadequate for not being more useful, but Takuto reassures her that her presence alone is enough, making her feel deeply appreciated. Observing his thoughtful expression, she wonders if her endearing behavior was always part of her personality or if it developed over time. Suddenly, communication from the bug arrives, and Takuto shares its vision with Atu. Together, they discover a dark elf settlement, confirming that they are indeed in a fantasy world. Dark elves are generally neutral, though they tend to lean slightly toward evil, which brings Takuto and Atu some relief. Atu, however, warns that these could be lawful dark elves, and if they belong to another nation, the proximity could spell trouble. Being so close to another civilization this early on could have unfavorable consequences. They resolve to gather more information about the dark elves before taking any action. But suddenly their eyes widen in shock and confusion as they realize that some dark elves have already discovered them. The elves have reached here through the vast and untamed forest, forcing them to grapple with the harsh realities of survival. The majority of the group is on the brink of death, including the children, whom they had prioritized in their allocation of resources. Captain Gia contemplates the dire situation, firmly believing they cannot sustain their travel in this manner. As he reflects on their predicament, a voice calls out to him from behind. It is Moltar, an elder among them. Gia, acknowledging his presence, asserts that despite any advice, their problems persist. Moltar, with a heavy heart, expresses his understanding. However, he implores Gia to listen before they proceed. Understanding the gravity of their situation, he warns Gia that the cursed forest stretches along the periphery of these unexplored lands. While the forest seems lush and full of life, Moltar cautions him that a dangerous force lies hidden deep within. This evil presence fills him with fear. Gia, taken aback, inquires about the nature of this evil entity. However, Moltar remains silent, not sharing details, but stressing the need to be careful in the woods. Despite the ominous warning, the desperate situation of his starving people forces Gia to make a tough choice. Refusing to compromise on his people's survival, he recognizes the seriousness of their plight. To avoid imminent death, he decides to search every part of the forest for food. Although he acknowledges the strange nature of the forest, Gia dismisses Moltar's concerns, attributing them to mere superstition. Driven by the urgent need for food, the group presses on. Now standing before Takuto and Atu, Gia's attention is drawn to Takuto, whom he perceives as a completely dark spirit shadow, an embodiment of evil in human form. He contemplates whether this might be a manifestation of malevolence, as he is unable to see beyond the shadow. Aware that his decisions may shape the destiny of his entire race, Gia understands the gravity of the situation. With the weight of responsibility upon him, he recognizes the importance of carefully choosing his words and actions. In a show of respect, he bows before Takuto and introduces himself as a dark elf of the Mazaram clan and the captain of the Dark Elves, Gia Nagiv. Respectfully, he addresses Takuto as a noble being and offers his sincere apologies for entering his forest without permission. Atu interjects, questioning Gia's understanding of the gravity of trespassing into a foreign land and labeling it a sin. She presses him for any specific excuse or reason justifying this transgression. Gia, recognizing the need for careful explanation, shares the story of his clan, the Dark Elf Mazaram. He describes how they once inhabited a land at the center of the Adragia continent. Considering the possible threat posed by Atu, who seems to have a close connection with the dark spirit shadow, Gia speaks slowly and carefully in an attempt to soothe her. However, his approach has the opposite effect, as Atu impatiently demands a brief explanation. Fearing the consequences, Gia and the others grow visibly anxious. He quickly explains that they were persecuted and driven from their homeland, with no place else to turn, which led them to seek refuge in the forest. Regret washes over Gia as he realizes that his detailed explanation may not have effectively conveyed their situation. Takuto, appearing disinterested, gives no indication of wanting to hear the full story. Suddenly, to everyone's surprise, Takuto speaks, questioning how they all became so weak. This unexpected development leaves them all taken aback, as they hadn't anticipated his ability to communicate. In response, Gia explains that their persecution was severe, forcing them to flee to this unfamiliar land. Seeking refuge, they sheltered in one place but eventually ran out of supplies. During their journey, desperate and starving, they ventured into the forest in search of food, only to come up empty-handed. Frustration seizes Gia once more, as he realizes that he may have given too much detail, deviating from a direct answer to their questions. Continuing, he reveals the extent of their plight. They had gone several days without any sustenance. The desperation to survive had led them to bow their heads and seek mercy. Yet, Jia cannot shake the ominous feeling that, even after begging, they might face punishment from the dark spirit. All he wishes for is the happiness and peace of his clan. He questions himself, wondering whether the desire to survive is truly a sinful act. The situation grows increasingly complex with each passing moment. Unexpectedly, Takuto drops an apple in front of Jia, with a surprising twist. Takuto informs them that it pairs well with rabbit. The elves, unfamiliar with such a fruit, marvel at the sight of the apple. It is an entirely unknown delicacy, emanating a sweet aroma and possessing a weighty moisture that captivates their senses. He generously provides more apples, and the elves, tasting the fruit, are enchanted by its sweet flavor and freshness. Jia, however, admonishes them for consuming the apples carelessly. To their surprise, Takuto extends his generosity further, offering them pears. The elves, especially Jia, are astonished by the sight of this unfamiliar fruit. Atu encourages Jia to accept the gift from the king, emphasizing its significance. While the other elves eagerly partake in the feast, Jia, still able to move despite his hunger, selflessly implores Takuto to give the fruits to their starving children. The women and children of their clan, weakened by hunger, are in desperate need. Jia pleads for this benevolent offering to be bestowed upon the hungry children of his clan. In silence, Takuto gazes upon the elves with a somber expression. In a secluded part of the forest, a dark elf mother sits beneath a tree, cradling her child in her lap with a tearful gaze. She sings a lullaby, coaxing her little one to sleep and reassuring him not to be afraid. Just as the child begins to drift off, Jia arrives, urging them not to sleep yet. He presents them with freshly mashed fruits brought by the other men, who have also arrived. With gratitude in her eyes, the mother feeds the mashed fruits to her child, and the little one finally opens his eyes. The group expresses their heartfelt thanks to Jia for saving their lives. They collectively prepare the food and eagerly partake, their faces radiating happiness despite their impoverished state as they savor the nourishing meal. The night spreads its wings overhead. Jia's assistant informs him about the last sack of fruits, and a wave of relief washes over him as he beholds the abundance of provisions before him. She expresses gratitude for the life-saving bounty. However, Moltar, upon hearing the full story, cautions Jia that Takuto might not have acted out of pure benevolence, emphasizing that he likely expects something in return. Moltar advises Jia not to use respectful words for Takuto. Jia, feeling a surge of anger, defends his choice, highlighting that Takuto was their only hope to save his people from hunger. Despite the potential ulterior motives, Takuto's aid has provided sustenance, allowing their people to sleep peacefully. Jia urges them to focus on the fact that their desperate situation has been alleviated, even if Takuto is perceived as an enigmatic and potentially malevolent being. Sorrowfully, Jia bows his head, seeking an answer from Moltar about what else he could have done in that challenging situation. Meanwhile, Atu expresses anger at Takuto for utilizing all their mana to create the fruits. Takuto, in response, explains that their story had moved him, and he felt compelled to help, fearing it might not be sufficient for their survival. Back in the forest, Atu remains speechless. She eventually diverts Takuto's attention towards the mana. The dark elves return, bowing before him, and despite his attempts to stop them, he produces more fruits, employing an emergency production policy. With this command, he generates enough sustenance to feed everyone for an extended period. Atu tries to stop him, but it doesn't work. The dark elves are in awe, regard him as a great being, and express their gratitude for his kindness. As Takuto tries to explain things to Atu, he notices that she appears deeply offended. It dawned on him that he should have been more careful with how he used his mana. Takuto asks Atu for help with a crucial task, something he cannot manage without her assistance. Realizing her mistake as a vassal, she sincerely apologizes to her king for any unintended offense, and joyfully assures him that producing enough food shouldn't be a problem. Curious about the specific assistance Takuto needs, she asks him directly. In response, he shares his difficulty in communicating effectively with the Dark Elves during their last encounter. Understanding the situation, Atu mentions that he played the role of a strong king who values brevity and dislikes excessive talk. According to her, Takuto's behavior was spot on during their interaction with the Dark Elves, and even if his communication wasn't perfect, she sees no issue with it. As Takuto grapples with the feeling of having a communication disorder, memories of past struggles flood his mind. Overwhelmed, he recalls all the times he faced difficulties due to his communication challenges. Witnessing his distress, she kindly reassures him, urging him not to cry. She empathetically tells him that it's okay to make mistakes and suggests seeking guidance from his trusted allies. Expressing concern, she attempts to comfort him, assuring him that in the game, he can overcome any obstacle with the right combination of wealth and military power. However, their conversation takes an unexpected turn as a bug suddenly appears and begins screaming. Despite Atu's scolding, it turns out that Takuto had unintentionally invited the bug back to their base. In the midst of this chaos, Takuto experiences a vision and realizes that the Dark Elves are returning to him. The unfolding events add another layer of excitement and intrigue to the situation. Facing the arrival of the Dark Elves, Takuto assumes they might be here to claim the remaining food. Uncertain about how to handle the situation, he contemplates asking them to leave. Feeling the weight of his difficulty in effective communication, His uncertainty lingers as he struggles with both expressing himself clearly and negotiating with the Dark Elves. However, Atu steps in with a solid plan, fully taking responsibility for it. Yet the unexpected happens. Moltar, the elder Dark Elf, expresses his respect towards Takuto. He conveys their gratitude for the help they received and compliments the deliciousness of the food. Identifying himself as the leader of the Dark Elf clan, he admits that he has more to share. Sensing this, Atu encourages him to speak candidly in front of Takuto, emphasizing the importance of open and honest dialogue. While finding pleasure in portraying a strong and cruel role, Takuto remains uncertain about her intentions. Meanwhile, Moltar takes a moment to apologize for the rude behavior of his fellow Dark Elves. Expressing gratitude, he acknowledges Takuto's generosity in providing much-needed supplies and attributes their unsightly behavior to the overwhelming presence of such a great being before them. He assures Takuto that small issues won't be a problem in the presence of a mighty king like him. Expressing the collective regret of his entire race for their minor misbehavior, he humbly asks for Takuto's name, recognizing him as a significant figure worthy of respect. Takuto realizes he hadn't told anyone his name during their last meeting, but Atu takes the chance to announce, in a loud voice, that he is the ruler of ruins, the king of the apocalypse. She stresses how crucial it is to remember his name and insists that the Dark Elves always speak to him with honor. Moltar then steps forward to thank Takuto, recognizing how much he helped their tribe. Atu introduces herself as well, making it clear that no one should call her by her title. Moltar promises that his people will never forget Takuto's name, seeing him as the hero who rescued them. Even though things went well, Takuto can tell Atu is still set on sticking to her role. She instructs the Dark Elves to take the food before it spoils and leave. Her attempt to conclude the meeting is interrupted by Moltar, who requests guidance on how they can repay her kindness. In response, Atu challenges him to promise something that would genuinely satisfy the king. Moltar admits they lack ideas on what they can offer. Despite their uncertainty, Atu refuses to accept anything if they cannot come up with a meaningful gesture. Takuto, observing the exchange, wonders if he has grown bored with the situation. He hopes to peacefully conclude the meeting. However, Moltar persists in wanting to give something in gratitude. Atu, repeatedly declining, questions his intentions and wonders if he is plotting something. Takuto, silently urging her to stop, gives her a meaningful look. Despite wearing a smile, he's well aware that the situation is taking a turn for the worse, and he is eager to halt Atu's actions immediately. Atu discreetly remarks that the Dark Elves aren't skilled negotiators. Takuto, with a smile on his face, refrains from pointing out his own communication shortcomings. However, he senses her growing concern that allowing the Dark Elves to leave might pose a future threat. She even considers the extreme option of eliminating them. Trying to bring a more positive perspective, Takuto explains to Atu that perhaps the Dark Elves are seeking a mutually beneficial agreement. As it stands, simply surviving this encounter won't solve the issue. They still lack a secure place to stay, and it's not possible for them to continue such a miserable existence. Being evil-aligned, Takuto fears the Dark Elves might already be suspicious of them. To avoid making things worse, he decides to help Moltar, but with a condition. He would ask for something in return. Excited to hear his proposal, Takuto looks forward to the conversation. Atu points out that the Dark Elves consider Takuto some kind of evil dark spirit, startling Moltar, who denies it. Atu instructs him to be silent and informs him that the king has decided to receive tributes in exchange for offerings. She asks if they are now relieved. Atu requests something of equal value in return, and not sure what that could be. Takuto suggests asking the Dark Elves for information about the outside world. Moltar agrees to the deal and proceeds to share everything he knows about the world. Atu sees this as a beneficial exchange. Takuto has two reasons for not wanting the Dark Elves to stay in the forest. Firstly, their race belongs to another group, and if the New World operates similarly to the Eternal Nation game world, people from different civilizations and mindsets might lead to conflicts, as in the real world. He contemplates the idea of building a nation using the forest as a foundation. The Dark Elf leader expresses profound gratitude, hoping for permission to establish their residence within the forest. However, Atu vehemently opposes this notion, insisting that they must depart after consuming all available resources. Observing the exhaustion etched across the faces of the Dark Elves, Takuto grapples with a moral dilemma. He fears that abandoning them in their current state might jeopardize their journey, leaving him with a sense of guilt. Despite Atu's objections, Moltar expresses gratitude for the kindness shown thus far, and respectfully seeks Takuto's permission to depart. But then, Takuto interrupts Moltar, realizing that he is accustomed to being hailed as a legendary player and now wields the authority of a great king. With newfound confidence, he decides to extend an offer. The elves are taken aback by this unexpected turn and regard him with astonishment. Takuto asks them if they would be interested in becoming citizens of his new kingdom. The elves are still in a state of disbelief, looking at him with wide eyes. Atu is equally surprised, raises her voice declaring that she needs to discuss matters with the king before any decisions are made. Turning to Takuto, she demands an explanation for his sudden proposal. The Dark Elves are neutrally aligned, which is precisely why Takuto envisions utilizing the refugee system to recruit them. This way, their alignment undergoes a transformation. However, Atu expresses concern, fearing potential conflicts with the main race of Minogra once they start reproducing. In response, Takuto reminds her of the bug and suggests that the creatures they produce might resemble it. Therefore, maintaining the presence of an intelligent species in the forest is crucial. Besides, both of them find the bug's appearance disagreeable. She is delighted that Takuto is showing interest in something. She stands up and addresses the Dark Elves, informing them that the king intends to establish a nation and is offering them the opportunity to become his citizens. In return, they would receive protection from external threats. Moltar inquires about the implications of becoming citizens. Atu grins and confesses that she can't guarantee eternal happiness, but what awaits them is a transformation into the realm of evil once they join as citizens. This is kind of fun for her. 2 days later, Takuto sets out to check on the Dark Elf clan. Atu expresses concern about whether the Dark Elves will genuinely serve them as loyal citizens. Takuto reassures her that they can only find out by giving it a try. The homunculi they were producing had a faster reproduction rate, but lacked intelligence, causing their intellectual advancements to lag behind other nations. It was crucial for them to overcome this significant disadvantage, and it also provided an opportunity to engage in civilized conversations with a different race. When they finally reach the Dark Elves' camp, Atu insists on going first. As she enters the camp, all the elves bow before Takuto. The elders instruct the others not to look directly at Takuto, warning them of consequences similar to those who seized him. A throne is prepared for him, and Takuto asks all the Dark Elves to gather as he welcomes them as immigrants to their new country, Minogra. Takuto then addresses them, expressing his excitement about building a great nation. The system notifies him that with these new citizens, he has successfully created a new nation under his rule. Atu congratulates everyone for becoming citizens of Minogra, promising them peace and prosperity. The elves are eagerly waiting for the ceremony to end, but then they all feel something stirring inside them at once. Hatred rises from deep within them, directed at those who persecuted them and laughed at them as if they were worthless. Hate now fills their minds. Takuto asks them if they are all right. They finally understand what it is like to be protected, and they begin to cheer for Takuto, honoring him for his long rule. A few days later, Atu and Takuto are sitting with some papers in their hands. Atu asks if he has read them. Takuto confirms that he has read everything. The elves have provided a mattress for Takuto, where he lies leisurely. Atu informs him that the 2 biggest countries on the continent are staunchly aligned well. One is a human nation that worships a benevolent deity, and the other is an elven nation that reveres nature. She warns Takuto that encountering them could be fatal. While it's fortunate they gathered information about the area from Moltar, they hadn't anticipated that the nations with the greatest hostility toward Minogra would be such dominant powers. Starting in the forest hasn't been ideal, and to make matters worse, the forest has 0 productivity. This means that obtaining food, minerals, or mana from it is impossible. Takuto contemplates the challenges they face in the game. Even without development, it's usually possible to gather food and minerals depending on the environment, which serves as the foundation for building an advanced kingdom. However, that isn't the case for them, putting them in a critical situation. Moltar approaches him and asks if he should continue explaining about the outer world. He glances at Takuto, who appears extremely grim. Moltar asks if something is bothering him. Just then, Jia arrives and reports that he has brought one of his subordinates, Imuru, who is in charge of intelligence. Imuru is highly knowledgeable about the customs and traditions of other countries, and Jia believes she can be of great assistance to the king. Atu expresses satisfaction with their dedication, hoping for positive results. She then instructs Moltar not to be too formal, as Takuto also doesn't appreciate strict formalities. Moltar stands up, expressing his intention to adopt a more relaxed approach. Takuto, feeling uneasy about the sudden respect, contemplates his newfound position as a former ordinary person, now in power. Moltar resumes from where he left off last time, but Atu interrupts him, indicating that they first need to discuss their future plans. Atu informs them that they have all become vital members of the national administration, and she plans to assign each of them significant roles. Elder Moltar is given the responsibility of managing the country due to his knowledge of magic, while Jia is reinstated as captain, a role he held before. She instructs him to continue leading the warriors, and both of them agree to the king's command. Jia becomes extremely excited, expressing his readiness to lead his men to do whatever it takes, even to the extent of harming infants, all for the sake of the king. Meanwhile, Moltar sees this as the beginning of their campaign, envisioning countless enemies falling before them as the king's vanguard. He believes that by eliminating those who persecuted them, they will earn the approval of the King of Ruins. Takuto, feeling a sense of unease, finds Jia's enthusiasm extreme. He intervenes, telling Jia that there's no need for such drastic measures. They will establish the rule of ruin without resorting to brutality. Jia questions Takuto about his plans for ruling the world. Takuto responds by expressing his preference for peace over barbaric wars. Jia, not entirely pleased with his king's pacifist stance, glances at Moltar, who is smiling blissfully. Atu intervenes, advising them to get plenty of rest, as she plans to build proper houses afterward. Moltar expresses gratitude for her kindness, highlighting that, unlike Jia, who boasts of his strength, he can contribute in other areas. There's clearly a sense of rivalry between Moltar and Jia. Atu whispers to Takuto that it feels like both of them are hardcore workaholics. She inquires whether she should now give them the command to collect materials for building homes or select the area for construction. Takuto contemplates giving them a break, but realizes that it wouldn't be the most efficient use of their dedication and motivation. He ponders what tasks the Dark Elves would excel at, and asks Atu to instruct them to undertake terrain improvements without harming the forest. Moltar mentions that while they may not be as skilled as the elves aligned with light, they prefer utilizing the large trees rather than the ground. Takuto responds that it sounds like a good start. Jia, shocked, learns that the king doesn't want to destroy the forest. Expressing genuine anticipation, he instructs the others to replant trees and work diligently. Jia, curious, asks Takuto what he means by replanting. Atu is surprised to hear that they have no concept of reforestation, and even Elder Moltar seems unfamiliar with it. She reminds them that in their previous meeting, they discussed iron equipment and fortress construction, and she asks if they have ever heard about military magic or the 6 elements. Moltar explains that they have a basic understanding of the 4 elemental forces, which serve as the foundation of their magical practices. In their usual approach, magicians support warriors, but the concept of military magic is new to them. Takuto had initially expected their technological advancements to include skills like smelting, fishing, and fortress construction. Upon closer inspection, Moltar realizes that the Dark Elves' magical abilities aren't as advanced as Takuto anticipated. Atu expresses surprise, mentioning that they had assumed the Dark Elves possessed some form of terrain improvement technology, but their actual level appears much lower than expected. Now that they know the world's level of magical technology is very low, they realize that if they accelerate their development, they can gain a significant advantage over others. Atu then explains that reforesting involves planting trees in areas that were previously deforested to preserve vegetation. Moltar responds that if it's truly just about planting trees, they don't need magical technology. The real issue, however, is that some trees might take centuries to grow properly. Atu informs them that the reforesting technique she referred to involves a magical element that accelerates plant growth, and she attributes this knowledge to Takuto. Takuto, surprised, feels a bit awkward about the praise. Atu continues to commend Takuto, expressing that they have the honor of being his citizens. She emphasizes how great the king is, claiming he is 100 times greater than they realize and that he can fulfill any request they have. Takuto is left in despair by Atu's boastful talk. Imuru shares with Atu that a while back, the Holy Kingdom of Qualia was struck by a devastating plague, resulting in many deaths. The priests of Qualia believed it was a curse from a demon. However, Atu has a different theory. She suggests that the real cause might have been the overhunting of cats in the city, which led to an explosion in the rat population. She explains that when someone dies from the plague, rats can eat the body and become carriers of the disease. Without predators like cats to control their numbers, the rat population grows, increasing their contact with humans. Imuru expresses shock upon learning that rats were the carriers of the disease. Atu corrects her, emphasizing that it's not the rats themselves but the germs inside them that lead to fatalities. She elaborates on the existence of microscopic creatures in the world, unseen by the naked eye. Atu further explains that various methods can be used to combat the disease. However, bloodletting, a common historical practice, isn't always effective and can weaken the body instead. While prayer is acknowledged as effective, it poses challenges when dealing with a large population, making it impractical. Atu mentions that the king has made a decision, although Takuto himself hasn't said anything. Internally, he thinks about how Atu is ruining his reputation. She adds that in the land where the king once lived, there was vast knowledge unknown to them. She reveals that the apple given by the king was created in the land of the gods. Imuru recalls the grape she ate and mentions finding seeds in it. She planted them, and they are already budding. She expresses excitement about seeing them grow. However, Jia scolds her for taking such action without the king's permission. Atu confirms, asking if Imuru really replanted a fruit from the land of the gods. Meanwhile, Takuto regrets not thinking of such an idea sooner. The emergency production feature had generated items from other worlds within the game, but strategic resources hadn't been part of that equation. Now he contemplates whether this concept extends to strategic resources within the game. He decides on a plan. First, to focus on acquiring industrial technology and building up the population to enable mass production. Additionally, if he can gather enough mana, he believes he could create resources that could reshape warfare dynamics in this other world. Takuto reflects on the creation of oil and how it became a catalyst for mass killings worldwide. He understands that in a world unfamiliar with concepts like reforestation, it's akin to having a cheat code. Imuru nervously questions if she shouldn't have acted without asking. With a grin, Takuto and Atu reassure her, saying that she actually did a perfect job. Meanwhile, the continent of Idaragia boasts a distinctive configuration, resembling 2 interconnected circles. The southern region is famously known as the Dark Continent, while the northern part is called the Lawful Continent. Currently, the Holy Kingdom of Qualia governs the northern continent, which is mostly populated by humans, alongside the Elemental Alliance of Elnar, led by elves. Notably, these 2 influential nations are actively fostering stable diplomatic ties. A significant catalyst in this diplomatic endeavor is the deployment of the formidable ultimate weapon, known as a saint. In the freezing polar belt of the Holy Kingdom of Qualia in the far north, people express their troubles to the respected saint, seeking her divine intervention. They plead for assistance with their hardships. Within the expanse of the continent of Idaragia resides one of the esteemed 7 saints, namely Saint Soalina of Splendid Burials. Responding to the pleas of the suffering people, Saint Soalina firmly declares that the committed transgressions will not be forgiven and that the time for repentance has passed. She listens to the cries of the innocent and the call of her peace-seeking deity, deciding that the sins of disrupting order and defying the holy God deserve severe punishment. Following her divine judgment, she imposes a harsh sentence, sealing the fate of the wrongdoers in the Splendid Burial. In a solemn gesture, she unleashes fiery punishment, symbolizing divine justice for their corrupt actions in the Holy Kingdom. Turning her attention to the cardinal, Saint Soalina inquires about their previous day's discussion. Looking a bit flustered, the cardinal explains the details of the investigation into the ominous prophecy of disaster from the accursed lands. Faced with the potential threat, the determined saint suggests personally taking on the mission if sending troops proves challenging. This surprises the cardinal, who quickly explains the bureaucratic complexities of mobilizing the Order of Holy Knights. He highlights the need for a formal petition to the central government and the careful arrangements for provisions and rewards, stressing the importance of following these steps. The cardinal clarifies that mobilizing the Holy Knights is not something to be done hastily. Expressing his concern, he questions the saint's grasp of her role, implying that her thoughts seem to disregard the responsibilities associated with being a saint. He emphasizes that as a saint, she is no longer a common woman. Upon hearing these words, the saint looks at the cardinal with a touch of sadness before deciding to walk away. She asserts that she will personally engage with someone capable of mobilizing troops. As she departs, the cardinal, in a low murmur, refers to her as a peasant girl. The determined saint vows to do whatever it takes to save her people. Meanwhile, in the Minagra territory within the Great Cursed Land, the time has come for the construction of forts and the establishment of a proper nation. Attention turns to this distant area, where they are actively working on laying the groundwork for a strong foundation and a secure stronghold. The initiative includes detailed plans for fortification and expansion. Jia announces that the success of this effort depends on the collective assistance of everyone involved. A few weeks after the Dark Elves were granted citizenship, the progress appears promising, and everything seems to be moving smoothly toward success. Among those involved, Takuto feels a sense of relief, particularly grateful that he no longer has to wear hospital gowns. Now dressed in more fashionable clothes, he sits comfortably on his stone pedestal, a significant improvement from his earlier days in governing the newly established nation. They've implemented a systematic approach for monthly mana collection from citizens. The collected mana is directly tied to the happiness of the citizens, creating a proportional relationship. The happier the citizens, the more mana is gathered. This means that the development of Takuto's nation is closely connected to the well-being and contentment of its people. Unfazed by the responsibility, he is determined to personally lead his people to the peak of happiness. Atu, pleased to see Takuto's satisfaction, delves into initial planning discussions. Their primary focus is on constructing facilities and ensuring food production, understanding the basic fact that hunger makes citizens vulnerable. She highlights the need to secure reliable food sources. Moltar, while acknowledging the critical importance of food production, raises a curious point. He wonders if the king himself possesses the ability to generate an infinite supply of food. In response, Atu explains that indeed, the king has the capacity for such feats. However, she introduces the potential challenge of distribution as their territory expands. To address this concern, she advocates for providing citizens with facilities that enable them to harvest their own food. Takuto finds himself contemplating the feasibility of accomplishing seemingly impossible feats. Moltar, on the other hand, aligns with Atu's vision and agrees to all her initiatives. As they continue planning, Atu entrusts Moltar with a small tree, instructing him to nurture it. Moving forward, she introduces the need to establish various facilities, including a management post, a collection hub, and a storage post. Moltar, unfamiliar with these concepts, seeks clarification. In response, Atu presents the small tree she gave him, explaining that it's a flesh tree. The elder, intrigued yet puzzled, asks Atu to elaborate further. She reveals that the flesh tree serves as a vital food production facility for their civilization. Specifically, it is a tree that bears a mysterious fruit with a taste remarkably similar to human meat. Moltar comprehends the concept but has lingering concerns. Despite their alignment with evil, he anticipates opposition from those who may resist the idea of consuming meat-like fruit. Addressing his worry, Atu reassures him that implementing the flesh tree is primarily an experiment focused on tree growth. He seems slightly relieved by the explanation, finding solace in the notion that it's more about cultivating trees than the unsettling prospect of consuming human-like fruit. Takuto, reflecting on the situation, recognizes the diversity of people's likes and dislikes. Amidst their considerations, a system notification interrupts, announcing the selection of a facility to be constructed. With the beginning of its construction, the discussion moves on to the next topic: research plans. Atu emphasizes the pivotal role that technology developed through research can play in significantly enhancing a country's power. In the case of their small nation, access to more advanced technologies becomes crucial. Acknowledging their limited manpower, Moltar seeks guidance from Atu on where to commence their technological endeavors, expressing particular excitement about the prospect of using their knowledge of magic. Responding to Moltar's inquiry, she deliberates on the type of magic they should focus on. While they possess only a modest amount of magical prowess, it still presents an exciting avenue for exploration. Atu suggests considering military magic, pointing out that even with a formidable army, regular magic can target only a few dozen individuals at most. In contrast, military magic has the potential to impact large expanses of land, serving as a potent deterrent even against sizable enemy forces. Proud of his magical abilities, which can target a few dozen people, Moltar contemplates the ambitious notion of developing his skills to the point of overpowering entire armies, an endeavor that seems almost miraculous. However, Atu reassures him, stating that the technology required for such advancements is not as challenging as it may seem, implying a relatively quick development process. This revelation gives Moltar insight into Atu's understanding and recognition of their magical potential. The system notification further solidifies their commitment, indicating the initiation of research on military magic. As they transition to planning military affairs, Takuto suggests the creation of a hero. Atu readily agrees, emphasizing the cost reduction and lower risk associated with this approach. The prospect of shaping a hero to lead their military efforts adds a strategic layer to their evolving plans for the nation. When Jia asks what they mean by a hero, Atu explains that heroes are individuals chosen by the king who start off with great power. She describes them as powerful beings with unique quirks who have the potential to become even stronger over time. Jia and Moltar express some confusion about this concept. Atu further explains that there are limitations on summoning heroes, which prevents them from summoning multiple at once, but they can at least summon one. Takuto chimes in, acknowledging the need for discretion in their current situation. He points out the downsides of having a large army, such as high mana usage, the need for food supplies, upkeep costs, and the risk of drawing attention. Because of these factors, he decides to concentrate on creating just one hero for now, aligning with their strategy of staying under the radar and being efficient. Atu warns the group about the possible danger of bounty hunters who might see them as valuable targets for slavery. To guard against these risks, she highlights the importance of having a hero. Curious about the true power of heroes, Moltar respectfully inquires further. In response, Atu decides to demonstrate rather than explain. As she walks a few steps, live tentacles suddenly emerge from her back, a shocking revelation for everyone. She unveils that she herself is a hero, and what they just witnessed was only a fraction of her full power. The revelation leaves the elves in awe. Jia is particularly shocked, realizing the immense strength possessed by heroes like Atu and Takuto. Atu reassures them, stating that she can easily handle any adversaries that Takuto might encounter, alleviating their concerns about military affairs. The cheerful moment is interrupted when Takuto reminds Atu to clean up the random trees she cut down to demonstrate her power. Surprised, she agrees to do it, while Jia and Moltar, still in awe, offer to help as she starts cleaning up, looking a bit embarrassed. With the hero unit's strength established, Takuto delegates the Dark Elves to move forward with their plans. A month later, proper houses have been erected, marking tangible progress in the development of their burgeoning nation. Both Takuto and Atu find immense satisfaction in witnessing the progress of their efforts. Imuru, who is actively engaged in the work, expresses her happiness at being part of the project. In response to Takuto's inquiry, she provides a detailed report on the construction progress. She highlights that while the construction of homes is underway, the pace is slower due to the primary focus on growing flesh trees. She showcases the progress of the trees, indicating the direction of their current efforts. On a positive note, the joint facility for both cultivation and food storage is advancing smoothly. The land cleared by lumberjacks is efficiently utilized for various purposes, including collection hubs, farms, and other facilities. Additionally, some land is kept in reserve as a potential construction site for future facilities that may require a larger area. Imuru continues her report, sharing the discovery of a spring that can serve as a water source for the settlement. She also mentions plans to drill a well to enhance the water supply. As she speaks animatedly, she points out a building under construction intended for bureaucratic proceedings. Despite Imuru's continuous flow of information, Takuto reflects on the current developments. He acknowledges that while more buildings can be constructed in the future, the bare minimum being implemented now is sufficient. Takuto is pleased that Imuru has taken care of tasks that he didn't even instruct her to do. Mapping out everything in his mind, he focuses on 3 key aspects for the prosperity of his country: internal development, research facilities, and military planning. Progress in all these areas is going smoothly, and more importantly, the once grim Dark Elves are now collaborating with a vibrant zeal. This marks an initial success for Takuto. Imuru informs him that all the Dark Elves are putting in their utmost effort to repay his kindness to the best of their abilities. He expresses his satisfaction in having them as citizens, and Imuru, moved by his words, becomes emotional. Atu empathizes with Imuru's sentiments. Imuru, in turn, informs them that there is a shortage of manpower for daily necessities and seeks guidance. Takuto reassures her, stating that he will personally manage the production of daily items, relieving them of any worries. He emphasizes the importance of not rushing production to maintain quality. Unbeknownst to them, the accelerated development is possible due to Takuto's emergency production methods and the tools he brought from the land of the gods. Takuto suggests that, for the time being, they can all reside in the same house, and there's no need for a separate palace. The idea of sharing a residence with the king shocks Moltar and Imuru, as it feels unusual to live under the same roof as the monarch. Takuto reassures them that it's acceptable, but Moltar thinks it's disrespectful to share living space with the king. Imuru points out that while building a royal palace might be expensive, it could generate additional resources and make the citizens happier, emphasizing the benefits of building palaces early on. Takuto expresses a desire for a floating castle, contemplating the possibility of creating one. Atu finds the idea romantic, envisioning the construction of the highest-level building from the most developed age. While the elder deems it absolutely impossible, Takuto remains confident, instilling a sense of hope. The stark difference in their perspectives surprises him. Imuru marvels at the depth of power and wisdom possessed by the king. Atu advises Imuru to prioritize houses and food for the citizens before embarking on the ambitious floating castle project. Undeterred, Imuru and Moltar stand united before Takuto, displaying their loyalty. Their dedication prompts cheers from everyone in acknowledgement of his leadership. Within the Holy Kingdom of Qualia, there exists a revered religious order known as the Holy Knights. Proficient in both pen and sword, these formidable individuals are powerful fighters capable of working miracles, their prowess only falling short of that of a saint. Enjoying the favor and trust of the people, they are strategically stationed throughout the nation to address various state needs. In response to a pressing matter, 2 holy knights, accompanied by a troop of mercenaries, are now en route to the Great Cursed Lands, emphasizing the seriousness of the situation. An expedition was sent out yesterday to investigate the ominous threat hanging over the area. Prompted by a vision from Saint Soelina, Lornius finds solace in continuous prayers to the holy god Arlos, seeking protection for the impending battle. As he fervently prays, someone interrupts to inquire about the duration of his supplication. High-ranking Holy Knight Wordle, growing bored, expresses his fatigue with what he perceives as nonsense from a holy saint. The constant disparity in rank between Lornius, a low-ranking Holy Knight, and Wordle fuels an ongoing rift between them. Lornius informs Wordle that the dispatch of such a substantial number of troops indicates disturbances in the northern provinces. The limited availability of emergency troops necessitated his involvement. However, it wasn't just Lornius who was recruited. They were compelled to initiate additional recruitments, and were unable to deploy forces directly from the national territory, so he had to make do by hiring mercenaries. Wordle initially taunts him but surprisingly later acknowledges the significance of the 50 mercenaries. Lornius, however, holds a low opinion of Wordle, considering him vulgar and lacking class, deeming him unworthy of being a holy knight. He points out that Saint Soelina's jurisdiction lies in the northern province, whereas the Great Cursed Lands are situated in the southern part of the continent. This means that the responsibility for dispatching soldiers lies with the southern province's Congress, yet the request for inspection came from the jurisdiction in the north. Lornius notes that when it comes to the Dark Continent, it has always been preferable to be safe rather than sorry. He is well aware that success in this reconnaissance mission could bring laurels for Wordle, but in the event of failure, all responsibility would fall squarely on his own shoulders. This inevitability stems from his status as a low-ranking holy knight without the support of a distinguished lineage. However, he acknowledges that Wordle's presence as a high-ranking knight increases their chances of survival. As he contemplates the nature of the mission, he wonders if it could be the will of God. His thoughts are interrupted as he overhears the leader of the mercenary troops, Barot, discussing the disturbances in the northern provinces, reinforcing his certainty that the road ahead will be challenging. Despite bounties on the heads of dark elves, the soldiers are hesitant, prioritizing their own lives over potential rewards. One soldier vocalizes the common perception that mercenaries are merely there to follow orders. The conversation takes a turn as soldiers speculate about the presence of witches in the north, surprising Lornius and his comrades. Meanwhile, Atu experiences joy seeing the flesh tree being planted and growing rapidly. This marks a significant development, enabling a consistent food supply for all residents of the imperial capital of Minogra. Not only is food production flourishing, but the management of various facilities is also proceeding smoothly. These positive outcomes have emerged just a few months after the last inspection. Atu eagerly anticipates the construction of the palace following the completion of the houses. However, some of the dark elves express fear as the surrounding forest grows darker. She reassures them, explaining that this is an effect of Takuto's rule over the territory, transforming it into cursed soil. Becoming a citizen of Minogra connects individuals with the king's majesty, which influences not only the citizens, but also the soil they live on. This magical soil has special properties. It increases the productivity of those aligned with evil, while weakening the defenses of neutral or good-aligned beings. While they work, Imuru initially doesn't feel any positive influence from the cursed soil. Atu advises her to take a deep breath, prompting Imuru to close her eyes and inhale deeply. Finally, she experiences a refreshing sensation, a stark contrast to her previous feelings. Now she feels at ease, as if she can consume flesh fruits without any issues. However, a new concern arises. The location appears highly conspicuous. At the mercenaries' final stop, they gather in the town's tavern for their last opportunity to drink freely before venturing further. This marks the last city where they can pause, and they're all immersed in the moment, savoring every drop. However, Lornius carries a weight of concern. He ponders their struggle to secure enough provisions, casting uncertainty over their survival as they inch closer to the Dark Continent. The absence of people in these lands is understandable, but hostility is ever present here, taking the form of violent tribes and mysterious diseases, with the soil itself tainted by poison. Numerous concerns weigh on their minds. Bargot turns to Wordle, questioning whether it's acceptable for the holy knights to drink alcohol. Wordle, who himself is indulging, responds by citing the Lord's understanding of the people's suffering, saying that once their duties are fulfilled, seeking relief is permissible. Lornius interjects, citing teachings from St. Arlos's book, specifically Book 3, Chapter 4. According to this teaching, one may only indulge in the presence of family, and only as a temporary relief from their duties as a priest. Lornius emphasizes that the passage makes no explicit mention of alcohol consumption. Wordle responds mockingly, suggesting that there must be room for interpretation, and proposing they formally debate the topic. Lornius, undeterred, redirects the conversation, asking about the prophecy of the saintess and the current situation in the Great Cursed Land, seeking insights from any available sources. Wordle's expression darkens as he moves to sit beside Bargot. He reminds them that the mercenaries' top priority is to foster trust among themselves and acknowledges the sensitive nature of certain information, particularly concerning a witch. Lornius picks up on the mention of a witch and expresses curiosity about what exactly is meant by that term. Bargot explains that the chaos in the northern region was attributed to a witch. Initially, they believed it might have been a term coined by Herrick to describe some form of magical energy, but concrete details remained elusive. Even attempts to communicate with those who ventured to investigate were unsuccessful. Lornius grows increasingly concerned, realizing that this elusive being has managed to evade the typically robust intelligence network of mercenaries. However, his primary worry lies with the potential threat lurking within the Great Cursed Land, comparable to the mayhem in the north. Bargot then poses a question to the group, asking if there is a possibility of encountering such a witch. Wordle reassures the young knight, emphasizing that as long as their objective is clear, there is no need to worry. He reveals that their mission involves pursuing dark elves who fled to the Cursed Land, anticipating that these dark elves may try to obstruct their efforts during the inspection, which could present potential challenges. Both Lornius and Bargot are taken aback by the mention of dark elves. Wordle elaborates, explaining that the dark elves were exiled from Elnar and sought refuge in the Great Cursed Land. He informs them that dark elves possess specialties in assassinations and curses, and adds that there are rumors suggesting they fear the emergence of a witch among them. According to the rumors, those who are named are still evading capture. He further informs them that bounties have been placed on the heads of Gia and Moltar. Reflecting on a past encounter, Wordle recalls facing Moltar and finding him to be a formidable adversary. He expresses relief that their current mission is merely an inspection. Wordle advises them to quietly retreat if things go astray to avoid drawing unnecessary attention. However, Lornius opposes this course of action. He contemplates the potential consequences of allowing these individuals to consolidate their power, suggesting that their alliance could pose a future threat to both Qualia and Elnar. Emerging from his contemplation, Lornius questions Wordle's suggestion of fleeing, highlighting the potential suffering that would be inflicted on the innocent. Wordle's gaze softens momentarily before he responds, acknowledging their duty to combat evil. But he also stresses that as faithful servants of their god, there may come a time when they must be prepared to sacrifice their lives. He emphasizes the importance of standing against evil, but also believes there must be a reason to continue living, not just for himself, but also for Lornius and the others present. In that moment, Wordle scolds Lornius for his impatience to prove himself, attributing it to the enthusiasm of youth. He advises Lornius not to focus solely on the end result, warning that such a narrow perspective could lead to grave errors. Instead, he encourages him to consider the bigger picture. Unfazed, Lornius asserts that he too has a reason to live. Bargot and Wordle jest, suggesting that Lornius must have found a woman at his young age and should consider leaving their line of work. Ignoring their banter, Lornius begins to pray to his god Arlos, seeking his blessings. After their break, they resume their journey, and soon they confront a hill giant, a savage creature native to the Dark Continent. Though they had been warned that hostile beings freely roam these lands, they hadn't anticipated being attacked by such a beast the moment they set foot in this territory. Defeating a creature like this would typically require an army, as the giant proves formidable, swiftly dispatching their men and launching ferocious attacks. Lornius expresses confidence that he can handle the ogre-class savage on his own. However, a soldier requests his assistance, highlighting the difficulty of the situation with only mercenaries present. Lornius commands everyone to use their bows as a diversionary tactic, but before they can execute the plan, Wordle intervenes, ordering the archers to stand down. He decides to take the lead on the front line himself. Lornius quickly calls out to stop Wordle, attempting to halt his impulsive decision. As the battle unfolds, Wordle demonstrates remarkable bravery and skill. The mercenaries watch in awe as he displays the formidable power of the Holy Sword art, a technique that strengthens both the mind through prayer and the body through divine might, all while executing precise sword techniques. This secret art of Qualia not only enhances Wordle's physical abilities, but also grants him significant advantages against evil entities. His eyes gleam with courage and unwavering determination as he exhibits mastery in wielding his sword, striking with incredible speed. Each swing slices through the hill giant with astonishing ease, severing its joints as if cutting through butter. With blazing determination, Wordle shouts at the hill giant, declaring that its immense size alone cannot ensure victory. Swiftly, he strikes, severing its hand before launching himself into the air with a powerful leap. His sword slices through the air, aimed precisely at the creature's face. With a decisive thrust, he pierces the giant's skull, ultimately reducing it to pieces with a series of elegant strikes. As the hill giant falls, Wordle urges his men to follow his lead and evacuate the area, warning them that other beasts may be drawn by the scent of blood. Cheers erupt from the mercenaries, with even Bargo and Lornius displaying shock and delight. They rush toward Wordle, eager to offer their praise. However, he quickly dismisses their excitement, instructing them to focus on the task at hand. Back in Minagra, Takuto is busy creating more loyal bugs. Atu approaches him and commends his efforts. Takuto expresses his relief upon hearing her praise, admitting his earlier concerns about the process. They both understand the labor-intensive nature of gathering the required food and resources manually, as well as the necessity of mana to channel magic. Takuto recalls that their primary resource for this endeavor was the flesh fruit, which mirrors exactly how it was in the game. Given their focus on producing more long-legged bugs, this reliance was anticipated. Takuto also instructs the bugs to cooperate effectively with one another. As he contemplates his next creation, he plans to develop a support-type unit capable of bestowing permanent enhancements upon all insect-type units. Among his considerations is Isla, the revered queen of all insects. However, he recognizes that large military units, such as cavalry with their accompanying horses and soldiers, as well as the necessary resources and training, require significant manpower and financial investment. Producing and training individual units proves to be far more cost-effective. The versatility of these bugs lies in their ability to undergo upgrades, enhancing their capabilities over time. Among the various individual bug units he has created are the long-legged bug, the guillotine bug, and the insatiable pale bug, each serving a unique purpose, a concept that Takuto finds remarkable. While Isla has a peaceful demeanor, Takuto is concerned about the potential unintended consequences of other hero units. Despite the recent calm, he recognizes the need to deploy more scouts to monitor the surroundings amid the ongoing construction of basic structures. Takuto envisions a country where everyone can find peace and security. He dreams of implementing policies aimed at benefiting the population, echoing his long-standing desire for a peaceful nation for all. However, his plans are suddenly disrupted when Atu informs him of approaching invaders. The system's warning indicates that armed forces are nearing the edge of the cursed forest. Using their magnifying glass, the mercenary troop observes the cursed forest, noting its barren appearance with no signs of life. Bargoat discusses with Lornius the option of heading directly to the northern parts of the forest to speed up their journey. However, he advises caution and suggests investigating the surrounding area first. Given the vast expanse of the Great Cursed Land, they are constrained by limited time and manpower. Their priority is to ascertain if anything unusual is occurring within the forest, necessitating thorough exploration and observation. As Lornius contemplates the simplicity of their mission, he expresses readiness to proceed with the investigation. However, Wordle abruptly halts their advancement with a gesture, prompting them to pause and observe. Looking deeper into the forest, they are startled to witness darkness emanating from within. Their astonishment grows as they spot an ominous figure, a girl cloaked in black attire emerging from the depths of the cursed forest. Lornius is taken aback by the sight of a lone girl in such an inhospitable environment. Wordle turns to Lornius, inquiring about his thoughts on the matter. He speculates that she may be a dark elf, but is surprised by her ability to navigate such treacherous terrain, viewing her as merely a fortunate survivor. Wordle remains skeptical and decides to directly question the girl about her presence in the Great Cursed Land. The girl, recognizing them as holy knights of Qualia, bows respectfully before them. She admits to being one of the dark elves who sought refuge in the forest to ensure her own safety. In return, she inquires about their purpose in the cursed forest. Wordle, growing increasingly frustrated, insists that he will not divulge their motives until she provides a comprehensive answer. Undeterred, the girl reiterates that she and her fellow dark elves were driven from their home and had nowhere else to go, with the cursed forest serving as the only peaceful refuge for them. Identifying themselves as the Holy Knights of Qualia, Wordle asserts that they too have business within the forest and seeks her permission to enter. However, the girl adamantly advises against entering the forest. Lornius interrupts, stating that their actions are approved by God, suggesting that declining would disrespect their deity. Wordle, annoyed by his interruption, sharply tells him not to interfere while he's speaking. Lornius apologizes and remains silent, though internally he feels offended by Wordle's harsh reprimand. While he acknowledges his own guilt for interrupting, he believes Wordle's response was overly severe and contemplates reporting Wordle's inappropriate behavior to the central authority after the mission. Meanwhile, Wordle reiterates to the girl the importance of their mission within the forest. He expresses his own desire to return home, but emphasizes that they are bound by orders from their superiors and cannot leave without completing their task. The girl persists in her refusal, citing the fear of her easily frightened friends towards outsiders. Wordle presses her for more information, questioning what they could possibly be hiding in the forest to justify such reluctance. However, the girl maintains that there is nothing of significance, describing it as merely a peaceful and quiet place. She questions their obsession with such a small and unremarkable forest. Wordle's expression darkens as he responds, revealing that they have received a prophecy indicating that a disaster will emanate from the forest. This prophecy compels them to inspect it thoroughly, as they must fulfill their duty before returning home. Lornius yells at Wordle, asking why he disclosed the prophecy as the mission is highly confidential. In response, Wordle raises his voice, commanding Lornius to stay silent and arguing that there are times when sharing secrets is necessary to maintain peace. This argument leaves Lornius furious, especially given the suspicion surrounding an evil cult. He is frustrated that Wordle could divulge top-secret information to an outsider, seeing it as a breach of trust deserving severe consequences. Amidst the tension, the girl intervenes, expressing understanding of their concerns regarding the disaster. She reassures them that no one in the land harbors any ill intentions toward them. The girl elaborates, recounting their arduous journey and their desperate search for a place to call home. She remarks that they should be afraid of the disaster, not of them. Wordle acknowledges her kindness, but criticizes her for her blunt manner of speaking, noting her proficiency in negotiation. The girl reiterates that they are good people and pose no threat to the knights. Lornius, however, grimly contemplates that despite her words, the girl emits an aura that suggests a potentially sinister presence. He doubts her identity as a dark elf. In a fit of anger, Wordle demands that the girl swear on her god's name. Without hesitation, she solemnly swears on her god's name. Wordle, after listening to the arguments, decides to turn around and begin their return journey. He instructs his men not to trouble the girl and her companions, as they seem to desire nothing more than peace and quiet. Lornius, outraged by Wordle's decision, shouts and protests, insisting that they cannot simply leave, especially considering the terrifying aura he perceives around the girl, which he believes indicates her evil nature. In response, Wordle clarifies that he is not letting the girl and her companions go free, but rather concluding their investigation and determining that there is no immediate problem. Lornius persists in labeling the girl as evil, accusing her of attempting to deceive them. He challenges Wordle, asking if he would be willing to bear responsibility if the girl brings disaster upon their holy kingdom. Wordle urges Lornius not to let his emotions cloud his judgment, reminding him of their teachings on mutual trust. Despite Wordle's rationale, Lornius still views his decision as unfair. Growing increasingly agitated, Lornius glares and makes a shocking accusation, alleging rumors that Wordle has been involved in inappropriate conduct with innocent girls. He continues to press Wordle, questioning if he is certain he is not being seduced by the girl. Wordle's patience wears thin, and he angrily dismisses him as a fool for entertaining such thoughts. He refutes the baseless rumor, asserting that there is no evidence to support it. He expresses frustration that Lornius would bring up such allegations at this critical moment. However, Lornius remains steadfast in his accusations against Wordle and now deems him as evil. He vehemently decides to remove Wordle from the mission due to his rude behavior and perceived abandonment of responsibility. Wordle urges Lornius not to act rashly, emphasizing the uncertainty of the situation and the difficulty in discerning the right course of action. The girl intervenes, imploring both men to cease their quarrel, as it will only lead to further conflict. She urges them to believe in the truth of her words. However, Lornius loses patience, and his anger reaches a boiling point. Disregarding her plea, he sharply tells her to be silent, branding her as an evil being. In a fit of rage, he charges at the girl, intent on capturing her and bringing her to the capital for interrogation. As he charges toward the girl, the mercenaries follow suit, ignoring Wordle's attempts to intervene. Despite his shouts, they proceed with their actions, driven by their loyalty to Lornius rather than to Wordle. He implores them once more not to harm innocent bystanders, but his words fall on deaf ears. Suddenly, the mysterious girl's demeanor shifts, her smirk signaling impending danger. In a shocking turn of events, she transforms before their eyes, stunning them into silence. Lornius, taken aback by the sudden transformation, stumbles and falls to the ground in shock. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, Wordle instructs one of the mercenaries to return home and inform the country about what has happened. Lornius is astonished that the girl managed to attack their messenger. As Wordle advances with his holy sword, prepared to confront the girl, she suddenly sheds her guise, revealing herself to be none other than Atu. Shock washes over the mercenaries as they realize the true identity of their adversary. Atu had initially hoped to resolve the situation without resorting to violence, but now recognizes the inevitability of conflict. With a swift movement, she unleashes her monstrous tentacles from her back, catching the mercenaries off guard. The tentacles pierce through several of them, hoisting them into the air. The scene unfolds in chaos and horror, leaving Lornius to contemplate the chilling possibility that Atu may indeed be the witch they had feared. Wordle, however, clarifies that the term witch refers to a person whose identity symbolizes imminent disaster, rather than a literal witch. Atu's dark tone and ominous words further unsettle the mercenaries, accusing them of being foolishly driven by an overly zealous sense of justice and making irreversible decisions. As she continues to unleash her deadly onslaught, Wordle rallies the troops, urging them not to falter in the face of this grave threat. He directs Lornius to join him in attacking Atu together, recognizing that only through unified effort can they hope to stand against the disaster she represents. As they advance with their swords drawn, they beseech God for strength to overcome the evil before them. Wordle commands his soldiers to charge at Atu, while the archers ready their bows and the swordsmen prepare to engage in close combat. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, Wordle understands they have no other recourse but to confront her head-on. Atu, observing their determined approach, scoffs sarcastically at their lack of restraint, remarking that she admires their resolve. However, as the mercenaries unleash a barrage of arrows upon her, Atu's tentacles effortlessly deflect each attack. As Lornias observes Atu's ability to deflect the barrage of arrows with ease, he is taken aback by her immense power. A heavy sense of regret dawns upon Wordle as he comprehends the gravity of his error. He was explicitly instructed not to disclose any information about the witches, yet he has unwittingly done so. He recalls the prophecy told by their saintess, which foretold of monsters and witches that brought ruin to many countries. The events in the northern region attributed to witches align with this prophecy. Now, with only 2 confirmed witches known to exist, Wordle begins to suspect that the girl before them may be the elusive third witch. Lornias ponders over the immense devastation inflicted upon the northern region by just 2 individuals, a catastrophe so severe that even the combined might of the country's army would be insufficient to rectify it. Wordle calls upon him for support, and Lornias rallies the mercenaries to stand with them. With unified determination, they charge at Atu. As they close in on her, she perceives their movements as agonizingly slow. Yet Wordle's actions seem to defy this perception. His sword strikes with swift precision, catching Atu off guard. She is astonished by his remarkable speed and skill as he adeptly cuts through her tentacles, displaying impressive prowess. As Lornias watches Wordle's fighting technique, he sees him successfully sever many of the witch's tentacles. Seeing this, Atu pauses, recognizing the holy fighting style, a technique that channels divine power to strike against evil, often at the cost of self-sacrifice. She reflects on the significance of this sacred combat style, lamenting the rarity of such noble civilizations. No longer dismissive of his skill, Atu acknowledges him as the unit leader, signaling that the battle is now between Wordle and herself. The stage is set for a fierce and decisive clash between the 2 adversaries. As Wordle launches a relentless onslaught of strikes against Atu, she calmly evades each attack with ease, displaying remarkable agility and composure. Despite Wordle's efforts, she remains unfazed, her demeanor unaffected by his assault. Then, a sinister glint appears in Atu's eyes, signaling a shift in her intentions. With a swift motion, she seizes the other knights with her tentacles, immobilizing them and rendering them helpless. Mocking them, she admits to underestimating the Holy Knight's capabilities before strengthening her grip on her captives. She tightens her hold with malicious intent, implying that their reluctance to harm their allies would hinder their actions. In response, Lornias condemns her as a villain and orders her to free them. Wordle, however, maintains his composure, urging Lornias to remain calm. He reassures his comrades that, with only 2 tentacles remaining, they will soon have the opportunity to defeat her. Ignoring the plight of the mercenaries, Wordle charges at her, prompting her to question his motives. She questions whether he holds disdain for the mercenaries and whether he even considers their safety. In a pointed inquiry, she challenges the notion of human regard for one another. As he prepares to strike, Atu's countenance shifts, adopting a mournful expression, and she pleads with him to halt. Momentarily swayed by her apparent distress, he hesitates and lowers his weapon. But in a sudden twist, Atu's sorrowful facade transforms into a sinister smile. With swift precision, she launches an attack, thrusting her tentacles at him from all directions. Despite their earlier attempts to sever her tentacles, Atu's sharp appendages breach Wordle's defenses, slicing through his body and head with razor-like tips. Lornias is left in shock, watching the betrayal unfold before his eyes. A feeling of disbelief overwhelms him as he struggles to comprehend how she was able to land a blow despite their previous efforts. With a sinking feeling in his heart, he calls out desperately for Wordle, but there is no response as the realization dawns upon him that their comrade is no more. A sense of dread washes over Lornias, signaling the triumph of evil. He is astounded by the revelation that, despite their efforts, Atu still possesses functional tentacles. She calmly informs him that she never disclosed the exact number she had. His gaze shifts to Wordle, who remains suspended by one of Atu's tentacles. With their leader incapacitated, the remaining knights are gripped by fear and desperation. They understand that their chances of survival are slim without Sir Wordle's leadership. Realizing they may be Atu's next targets, fear overtakes them, and they hastily flee from the scene, driven by the instinct to escape the imminent threat of death. Lornias addresses the remaining knights and emphasizes the importance of at least one survivor reaching the capital to convey the events that have occurred. Atu, irritated by their determination, launches another assault on them. Observing Atu's imminent attack on the mercenaries, Lornias intervenes, determined to hinder her efforts. With a heartfelt prayer to his god for strength, he charges towards Atu, brandishing his sword. However, to his astonishment, Atu counteracts his strike with a magical sword, blocking his attack effortlessly. He is taken aback by this unexpected turn of events, his confusion evident as he gazes at Atu wielding the magical sword. Pointing towards the sword, Atu offers him an explanation, revealing that she acquired it from fallen soldiers on the battlefield. However, his focus shifts to a more pressing question: how she was able to wield the knight's sword. With a smirk, she discloses that her acquisition of the sword coincided with the moment she ended Wordle's life. Lornias is taken aback by the revelation, his shock evident as he processes the implications of Atu's actions. She elaborates further, attributing her ability to wield the sword to her absorption of Wordle's skills, techniques, and unwavering dedication. She acknowledges Wordle's prowess, recognizing that he was a formidable warrior, endowed with strength and capability worthy of a holy knight. Atu continues, revealing that along with Wordle's swordsmanship, his emotions and memories also flowed into her upon his demise. She describes Wordle as truly brave and noble, acknowledging his valor, but she asserts that he died because of his weakness. In a startling revelation, she discloses intimate details about Lornius's personal life, mentioning his wife, Masha, and their newborn daughter, Mina. Lornius is left stunned by the accuracy of the information. The names mentioned are indeed those of his wife and daughter, leaving him perplexed as to how the witch came to possess such knowledge. Recalling his past conversations with Wordle, Lornius is gripped by fear. He realizes with dread that the witch isn't just taking lives but also stealing memories and abilities, growing stronger with each victim. She confirms his suspicions, recounting Wordle's final thoughts about the consequences of his defeat. The fate of Lornius's family, the mercenaries, and the people who relied on him hangs in the balance. He rejects the notion as impossible, accusing her of manipulating him. Atu affirms that Wordle's emotions during the battle were indeed absorbed by her. She challenges Lornius, questioning what he plans to do now that even Wordle, who surpassed him in skill, has died. Trembling with fear, he finds himself unable to even raise his sword. He realizes that the mercenaries who fled will likely inform the capital and summon the Holy Army. Suddenly, the sounds of dying people reach his ears, prompting him to turn around. To his horror, he finds himself surrounded by dark elves, their menacing presence closing in around him. They inform Atu that they have killed all the mercenaries. Lornius loses his patience and charges at her, but Atu swiftly strikes him with a single blow, piercing him through and then hanging him upside down. She taunts him, saying that if he had only heeded Wordle's words, he would now be at home with his beloved wife and daughter, saying grace to his beloved god before enjoying hot soup. She tells him that by her own volition, she chooses tranquility and yearns for peace and quiet. However, the future he chose differs from that. She finds herself with no alternative but to take matters into her own hands. At this point, there's no information left to relay to the capital, and indeed there will be no evidence of their fate whatsoever. For her, everything concluded the moment she was underestimated. She's trained to eliminate those he cherishes the most. Now she possesses knowledge of everyone's family names, even recalling the names of the villages where they previously spent their nights. In repayment, she is highly likely to slaughter all of them, regardless of their number, whether they're tens, hundreds, or even thousands. For those who share his wife's and daughter's names, she intends to make them suffer before ending their lives. Although she feels pity for them and doesn't desire to carry out such actions, she feels compelled to do so for the sake of the person she reveres. With a smile, she informs Lornius that the fate he chose was to provoke her anger. Then she pierces through him completely, delivering the fatal blow. She bids him farewell with a sinister smile, insisting that he must witness firsthand the demise of the people he holds dear. Hanging him high in the air, upside down, she ensures he has a clear view. Gia, one of her companions, remarks that it's a powerful demonstration of their authority. They discuss plans to handle the bodies and gather assistance for the task. Then Gia questions if she truly meant everything she said earlier. Atu smiles and responds that she could never bring harm to women and children just for the sake of one individual. She reaffirms her commitment to pacifism, stating that such terrifying acts are not in her nature. Observing their puzzled expressions, she casually discloses that her earlier statements were merely intended to instill fear in Lornius. Gia notices her concerned demeanor and questions if there was a reason for her unease. In response, she mentions that certain details gathered from the nights proved particularly unsettling, prompting her desire to report them to Takuto without delay. With a reassuring smile, she instructs them to commence cleaning the bodies at once. They begin their task diligently, and after the completion of their grim duty, she proceeds to Takuto's location. She briefs him on the information, emphasizing that what she shared about the witches was beyond anything they'd encountered, even in the immersive world of Eternal Nation. Takuto now grasps the stark differences between the current reality and the confines of the game world. The revelation of new countries, the existence of the saintess they learned of from Moltar, and the deeper lore of the world acquired from Emil all differ significantly from the game's narrative. Atu stresses the importance of paying attention to these differences, noting that while elements of the game system may be present, their execution and implications are vastly altered. Referring to the memories of the Holy Knights, they note that the two benevolent aligned countries had remained relatively peaceful, avoiding large-scale conflicts for several decades. Additionally, they were unaware of the prominent figures shaping the current world. Assuming these individuals were players, it's likely they were novices or amateurs. Furthermore, they realize that Atu's memory loss, a feature not present within the game, signifies a departure from the game's established framework. From this point forward, they understand they can no longer rely on the game setup as a reliable guide. Takuto's realization dawns upon him. He has been transported to an entirely different world, distinct from the game's virtual realm. He regrets the fact that the game, with its widely popular genre, now seems trivial in comparison. Among the information, he recalls the involvement of Qualia's northern region, with both the south and north branches dispatching two seemingly useless individuals to investigate a troubled area. This investigation stems from an oracle received by the saintess. However, the region in question remains unharmed, as the bishop's wife is a close friend of the saintess. Consequently, there's a low likelihood of them mobilizing an actual punitive force. Nevertheless, the looming threat is still present in the form of a potential confrontation with the entity dubbed as the Witch. The catalyst behind the turmoil in the northern region was identified as the Weeping Witch, Arakino. With the revelation of the witch's existence and their confirmed possession of powers on par with the heroes, the situation grew even more precarious. Despite this, Takuto finds solace in the fact that at least the game creation system is operational. With resolve, he opts to proceed with their plans as originally outlined. Amidst the escalating threats from various quarters, Takuto finds his thoughts drifting toward another strategy. When Atu inquires about his contemplation, he reveals his idea of forging alliances between countries. Meanwhile, the saint remains vigilant, closely monitoring the movements of the witch Aranoki. Reports from her informants indicate that the Lady Saint of Subjugation has been deployed to the foremost front line, resulting in a stalemate. Despite this, the saint maintains hope for her safety. However, the reported devastation is grim. 2 cities in the northern region lie in ruins, with a loss of 30,000 men at the hands of the witch. The casualties among the smaller towns, villages, and civilians are immeasurable, painting a bleak picture of the aftermath. The Lady Saint is overcome with sorrow at the magnitude of the tragedy unfolding. She bears the weight of her inability to save everyone and, determined to take action, sets out alone to address the crisis. Her men advise her to wait, as deploying to the front lines requires permission from the cardinal. However, the Lady Saint dismisses their concerns, stating that such authorization is unnecessary, as the cardinal had departed from that location long ago. Meanwhile, in El Narir, a council gathers where village leaders convene to discuss the pressing issue at hand: the loss of contact with Tay's tribe and their city's representative. Their worst fears are confirmed when they realize that Tay's tribe may have turned against them. Concern grips the council as they contemplate the possibility of the entire tribe becoming their enemy. Addressing the representatives blessed by the spirit, one leader shares his thoughts on seeking aid from the Holy Kingdom of Kwaya. However, most of them voice opposition to this idea despite their lifelong alliance. Discussing matters with Kwaya openly is not feasible in this situation. Moreover, seeking aid would be a blow to their pride as elves. Furthermore, the situation in Kwaya is dire, as it is under occupation by the witch in the northern region. It becomes evident that rather than seeking aid from Kwaya, they should dispatch their own assistance. Consequently, they resolve to send their envoys and the spirit knights to address this pressing issue without delay. In the Dark Continent, the ancient spirits and demi-humans of Fawn prove their prowess. True to expectations, the mages demonstrate their ability to effortlessly handle even the most ferocious beasts encountered in the region. Their leader, appearing as an old hag, commands respect with her formidable strength, surpassing that of all her comrades combined. As they offer to handle the monstrous corpses, she momentarily pauses, her gaze drifting towards a distant movement. Suspecting it to be the enemy's reinforcements, she is taken aback by the sheer size of their numbers. Determined to alert others to this imminent threat, they make plans to spread the word. The scene transitions to the Dark Continent, specifically to the construction site of the Grand Cursed Land, Mogre Palace. Atu inquires about the progress of the construction from the Dark Elves. One of them responds positively, stating that the palace construction for Takuto is advancing smoothly. Nuru adds that their initial orders were to prioritize their living environment, but the enthusiasm to build a palace for their king has driven them to work tirelessly and joyfully. Later, Atu approaches Takuto, who is seated on his throne, and respectfully requests a moment of his time to discuss a matter with him. Takuto allows her to pose her question, and she asks whether he was genuinely an ordinary person before coming to their world. Takuto tries to explain, stating that although his family was wealthy, his hospital room wasn't luxurious because he wasn't closely connected to them. Atu, who has always felt a familial bond with him, now grapples with guilt over her actions, especially regarding the knight she killed and the family she has torn apart. She is concerned that the gruesome sights and smells of death, along with the expressions of despair from those she killed, might disturb Takuto-sama. However, Takuto responds with a lack of emotional reaction, questioning why such things would affect him. Sensing that something may be troubling him, Atu gently asks if anything is bothering him or if he's worried about something, offering her support and assistance. Takuto confides in Atu, acknowledging that numerous concerns are weighing on his mind. However, he expresses that whenever she's nearby, he feels a sense of security. He earnestly asks her to remain by his side and shield him from harm. She willingly accepts his request, pledging her loyalty and protection. As she gazes up at Takuto's dark and enigmatic silhouette, she resolves to fulfill her duty to him. After significant effort, the construction of the palace is finally complete. It is level 1 Minogre Palace, serving as a potent source of magical energy and mana derived from ruin. Remarkably, it operates without requiring resources for maintenance. Following the defeat of the investigation team, Minogre steadily accumulates the necessary power it requires. Despite this success, Takuto remains determined to locate the Dragon's Vein Cave. He hadn't anticipated acquiring a palace at such an early stage, and grateful for the accomplishment, he credits the Dark Elves, who intentionally overworked themselves to expedite its construction. As military magic, which requires specific attribute mana, enters the testing phase, it marks a strengthening of their nation's foundation. However, despite this progress, the pressing need for human resources remains unresolved. Takuto contemplates how to address this challenge. Suddenly, Atu has a realization so significant that she literally freaks out. She informs Takuto that no one has been appointed as his caretaker. Initially puzzled, he blushes as he comprehends the implication, reassuring her that he is capable of taking care of himself. Atu, however, emphasizes the necessity of appointing a caretaker for him, stressing the importance of having someone responsible for the well-being of the most significant figure in the nation, who plays a crucial role in ensuring the country's development and maintaining the people's faith. She argues that it's essential for Takuto to maintain a dignified presence, and, practically speaking, it's impractical for just two people to inhabit such a vast palace. She expresses genuine concern about the possibility of him needing assistance, and not having anyone readily available. Takuto realizes that Atu is determined not to give up on this matter. He agrees with her and explains that, due to his communication disorder, he simply desires someone with whom he can easily converse. Although this issue has been gradually improving, he still struggles to communicate with Gia and Moltar as effortlessly as he does with Atu. Additionally, he senses that they may still harbor fear towards him, despite his desire to be a kind and approachable king. Determined to address this issue, Atu assures him that she has an idea to solve it. She takes charge and informs Gia and Moltar that it's an urgent order directly from the king. Per Atu's instructions, Gia and Moltar are directed to gather all the young girls in the village, much to the surprise of everyone, including Takuto himself. Wide-eyed and shocked, the elves stare at Takuto with disbelief, uncertain of the reasoning behind such an unusual request. Sensing the need to make the situation practical, he decides to play along, behaving as if he genuinely issued the directive. Atu believes that communicating with young girls may be easier for Takuto compared to conversing with adults and women. Gia and Moltar perceive Takuto's directive positively, interpreting it as a benevolent gesture aimed at nurturing future candidates. They feel humbled by the king's apparent concern for their workload and are eager to carry out his orders. Takuto, relieved that his decision is being interpreted positively, finds solace in the fact that he inadvertently provided them with an excuse. Amura shares in the optimism, believing that Takuto's actions are aimed at encouraging young girls and promoting equality in their tribe. Women with occupations like hers are rare, and she sees Takuto's directive as a step towards increasing opportunities for women in the future. With the matter seemingly settled, Moltar suggests initiating the candidate selection process immediately. Atu directs them to bring the girls to the throne room. Observing Takuto's distress, she encourages him to regain his composure as they await the arrival of the girls. However, when the girls arrive and lay eyes on Takuto, they burst into tears, overwhelmed by emotion. Takuto feels a sense of awkwardness, as he hasn't uttered a single word yet finds the young girls crying at the sight of him. Their reaction seems to stem from his appearance, which casts him as little more than a dark shadow in their eyes. Atu reacts strongly to the scene, declaring that children who cry at the sight of their king are weak, lamenting that the country is already filled with such individuals. Gia interjects, reminding Moltar about the twin girls and inquiring if they have been presented to the king. Moltar begins to respond, but before he can provide any details, Atu swiftly requests more information, eager to learn more about the twin girls. He informs Atu that the twins have no next of kin and speaks highly of their intelligence and brilliance, though he expresses doubt about their suitability as the king's ladies-in-waiting. Atu confidently assures him that their intelligence will compensate for any perceived shortcomings, asserting her authority to make the final decision. She instructs him to bring the twins forward. Gia, already anticipating the request, obediently brings them to the other side of the door. As Moltar lifts the curtains, the twins enter the room. One of them appears beautiful, resembling a doll, while the other bears severe burns, staining her appearance. Takuto and Atu observe the twins with surprise as they enter the room. The sisters greet Takuto solemnly, expressing their gratitude towards him. The younger burned sister is Carrie, and the elder one is Marie. Takuto is pleased to meet them, welcoming them warmly. Atu notices Takuto's excitement and wonders about the significance of this encounter. Observing Takuto's demeanor, she surmises that they have passed the initial stage successfully. Curious about Carrie's burns, Atu inquires, and Carrie explains that they were caused by a disease, implying that it was a deserved punishment. Moltar assures Atu that he will provide further details about the twins' circumstances, indicating that there is more to their story. He clarifies that Carrie's burns are actually scars from a flesh disease that has since healed, leaving visible marks. Atu reassures everyone that, as long as it doesn't concern Takuto, there should be no issue with Carrie's scars. Turning her attention to Marie, Atu notes that by appearance she seems like an average child. Carrie reveals that Marie has endured her own share of hardships. When pressed for more information, Marie calmly confesses that she had eaten her mother. Moltar reveals that the twins' parents were highly respected individuals within the clan, known for their dedication and selflessness. He assures Takuto that their tribe will always remember their honorable legacy. Takuto reflects on the implications of their past and realizes the potential significance of their reaction to the human flesh tree. It dawns on him that the sight of human flesh likely evokes painful memories for them. Moltar provides further insight, explaining that the girls' parents were driven out of their hometown and compelled to embark on a long and arduous journey. The twins faced numerous adversities and were forced to consider extreme measures to survive. One such horrific choice was the grim necessity of consuming one of their own out of extreme hunger. Atu explains that the twins' journey has brought them to the Great Cursed Lands, a place of great uncertainty and danger where their struggles have reached a critical juncture with no assurance of a positive outcome. Regarding Carrie's scars, which resemble intentional burns, she also observes that their fair complexion suggests they have not endured mistreatment or abuse despite their challenging past. The twins do not attempt to conceal the hardships they have endured. However, Atu maintains that their past experiences, including their last, are inconsequential. She is content that they have managed to overcome their fears, and acknowledges that she has no choice but to accept them. As they look ahead, Atu sees a bright future for the twins as they assume the role of ladies-in-waiting. Marie's eagerness to serve the king is palpable, and she wastes no time in approaching Takuto, much to his surprise. Atu, internally flustered by the sight of Takuto conversing with someone other than herself, still affirms Marie's suitability for the position. Observing his reaction, Marie confidently asks for his final decision. Takuto, gathering his thoughts, addresses her, explaining that there will be numerous responsibilities and tasks she must remember and attend to, including taking care of him. Marie wholeheartedly agrees, pledging her commitment to caring for the king. Takuto then turns to Carrie, inquiring about her thoughts on the matter. Nervously, she expresses her determination to also give her best effort as the younger sister. Impressed by their sincerity, he commends their words and formally accepts both Marie and Carrie as retainer candidates of the Great Managra. Atu then announces the king's approval, declaring that from that day forward, both twins will serve as caretakers of the king. Takuto eagerly looks forward to building a connection with them, aiming to improve his communication with them. They begin their duties by tending to his clothing and food needs. However, Marie accidentally spills tea, and Carrie's attempts to dry his clothes lead to more mishaps, leaving Takuto's attire dirty and damp multiple times in recent days. Despite their clumsiness and somewhat sloppy work, Takuto chooses to overlook their mistakes, understanding that they are still children, learning their responsibilities. Besides, he understands that after completing their tasks, they eagerly head outside to play. Marie's direct question catches Takuto off guard when she inquires if he truly is a bad person. Takuto responds honestly, acknowledging that his affinity tends to lean towards the darker side. Marie, with a pouty expression, questions why he hasn't harmed them despite his supposed evil nature. Struggling to provide a swift response, Takuto hesitates before replying that he could never bring himself to harm his caretakers. Marie shares with Takuto that Carrie is upset with him for being overly kind to them, especially considering his reputation as the evil king. Takuto reflects on their role as his vassals and contemplates the severity of their mistakes. While he acknowledges that punishment may be warranted for such errors, killing them seems extreme. Recalling their earlier confessions about their troubled past, he begins to piece together the situation. He questions them if their mistakes were intentional, to which they respond with silence, their eyes cast down in shame. Eventually, they confess that they believe they deserve to die, burdened by guilt and self-condemnation. Marie and Carrie reveal that their mother likely sacrificed herself out of love for them both. However, the life they inherited from her has become a burden and a source of guilt, leading them to subconsciously make mistakes in hopes that the evil king would become angry enough to kill them. Takuto listens to their confession and questions whether they believe that spilling a drink on him would finally result in their death. He reassures them, explaining that he has no intention of killing either of them simply because he doesn't want to. The girls plead with Takuto to punish them for their perceived wrongdoings. However, he gently explains to them that while a bad person might harm or take from others, he could never bring himself to take someone's life. This response leaves the twins even more confused, prompting them to inquire about the definition of a bad person. He elucidates, explaining that a bad person is someone who acts solely in their own self-interest, believing they are free to do whatever they please, whether it be good or bad. He explains to Marie and Carrie that a bad person acts selfishly, prioritizing their own desires above all else, which is what defines someone as truly evil. He acknowledges that their mistakes were regrettable, but reassures them that they are not inherently evil. Curious about their mother's last words, Takuto listens as Carrie reveals that their mother urged them to carry on living. He responds by affirming that both they and their mother made the right decision. He encourages them to take pride in the fact that their mother's love triumphed over fate's cruel hand, showing that their actions were guided by love and sacrifice rather than malice. With tears streaming down their cheeks, Takuto gently pats them on their heads, assuring them that as his citizens, they will always have their freedom and his blessings for their future endeavors. Sometime later, Atu enters the room and notices the twins sleeping peacefully on Takuto's throne. She looks at them with a strange expression. Atu, however, questions him with concern, asking if he laid his hand on the children. Takuto, startled by Atu's question, reassures her that he would never harm the children. He quickly changes the subject and inquires about the report. Atu responds by opening a map and presenting the gathered information about the nearest town for a potential alliance. She explains that the neutral country Forngron is primarily inhabited by humans and beast folk. The administrative system of Forngron is overseen by a group of shamans known as the staff holders, a unique governance structure that reflects the multicultural nature of the country. Various cultures and ideologies are integrated into their society. Takuto recognizes the potential for diplomacy in this diverse and inclusive environment, despite its remote location. He is puzzled as to why Dragonin was built in such a distant area, considering the disadvantages it poses for defense and logistics. Atu explains that the strategic significance of Dragonin lies in the land itself. The city is situated on land that naturally produces mana and houses the valuable resource of the Dragon Veins Cave. Forngon, a dominant multiracial nation primarily inhabited by humans, is characterized by its worship of spirits dwelling within animals, plants, and the earth. As the second largest country on the Dark Continent, Forngon upholds principles deeply rooted in spiritual worship. Despite its diversity, citizens coexist harmoniously with little to no friction among them. However, this harmony does not extend to those residing in the pastoral regions, where insoluble conflict brews between the inhabitants and a group of humans known as the barbarians, who are mostly hill giants. The soldiers, both human and beastfolk, find themselves engaged in battle against a hill giant, a formidable adversary. Perplexed by the recent string of attacks, they recall being assaulted 3 times in the past week alone. Comparing their current situation to past encounters with orcs and goblins, they express a preference for those battles over facing the relentless hill giant. Curiosity arises as to why the hill giant, typically known for staying within its territory, is launching repeated attacks against them. Their concern heightens as they realize the giant's aim has shifted toward the city's earth wall, posing a direct threat to their defenses and safety. The situation grows dire as the soldiers realize that the repair work on the city's defenses is incomplete, leaving them vulnerable to the giant's relentless assault. With the giant targeting the earth wall, the soldiers know that if it breaches the city, it could spell disaster for them all. Faced with the overwhelming strength of the giant, the soldiers struggle to hold their ground, knowing that their fatigued bodies are ill-prepared to combat such a formidable foe. Recognizing the imminent threat to their country's survival, one of the soldiers urgently urges his comrade to summon the staff-bearer without delay. Amid the battle, a magical sword shines, accompanied by a voice invoking grass vine magic. Utilizing vine branches, the sword seizes the foot of the hill giant, exerting force to thrash the colossal creature and render it immobile. The soldiers, taken aback by this sudden intervention, speculate whether this display of power is attributed to the staff-bearer's magic. As the dust settles, the owner of the sword reveals herself, addressing the soldiers as brave Forngon warriors. She declares herself the newly appointed staff-bearer, the bearer of magical authority tasked with aiding and protecting the nation. Jumping across the hill giant's fallen body, she remarks on the incredible sight before her, praising her own abilities with a self-assured smile. As the beastmen and human soldiers begin cheering for her, she encourages them to make their voices even louder. Suddenly, the hill giant awakens and abruptly stands up, hurling her far away with its sudden movement. Reacting swiftly, she utilizes her quagmire magic and commands the grass and vine magic to ensnare the giant once more. Helplessly entangled in the branches, the hill giant lies subdued on the ground, unable to break free from her powerful grasp. She swiftly directs the soldiers to seize the opportunity and aim for its exposed eye. With precise aim, they unleash a barrage of arrows, successfully delivering the fatal blow that brings the giant down. In the aftermath, they turn to her with gratitude, addressing her as Lady Tonakapali. Later, some beast soldiers gather with an older master, who commends them for their bravery and efforts. Isla soldiers humbly request forgiveness, explaining that they are young and filled with enthusiasm. Just then, Tonakapali approaches, dismissing the need for forgiveness, noting that the elder's time in this world is limited anyway. With a mocking tone, she sarcastically suggests massaging his shoulders, disparaging him as she speaks. The master, aiming to change the topic, inquires about her lessons. In Forngon, the ability to hear the voices of nature spirits marks one as a potential staff-bearer. Pepe, a candidate who hasn't appeared in a long time, is rumored to be a prodigy. However, the Beastman master feels dismayed, realizing that she is far from the prodigy they had hoped for. In his eyes, the future of the country appears increasingly bleak with each passing moment. Tonakapali jokes, suggesting that everyone seems to excel at humor. The Beastman, despite his considerable 240 years, asserts that he's still in his prime. Reflecting on her previous battle tactics, the master recalls advising the soldiers to target the weak points of the giant race due to their superhuman strength. While he acknowledges Tonakapali's talent, he also notes her occasional airheadedness, a trait that leaves him uncertain about her reliability. They transition to their main conversation for the day. The master informs Pepe and Tonakapali that he intends for both of them to depart to Drantan, emphasizing that it's time for real work. Expressing concern, he mentions the numerous requests for reinforcements they've received. He wonders if the outposts believe they were left to fend for themselves, and admits to being worried about their lack of defensive measures for some time. While they have taken some proactive steps, it pales in comparison to the severity of the barbarian attacks. Pepe sighs, attributing the lack of defensive measures to everyone's greed, as they attempt to settle within the Dragon Vein Cave. The master adds that he has something else to discuss with Pepe, revealing that divination magic has indicated a calamity in the Great Cursed Land, which could be the cause of the recent attacks. Despite considering it a desperate move, he believes sending 2 of Forngon's most capable individuals to the Great Cursed Land is necessary. Indeed, the root of their problems likely lies there. If Pepe and Tonakapali can address the issue, it could resolve all their current challenges. The risk of losing their personnel is high, with only the old staff-bearer remaining. In the worst-case scenario, not only would their country's defense be compromised, but both Pepe and Tonakapali's lives may be at stake. It's a significant gamble they're facing. The master apologizes for assigning Tonakapali such an unfavorable role. Tonakapali responds saying, It's not as if the worst possible outcome will happen anyway. She then informs the master that they need to prepare immediately, emphasizing that it's just the two of them going, and they won't be easily defeated. Pepe chuckles and wishes Tonukapali a safe journey. The master, however, questions if she wasn't paying attention, reminding her that she's also accompanying him on the journey. The master is well aware of how crucial the Dragon Vein Cave is. It's like the heart of Earth Mana. After completing the country's research on tactical magic, he believes they can harness the potent Earth Mana to boost the nation's strength. They can't just leave Dragonin and the Dragon Vein Cave behind, so they have to find a solution to overcome this challenge. A week passes, and they finally reach the city. Along with a few chosen allies, they venture into the dreaded Cursed Lands. Little does Tonukapoli know that her previous judgment was a massive understatement. Standing before them is a group of dark elves accompanied by a stunning white elf girl. Atu inquires about their origins, while Tonukapoli questions if the girl is human. In response, Atu simply smiles, radiating beauty without uttering a word. Tonukapoli can't help but wonder if it's not just the girl, but the entire group of dark elves behind her that holds a mysterious aura. With a single glance, she can tell they are enveloped in a dense, foreboding energy. When someone inquires about the group ahead, Tonukapoli responds with frustration, expressing her own desire to know as well. In a stern tone, she warns everyone not to even think about drawing their weapons. Tonukapoli is now slightly worried, realizing that things have taken a turn for the worse. As beastmen, their primal instincts are reacting to the sinister aura surrounding the dark elves, and she is perplexed about what they should do. They are facing an adversary they cannot possibly defeat. Contemplating their options, she wonders if they should simply turn around and flee or bear the consequences of their animosity. Atu takes a moment to think, then calls Jia, instructing him to give the order for everyone to stand by. He nods in agreement to her command. Tonukapoli contemplates what standby implies, wondering if it means they have no intention of fighting. She believes that the little white elf girl is exceptional compared to the others, and wants to take action before the soldiers do something foolish. Suddenly, Pepe raises her hand and asks if she can have everyone's attention for a moment, surprising Tonukapoli and the others present. Pepe greets Atu and introduces herself, then asks Atu for her name. Eventually, they find themselves strolling through the forest alongside Atu and the dark elves. Pepe's words seem to have a mesmerizing effect on the wretched creatures causing havoc in Forngon. They are completely enchanted by her magic. She turns to Atu and asks if she heard what she said. Atu nods in agreement, wondering why this child is so drawn to her. Tonukapoli apologizes for Pepe's behavior, reflecting on how Atu mentioned that their desire to meet their king helped avoid any unnecessary conflict between them. Atu explains that every living being possesses an innate survival instinct, ingrained in their souls, which is only awakened when faced with danger. She requests forgiveness for the impoliteness of their soldiers, though Tonukapoli still finds the dense miasma within the forest unsettling. As for Pepe, well, she's just a stubborn fool, so everything should be all right. The strange young girl, Pepe, then mentions something about the king they worship and serve, leaving Tonukapoli to wonder what lies ahead for them in this land. They eventually arrive at Takuto's castle. As they face him, Tonukapoli reflects on the sinister nature of their neighbors, coming to the realization that Takuto might be a malevolent deity. Snapping out of her reverie, she respectfully bows before him and expresses her delight at being in his presence, informing him that they come from Forngon. Suddenly, Pepe chimes in, introducing herself to Takuto and expressing her pleasure at meeting him. She takes a step forward and boldly asks Takuto to be her friend, no matter what. Tonukapoli quickly apologizes for Pepe's immature actions, blaming it on her nervousness. Upon hearing this, Takuto replies that they can indeed be friends, and assures them that they will get along just fine from now on. Atu praises Takuto for making his first friend, and encourages everyone to applaud. As soon as everyone hears this, they gather and begin clapping, joining in the applause. Tonukapoli reflects on how unexpectedly this situation has turned out. Pepe may seem naive, but he treats everyone equally and without fear, a quality that allows him to easily connect with others. Takuto observes Pepe and mistakenly thinks he is the leader, when in fact he had assumed the ox lady, Tonukapoli, held that role. Despite the mix-up, he is optimistic about building a good relationship with them. The scene shifts to a grand feast, where Takuto's group and the beastmen are enjoying a meal together. Takuto and Pepe stand apart from the crowd. After a delightful feast and successful discussions, they bid farewell to Tonukapoli, Pepe, and their companions. Following their departure, Atu, the heroic leader of the Mogre unit, commends everyone for their exceptional work today. She applauds the collective effort that enabled them to forge amicable ties with Forngon. Jia, the captain of the warrior squad, expresses his delight at this momentous occasion for their peaceful nation. Accompanying them are Moltar, the chief of the Dark Elf tribe, Emla, the private secretary, and Marie and Carrie, the ladies-in-waiting. Finally, King Takuto extends his heartfelt appreciation to all for their unwavering dedication. Atu tells him that when they initially encountered Dragonin and mingled with the top figures of Forngon, she was constantly on edge. Right after that, they engaged in a battle with the Holy Knights. Moltar informs them that the Holy Kingdom of Kwaya currently doesn't seem to be taking any action against them. It appears they have shifted their focus entirely toward issues in the northern region. Atu considers this a great opportunity to concentrate on strengthening their country's influence. They have managed to reach a successful agreement with Forngon, and she mentions the importance of reviewing the specifics discussed during the negotiations and their meeting with Forngon. She suggests going through the details once more to wrap it up. The terms of the alliance agreement they made yesterday are as follows. Forngon will provide metal equipment, daily essentials, and other consumables in exchange for food from Minogra. Minogra will assist in eliminating the barbarians who raided Dragonin. As part of the deal, both parties will jointly manage the Dragon Vein Cave, which was the most valuable part of the agreement, granting them exclusive rights to it. The food was so delicious that they jokingly called it corrupting food. The investigation into Dragonin confirmed that they were under attack, but the origins of the barbarians remain a mystery to the governments involved. Since they lack information, they decided to push forward with the investigation. Atu believes that defeating different types of enemies will greatly boost their power. If they attack at the right time, they have the potential to completely eliminate the barbarians in one go. Currently, Atu possesses 13 battle powers, more than goblins, giants, and knights combined. Additionally, a sizable portion of the skills possessed by the destroyed units will be transferred to her unit. The next item on the agenda is the developed diplomatic relationship, especially regarding their agreements on mutual trade and defense pacts. Emily asks if anyone has any questions or comments on these points. Everyone continues to think about the specifics in silence. Carrie tries to speak up out of nowhere, and Emily inquires about her question. Carrie expresses her curiosity, admitting she doesn't understand much about what kind of country Forngon is. As everyone gathers around, they ask if that's the specific information she's seeking. Moltar agrees, echoing the sentiments of the group. Despite compiling and presenting information to the king, they remain largely uninformed about Forngon's internal affairs. At present, their knowledge is insufficient to engage in detailed discussions about the nation. From their perspective, the pressing concern is the proximity of the Great Cursed Land to Dragonin, which is vulnerable and unable to defend itself against barbarian threats. Takuto reflects that they only know what they have observed on the surface from previous encounters. He realizes that when discussing diplomatic ties, it's crucial to pay attention to even the smallest details about the countries involved, including their beliefs and the gap between their wealthy and impoverished populations. He notes that in the game system, everything was managed automatically, so he hadn't paid attention to these nuances until now. Their blind spot lies in the requirements that haven't been incorporated into their status. This realization indicates that delving into Forngon is essential. However, if they sent envoys to Dranton now, it might already be too late. Moreover, given the current situation, engaging in trade is challenging. Emily suggests that, in this scenario, it would be best to postpone their investigation of Forngon to prioritize mutual trade. Atu disagrees and emphasizes that gathering information in Drantan should be their top priority. Gia joins the conversation, suggesting that instead of waiting, they should send the envoys to Dragonin ahead of schedule and continue their investigation. Emily expresses concern, recalling that during the banquet, they mentioned that the barbarian attacks have been happening more frequently than usual. Additionally, this outbreak was unexpected, and they have no idea when the barbarians might target Minogra. Given these circumstances, it would be a smart move to send envoys led by Atu, who is considered a hero in their country. This way, they would have the necessary support to defend their king in case of an emergency. The conference table falls silent for a few moments as everyone contemplates the situation. Takuto ponders the unexpected requirement of fulfilling certain criteria for sending out personnel and officials on diplomatic missions, realizing it's crucial to meticulously choose the right individuals for the task. Out of the blue, Marie stands up and enthusiastically declares her intention to join. Everyone is taken aback, trying to comprehend her request. Carrie rises from her chair and approaches Marie, then informs the group that Pepe has given them the green light to come over and have some fun. Takuto is left astounded by this unexpected suggestion from Pepe. He recalls Pepe's words, indicating that not just Tonukapoli but everyone from their group is welcome in their country. He quickly agrees, mentioning that as long as it's for leisure, it should be fine. He then inquires with Emle about the possibility of sending a few individuals for a friendly visit before dispatching official representatives. Emily nods affirmatively, suggesting they could pretend to be stopping by to show respect to the city elders, who would likely be thrilled by the gesture. Hearing this, Takuto considers that as long as a person is a Minogra citizen, he can share visions with them. The only decision left is who to send. Both Marie and Carrie volunteer enthusiastically, promising to do their best. Takuto looks at them, wondering if it might be too risky to send them on such a mission. Emily immediately rejects the idea, stating that it's not appropriate to involve young children in such a dangerous task. She suggests sending Moltar instead if it's just for a simple greeting. Takuto agrees but points out that Moltar might not be the best choice for the job, which confuses everyone. Gia explains to Takuto that although Moltar is considered a wise elder among them, in another country he holds a position similar to that of a prime minister or minister of magic. She warns that if they only send someone to greet the city representatives, it could cause a major uproar. Moltar solemnly responds to Gia's remarks, pointing out that by that logic, Gia would be a general and Emily would be the Minister of Domestic Affairs, indicating that their positions are much higher than they realize. It's not possible to just send a regular person. The way someone behaves and their role should be carefully considered. Moltar then proposes that it might be a good idea to let the attractive young women go on this careful diplomatic mission, wondering if they might be the most suitable for the task. Takuto shouts, questioning if that would be too risky. Atu speaks up, mentioning that the king is clearly concerned about this, and wonders why no one else seems worried that the two women could be taken or harmed. She then declares that she will go herself. Moltar chimes in, stating that Lady Atu is the king's most trusted advisor, which is precisely the problem. Atu turns to him, inquiring about the problem. Moltar explains that they cannot simply send someone who holds the role of the king's confidant, someone of her stature. Atu is left feeling puzzled, but they have no other option since she holds that position. Upon hearing this, Marie steps forward, mentioning that His Majesty had given them the freedom to serve the king, and that this freedom was something they desired. Despite knowing the risks involved, they are ready. They stand before Takuto, asking for his permission to proceed. Their earnest plea touches Takuto's heart, and after a moment, he lowers his head and grants them permission. Both Marie and Carrie are thrilled by this news. Atu feels a surge of jealousy when she sees her king paying attention to other women instead of her. She gives a sharp look to Takuto, who is engrossed in conversation with the sisters and Emily. Emily then asks Takuto what they should do for escorts if it's just the three of them going. Takuto assures her that he has a plan for that. Just as he is about to leave, Moltar calls out to him. Takuto turns back, inquiring about the matter. Moltar reassures him that it's nothing too important. He just wanted to double-check something about Lady Pepe. Although Moltar doesn't object to their arrangement, he notes that Pepe's behavior and comments suggest she may have been acting without a solid plan. He asks Takuto whether he genuinely believes they should form an alliance with her as their leader. Takuto ponders Moltar's words, recalling that Pepe's eccentricities had indeed caught everyone's attention and caused some concern. Now he questions whether her words truly reflect her genuine intentions. Although he has some reservations, he believes it will be all right. Moltar gazes at him silently for a moment, then humbly bows, expressing his compliance. The scene shifts to Marie and Carrie, who are standing in front of a tall building. Carrie asks if this is the medical treatment facility. Indeed, it is a medical treatment building that provides recovery for all units residing within its premises, eliminating the effects of minor illnesses. Takuto had wanted to construct it because the cost was nearly as low as the human flesh tree. Emily informs them that they should now discuss the magic research facilities. Upon hearing this, Atu makes a displeased expression and sighs in annoyance. Takuto glances at her and realizes that she has been in a sour mood since their last meeting. Marie approaches him and suggests that he express his gratitude in a certain way. She whispers something into his ear, and after hearing it, Takuto calls Atu over and whispers something to her. Upon hearing his words, she blushes instantly and covers her face. Afterward, Atu inquires about the presence of their escort. As they continue walking, they come across several towering crows positioned before them. Marie and Carrie gaze at the crows in wonder, asking if these creatures are indeed the king's chosen escort. The crows immediately lower themselves before Takuto, urging him to give his commands. Atu, filled with curiosity, wonders if this is a medical team. Takuto responds, stating that he anticipated the need for them, making it a perfect arrangement. Since the Dark Elves became citizens of Minogra, their overall health has significantly improved by consuming only the food provided by Takuto. He gazes at the crows, who are standing silently, and remarks that despite all the things he has created, the crows always seem to be idle. He also acknowledges their special abilities as an added advantage. Atu compliments Takuto, recognizing his qualities as a great king. She then addresses the crows, declaring that she will now convey the king's words. Pointing towards Carrie and Marie, she instructs the crows to accompany them to the neighboring kingdom to observe the culture and current affairs there. The crows echo her words, emphasizing the importance of cultural observation and escort duty. Atu appreciates this humane behavior and anticipates a reward from the king in the near future. Takuto then addresses the group of crows, who now serve as escorts under the command of the two sisters. He announces his intention to give them human names. Excitement fills the air as he bestows the names Ichiru, Jiru, and Saburo upon them. The three crows are thrilled to receive their new identities as humans. Ichiru agrees with Jiru, affirming that they should complete their mission flawlessly. Saburo chimes in, assuring them that he won't forget his duty. Takuto chuckles as he observes their enthusiasm, realizing that his spontaneous decision to give them names has already sparked their motivation. Carrie watches them and remarks that there is one thing left. The crows immediately ask what it is. She asks if they will definitely pay attention to their worth. They shout in agreement, which fills Marie and Carrie with immense excitement. Takuto then inquires about Carrie's feelings, to which she replies that she will do her best. Atu offers her support, suggesting that if Carrie encounters any difficulties, she can confide in her. Carrie nods affirmatively, while her gaze is fixed on Marie. Emily enthusiastically informs Carrie and Marie about their upcoming outing, mentioning that she has prepared formal outfits for both of them. She transforms their clothing into stunning new dresses, and upon seeing them in their new attire, she compliments them, saying they look beautiful and ready for a fun adventure. She wanted to give them a completely different look from their usual traditional clothes. Carrie notes that the style is similar to Atu's. As they stand before Takuto, who is seated on his throne, he mentions that he is only using shared vision with Carrie this time. He instructs her to reach out to him through telepathy if anything goes wrong, reminding her that he's already taught her how to do so. Carrie requests that he entrust the task of observing Dragon to them. The escort crows screech in agreement, urging Takuto to leave it to them, then swiftly fly away. As Takuto waves goodbye, he wonders if they will be all right. Atu suggests keeping an eye on them from the conference room. Marie and Carrie are safely escorted to the city of Dragontan, specifically to the Multicultural Forum and City Hall. The scene shifts to the interior of a building, where a young woman is passionately expressing her desire to quit her job. Suddenly, another girl emerges, clutching a bottle of drink in her hand. This young girl is none other than Antilise Antique, the mayor of the city. She rests her head on the table, trembling with frustration. Just when she thought she could finally escape the decaying forest of Elnar and start living her own life, strange barbarians suddenly appeared a few months ago. In a tired voice, she explains that it happened right when she believed she could settle down with a partner and retire. She complains that she doesn't care about the world or couples anymore. They can all go to hell. She asks her secretary to take a look at the overwhelming pile of documents, questioning why she has to work so hard. The secretary carefully examines the documents, but there's little she can say in response while the mayor continues to express her dissatisfaction. Recently, the staff informed the mayor of the possibility of engaging in diplomatic discussions with the country of ruin, Managra. This country, ruled by an evil god, is causing frustration for the mayor. Not only does she have to deal with various local issues, but now she is also being told to collaborate with this force of darkness to combat the barbarians. She finds it all irritating and sarcastically wonders if she should ask if they have any human livers as a tasty snack. The officials expect her to cooperate and communicate, but she lacks knowledge about the dark attributes of Minogra, aside from what she's read in old texts. The current situation is really bad. Tanap left suddenly, leaving everyone confused, and poor Pepe couldn't even understand what was going on. Suddenly, there's a loud knock on the door, and a beastman enters, calling for Mayor Antilise. She shouts, annoyed, asking what the problem is and if he needs something from her. The beastman informs her that there are people waiting to see her. With an irritated expression, she tells him she doesn't have any meetings scheduled for today, and asks him to send them away, expressing that her time is more valuable than gold, and that she feels like she's going to die if things continue this way. The beastman then tells her that the visitors are representatives from Minogra. Quickly grabbing her face powder, the mayor shouts that they are very important persons, and that she will be there right away. Meanwhile, Marie and Carrie are seated on a sofa with their escort crows standing beside them. The mayor approaches and takes a seat in front of them, quietly observing them with a smile. She thinks to herself that they are an incredibly risky group and questions why the elders in charge would make a deal with such dangerous individuals, wondering if they've lost their minds. Even the spirits seem to be afraid of them. Snapping out of her thoughts, she greets them to the city of Dragontan, proudly introducing herself as its representative. Carrie expresses gratitude for the warm welcome, mentioning that they all hail from Minogra, and introduces herself. Marie chimes in, introducing herself as the elder sibling. The mayor muses that these young ladies are in charge, with the three crows accompanying them as their guardians. She is familiar with the land of Minogra and its dark elves, but wonders what kind of individuals these two girls are. She chuckles, remembering Tanap's description of them as the next generation of the elite class. She wonders if the Urfel sisters received guidance from the king himself, instructing her to speak with them without any prior preparation. She contemplates why they wouldn't head to the capital and instead venture out to the countryside, questioning if this is a form of intimidation. The troubled relationship between elves and dark elves makes her anxious. Suddenly, Jiru approaches Carrie and asks if he can have a word with her. She turns to him, giving him permission to speak. He then addresses the mayor, explaining that they are visiting at the request of staff-bearer Pepe, who suggested they should check in from time to time. According to those instructions, they have arrived here as scholars interested in studying different ways of life. The mayor asks if they are here for negotiations, or to discuss a specific agenda. Jiru assures her that if it were related to those matters, someone else would be present on another occasion to handle them. He suggests that she consider this visit a friendly greeting. The mayor's eyes well up with relief as she realizes they have come only to introduce themselves. She feels grateful that things turned out this way, especially since she had only a few minutes to prepare. However, she remains cautious, careful not to offend them in any way. Carrie, a bit embarrassed, mentions that it was their fault for visiting without prior notice. The mayor contemplates that the king of Managra, who shows such favoritism toward these young girls, seems to have a preference for youthful company. With a warm smile, she assures them that she will take care of their accommodations and guidance. Marie and Carrie are thrilled to hear this. Jiru expresses that they initially thought it would be an audacious request, but if she's willing, they would gladly accept her help. The mayor is happy to oblige and promptly stands, putting on her coat. She asks if they should leave now, as she could use a break. Leading them out of the building, she proposes starting the tour in the commercial district, which is the closest area to City Hall. She encourages them to ask any questions about the city, assuring them that she is familiar with every corner. Carrie, curious, asks why the mayor is giving them a personal tour. With a warm tone, the mayor insists that Carrie call her Antilise. She explains that it's important to take breaks and relax every now and then, offering it as a piece of advice. As the girls gaze at her, they are somewhat awestruck by her impressive physique. While exploring, Carrie can't help but still ponder it, and eventually asks Antilise about the main food sources in the area. Antilise explains that since this area is located in the deserted lands, it is very different from the northern region. Unfortunately, food production is limited here, resulting in small crop yields. On special occasions, they indulge in binbell birds, which require minimal food, and are reserved for celebrations. Cactus cheese is a well-known delicacy, but Aunt Elise despises its taste and wouldn't recommend it to anyone. Carrie mentions that they have incredibly tasty alcoholic beverages in Managra and hints at possible trade opportunities. The mention of spirits surprises the mayor, and Carrie explains that these beverages are referred to as heavenly nectar. Aunt Elise is intrigued by the idea, and Carrie suggests that she could ask her king to gift some to the mayor. Aunt Elise is genuinely thrilled by this suggestion. After arranging accommodations for them, she bids them farewell, assuring them that she will return in the morning to pick them up. Carrie believes that Aunt Elise is a genuinely kind and free-spirited individual without any hidden agendas. Even if she did have one, Carrie thinks she would have to be extremely cunning to pull it off. Carrie wonders if they should remain vigilant while consulting with Aunt Elise, but for now they are simply grateful for the hospitality. As they sit inside the house, Carrie suggests it's time to go over the findings of their investigation. She asks everyone to share their observations. What stood out the most was an overwhelming sense of fear. There's limited food available, no one is coming to offer assistance, and the presence of enemies outside is quite terrifying. Marie and Carrie can relate to these feelings, having experienced similar situations before. They sense an uncomfortable atmosphere in this place, and it appears that tensions between different races are impacting public order. Although everything seems fine on the surface, they notice individuals giving them unpleasant looks, and they suspect that kidnappers or criminals might be lurking around. Jiru immediately assures them that, no matter what happens, he and the other crows will do their best to protect them and ensure their safety. Carrie, holding a poppy weed she picked up with a seed still attached, remarks that the milk from the seed can be used as a drug that induces euphoria. She explains that this plant possesses hallucinogenic properties. Jiru questions if it truly qualifies as a narcotic, stating that her explanation sounds a bit childish. He goes on to explain that it's actually a well-preserved, wild plant, untouched by insects, which suggests it's cultivated and distributed within the city. However, appearances can be deceiving, and the situation here is far from peaceful. He desires to avoid any involvement in conflicts. Marie inquires whether humans have a strong affinity for conflict. Carrie glances at Jiru and mentions that during a previous encounter, he helped her when she had a mental lapse. Although it was a small gesture, he proved to be reliable. These words were not spoken by Carrie, but rather conveyed directly from the king himself through telepathy. Emily then inquires about their activities throughout the day, ready to hear their report. The next day, the sisters step outside to take in their surroundings and find themselves in a beautiful location known as the Dragon Vein Cave. The mountain has been cleverly camouflaged with earth and sand, but it seems that not everything could be hidden. Marie settles down on the ground and gently touches a small, exquisite crystal that feels cold to the touch. Carrie marvels at its beauty, wondering how the countless crystals buried beneath the surface would look if they were unearthed. Unfortunately, Aunt Elise couldn't join them due to a recent barbarian attack. It's surprising to find the Dragon Vein Cave so close to a residential area. Carrie reminisces about their mother's wise words, reminding them that there are countless wonders in the world yet to be discovered, enchanting places and extraordinary things that Carrie is still unaware of. Gazing up at the sky, Carrie reaffirms their determination to live by their mother's teachings. Suddenly, a voice interrupts their thoughts, commenting on the exceptional growth of poppy weed in this area. A man steps forward, apologizing for the sudden interjection. He introduces himself as Vesta Clan, the owner of a local company. Curiously, he inquires if Carrie and her companions are part of the Manogra delegation. Carrie glances at him and asks how she might assist him. He expresses gratitude for the purchase of their product the previous day. Vesta suggests that if they could cultivate poppy weed throughout the entire clearing, it could be highly profitable. However, he mentions that the mayor of the city is attempting to disrupt his business with unnecessary regulations. He proposes a partnership, suggesting that Manogra, which oversees the joint management of this area, could work with him. Observing their expressions, he chuckles and acknowledges their concerns about their relationship with the city's mayor. He hands them a map and suggests they meet that evening. Grateful for the map, they thank him. Later, they meet with the mayor, who is happy to be back with them. As they enter a building, she pours them tea and asks if they enjoyed their time in Dragon Tan. Carrie nods, expressing their gratitude. The mayor reflects on how well she is connected with the girls, expressing reluctance to see them leave, but reminding them that it's almost time for them to return to Manogra. At that moment, Vesta appears and politely asks if they could wait a little longer before departing. The mayor is shocked to see the president of the clan company and immediately stands up, demanding to know who gave him permission to come here, ordering him to leave. Vesta expresses regret for not meeting with her the previous night and inquires if they have any interest in the poppy weed business. Upon hearing this, the mayor contemplates whether the nation of Managra and the clan company have formed a business agreement. She shudders at the thought of a criminal organization disguising itself as a trading company, engaging in threats, assaults, murders, and fraud. She worries that if they team up with Managra, they won't be able to handle the chaos, and the city will descend into turmoil. Noticing her anxious expression, Carrie asks if something is wrong. She explains to the mayor that they were recently given a map and engaged in a lengthy conversation with Vesta. Sipping her tea, the mayor inquires about the fate of the town staff and the soldiers on duty. Vesta rudely interrupts, expressing his disappointment, as he had hoped for a positive connection with them. Menacingly, he retrieves a syringe and advances toward the mayor. The liquid inside is the refined essence derived from the opium poppy fruit. It's said that once exposed to it, one cannot live without it. The mayor becomes jittery at the sight of the syringe and asks if he intends to use it on her. Carrie watches with apprehension. Vesta assures her that he understands she must have many questions. As she gazes at the mayor's anxious expression, Vesta stands beside her with a sinister grin. Carrie firmly reminds Vesta that harming Frongon is equivalent to harming Minogra, and he should not underestimate this fact. The mayor locks eyes with Vesta, daring him to proceed. He confidently steps forward, claiming that if that's the case, then everything will be fine. With a single injection, he promises to transport Carrie to paradise. He orders his subordinates to beat the others severely, ensuring that one of the twins remains alive. His twisted plan is to make Takuto submit to him. As he charges toward them, an unexpected object collides with him, knocking him to the ground in terror. Suddenly, Minogra's medic unit, known as the Brain Eaters, arrives. This unit possesses unique abilities, one of which is providing a boost to uphold law and order in towns and cities inhabited by humanoids. Their other benefits include enhancing humanoids' attack power and increasing their resilience. The city is now under the control of a malevolent deity, with the Brain Eaters offering assistance as escorts. The primary race in Minogra, the homunculi, are not considered humanoid, so this unit would normally be ineffective in the early stages of the game for Minogra. However, those with a strong affinity for humans are well suited for this scenario. The escort crows are also undergoing a transformation to appear more human-like. Jiru believes that prioritizing one's desires above all else is a truly human trait, which he finds admirable. He adds that if they wear their own skin, they can become even more like humans. Marie immediately rushes over to the mayor, embracing her and reassuring her that everything is fine and that the escort team is not frightening. Vesta, horrified, realizes they are referring to wearing human skin quite literally. Carrie's demeanor shifts to a menacing tone, and she declares in a sinister voice that she will never forgive Minogra's enemies. Furthermore, she will not grant forgiveness to anyone who poses a threat to those she cares about, to those who have harmed her older sister, or to those who disrespect his majesty. She commands the birdmen, reminding them of the freedom granted by her king, and gives them permission to act as they wish. The escort crows advance toward Vesta, accusing him of insulting their cherished women and declaring that he must pay by having his skin peeled. With grim determination, they prepare to attack. In a panic, Vesta immediately apologizes, offering wealth, goods, and anything they desire. However, the escort crows, with menacing expressions, close in on him, demanding in chilling tones that he make amends by helping them become more human-like. Without waiting for his response, they begin to pierce and shred him and his companions into pieces. The mayor trembles in horror at the gruesome scene unfolding before her. Carrie approaches her gently, calling out her name and apologizing profusely. She expresses regret for the chaos in her room, admitting she never imagined the birdmen would escalate the situation to such extremes. The mayor reassures Carrie, stating that it's all right and that she understands. She agrees to convey the events to her superiors in a more favorable light. Carrie expresses her gratitude for the mayor's understanding. Before the mayor can ask Carrie something, her thoughts are interrupted by the arrival of one of the birdmen. In a seductive tone, he remarks that the mayor has experienced a bout of incontinence and needs human consideration. Embarrassed, the mayor quickly assures them that she's fine. Carrie admonishes the birdmen to stop fooling around, mockingly calling them bird brains. The mayor silently sits and listens as they argue, splashing blood everywhere. Despite the grim situation, she can't help but let out a laugh, remarking on their silliness. The twins had just returned from Dragontan yesterday, luckily making it back in time for today's meeting. Realizing that time is running out, Emil decides to gather the representatives from each district to come up with a plan. She quickly informs Carrie and Marie about the meeting and suggests calling each representative. Both of them nod in agreement. The scene shifts to Atu commanding Marie, Carrie, and Takuto to kneel. Now all three of them are kneeling in front of her. She looks at them angrily and expresses her frustration that the twins and the Brain Eaters caused chaos in Dragontan. They even went as far as dissecting a person right in front of the mayor, and then attempted to conceal their actions by leveraging the authority of the king of Minogra. She yells at Takuto, questioning why he allowed them to get away with it. She demands to know if it wasn't his responsibility to monitor them and prevent such incidents. In a trembling voice, Takuto replies that he didn't want to reprimand them too harshly, fearing they would resent him due to their vulnerable age. Atu angrily shouts, asking if he thinks he's their father. She passionately reminds him that they discussed this matter in their last meeting, and emphasizes that it's crucial for representatives to possess at least a minimum level of decency. The situation is even more troublesome because they had already addressed this issue previously. Takuto responds to Carrie in a subdued voice, acknowledging that the Brain Eaters had been a negative influence on the girls. Atu raises her voice once again, accusing them of unleashing the birdmen on the people. She emphasizes that if Takuto wants to act like a father figure, he must exercise greater caution. Just then, Gia and Moltar arrive, attempting to intervene and defuse the escalating confrontation. Atu slams her hand on the ground, declaring that it's time to address how to handle the situation in Dragontan. As everyone gathers around the conference table, the meeting is about to commence. Concerned, Carrie asks Takuto if he's all right. He responds with a smile, offering her a piece of candy as reassurance. Carrie accepts it gratefully, thanking him. However, before the meeting can proceed, Atu interrupts once again, demanding to know if the three of them have reflected on her earlier statements. Moltar then chimes in, sharing the findings from the Urfel sisters' report, which indicates that the city appears to be in a state of eternal despair. Carrie nods in agreement, mentioning that the king himself had confirmed the dire situation in Dragontan. Emily contributes by pointing out that, given the circumstances, some form of chaos was inevitable sooner or later. The city's internal situation is even more fragile than they had anticipated. Now calmer, Atu remarks that the residents of the city must be feeling on edge. She suggests that their goal of attracting immigrants to Managra can now be pursued with more sustainability. Moltar adds that they also discovered some of their dark elf clansmen residing in Dragontan. He tells Takuto that, if entrusted with the task, he guarantees he can convince them all to come. Atu responds cautiously, acknowledging that this is good news, but cautioning Moltar not to get ahead of himself. She emphasizes that they must prioritize dealing with the barbarians first. Both Gia and Emily express agreement with her assessment. Takuto reflects on the natural desire to help one's clansmen when receiving such a report, but acknowledges that assistance can only be offered if they are willing to accept it. He suggests to the group that, between the dark elves residing in the Frongon capital and potential immigrants from Dragontan, they may experience a significant population increase. Additionally, they have successfully forged a strong connection with the mayor, indicating that the meeting went smoothly. Takuto rises from his seat, feeling relieved as he had been close to having a heart attack. The next item on the agenda is addressing the barbarian threat, for which the Brain Eaters have provided a report. The report indicates that the barbarians consist of goblins, orcs, and occasionally even hill giants, with attacks ranging from a few individuals to several dozen. There have been a couple of days without attacks, but overall, the frequency of attacks is on the rise. According to the map of Dragontan, the city spans about 2 km from east to west, with gates located to the northeast and south. The city is encircled by a mud wall, the highest points of which barely offer protection against hill giants. It's remarkable that the city has managed to withstand assaults for so long. When it comes to hill giants, it's common practice to evade direct confrontation and instead find ways to outmaneuver them. Dealing with goblins and orcs on a daily basis certainly presents its challenges. Moltar adds that, for the time being, he assumes the twins and the Brain Eaters will not be joining them. The pressing question is who will be sent to address the threat. They must ensure they select the right individuals for the task. Takuto reassures everyone, expressing confidence that everything will be fine, especially since Atu is planning to participate. Emily is taken aback by the news of Atu's involvement. Moltar then asks Atu if she intends to use her skill snatcher ability for this mission. Atu nods, acknowledging that even seemingly weak opponents like barbarians possess skills worth acquiring, such as enhanced strength, outdoor survival abilities, and scouting expertise. She sees this as an opportunity to boost her own strength. Takuto expresses his belief that strength may not necessarily be the primary concern. He suggests that to ensure the city's defense, they need representatives to reassure the remaining citizens. Moltar then proposes that if this is the case, Warrior Gia should remain behind to guard Minogra, while he himself takes on the mission. He highlights the complexities involved in coordinating a military operation with allies, including negotiations, and asks Takuto if he can handle the operation. Everyone is taken aback by Moltar's request to participate. Atu agrees, stating that they indeed need more manpower. Moltar explains that he plans to bring along his apprentice, who has been trained to operate the Magic Research Institute they are constructing. He believes that with their assistance, they can effectively manage battles, especially if they're just dealing with pesky goblins. Additionally, if their numbers are insufficient, they can enlist a few additional warriors. Gia wonders if Moltar is referring to the long-legged bugs, considering their potential as reinforcements. Atu expresses her satisfaction with Moltar's decision and emphasizes her desire to avoid casualties at all costs, placing her trust in him to handle the situation. However, Emil raises her hand to voice her concerns. She worries that with both Atu and Moltar gone and only Warrior Gia remaining, there are still lingering concerns about the city's defenses. Responding with a wicked smile, Atu reveals that she has already considered this issue and takes something out, indicating she has a plan in place to address their defense concerns. She announces that they will designate the hero Isla as the cornerstone of their defense. Isla, like Atu, is the queen of bugs and one of the revered heroes of Minogra. She informs them that Isla's production is nearing completion at the perfect time, confirming that Takuto's decision to expedite her production was indeed correct. Both Marie and Carrie commend Atu's foresight in accelerating Isla's production. Currently, their defense strategy encompasses Isla, the long-legged bugs, and the forest terrain bonuses of the Dark Elves. In addition to Isla's formidable combat prowess, she possesses the ability to bolster all insect units. With the reinforced long-legged bugs and the cursed terrain effect augmented by the Dark Elves, their defense is significantly fortified. Excitedly, Takuto urges Atu to proceed with this strategy. Rising from his seat, he emphatically slams his hand on the table, signaling to everyone to initiate the mission. They are fully prepared to commence the production of Isla. Atu is filled with excitement as Isla is finally about to be brought into existence. They have eagerly awaited this day, and have expended numerous resources in preparation, despite the burden it placed on them. They believe it will ultimately pay off. Carrie, curious, inquires about the nature of the hero they are about to summon. Takuto responds with a smile, indicating that they will soon find out. Meanwhile, Atu privately ponders what might happen with Isla, wondering if she will align with their cause or not. Using personal telepathy, she considers the possibilities. Takuto reflects on his previous units, all of whom were established as subordinates, with him naturally assuming the role of their commander and creator. However, Isla's case is unique. In Eternal Nations, players can choose from various commanders, and Isla serves as both a selectable commander and a unit within the game. This means that if Isla possesses free will as a commander, she could potentially take control of Managra. With the power of the insect units she produces, they could even overwhelm the nation. In fact, the game introduced a system allowing commanders to be changed or even overthrow each other, adding a layer of complexity to the situation. And even if Isla has memories of him, like Atu, she might still show indifference, or worse, turn on him. Determined to secure their position, Takuto extends his hand and invokes a dark spell upon Isla. The atmosphere becomes charged with tension as his dark energy envelops her. Atu vows to protect him at all costs, but Takuto is acutely aware that he cannot summon Isla again if this attempt fails. Standing beside Isla, surrounded by his dark energy, Takuto witnesses the sky darkening and the materials gathered for her production being drawn into the swirling vortex of his spell. Moltar watches in shock, struggling to comprehend the gravity of the situation. Finally, the materials are consumed by the darkness, leaving behind a forbidding dark circle. Takuto stands there, visibly stunned and bewildered by the outcome. As the dark circle expands and swirls around them, Atu gazes at it, contemplating Takuto's earlier concerns about the risk of Isla's betrayal. Amid the swirling vortex, a towering figure emerges from the darkness. Atu wonders if everything is proceeding as planned. With Isla now before them, Takuto, with a sense of relief, calls out her name. Isla, silently observing him, thankfully does not display hostility. After a brief moment of silence, she moves swiftly towards Takuto, subtly disturbing her surroundings as she does so. In the next moment, Isla kneels before him, addressing him as her great king, and respectfully expressing her honor at meeting him under such circumstances. Isla, who reigns over all bugs, is filled with joy and emotion at the prospect of serving her master once more. Takuto is stunned by her words and silently gazes at her, while the dark elves express excitement at hearing her speak. Gia notes that Isla's voice resembles a young woman. Overwhelmed with emotion, Takuto trembles and falls to his knees before her, acknowledging that it has been a long time since they last met. He asks Isla how she remembers him, to which Isla reassures him to take it easy, saying she vividly remembers Ira Takuto. She encourages him to utilize her power to his heart's content. Atu then orders everyone to return to their tasks. Turning her attention back to Isla, she remarks on the passage of time, wondering if this is a reunion or a new acquaintance. She approaches Isla and gets straight to the point, asking if Isla remembers playing games with Takuto. Isla responds excitedly, her voice filled with affection, affirming that she remembers every moment with him, deeply ingrained in her heart. She then addresses Takuto, expressing confusion about the presence of the Dark Elves, and asks if he could explain the current situation to her. He suggests that they discuss the matter in a more appropriate setting. Using mind telepathy, Atu advises Takuto against explaining everything until they are certain Isla will faithfully serve them. Isla reassures Atu, saying she won't take Takuto away from her. Observing their interaction, Takuto thinks to himself that they seem to get along well. After arriving at Takuto's palace, Isla grasps the situation at hand. Takuto acknowledges that there are many things he doesn't fully understand, but he has managed to come this far with Atu's support. Looking at him, Isla acknowledges that she has been able to work diligently because of his guidance. Observing their interaction, Isla quietly murmurs to herself, recognizing that they have entered their own little world. Interrupting the moment, Isla states that she understands their strategy and declares her determination to protect this peaceful kingdom in this mysterious land. She asserts that she is a defensive hero, emphasizing her role in safeguarding their kingdom. She reveals that she has already produced long-legged bugs and suggests they consider increasing their unit count through the breeder skill. She then looks at Atu, noting that this implies the one heading to Frongon to repel the barbarians will be the offensive hero, Atu, the sludge. Overwhelmed by emotion, Atu falls into Takuto's lap, expressing her feelings of loneliness at the thought of being away from him. He tenderly pats her head and apologizes, acknowledging that she is the only one capable of undertaking this task. Meanwhile, Isla feels anxious about the upcoming challenge, wondering if everything will be all right. Despite her apprehension, she finds herself overwhelmed with excitement, reflecting on her newfound sense of purpose. Isla realizes that simply being able to live is a significant blessing for her. Atu addresses Takuto, expressing her hope that he enjoys this new game as much as she does. Isla then kneels before them, assuring them to leave the details to her. The mission to fight the barbarians has been dispatched under the leadership of Atu and Moltar. The scene shifts to the palace, where Isla voices her frustration, lamenting that Takuto seems incapable of doing anything by himself. She notes that he doesn't wake up until late in the afternoon, leaving her puzzled about how he has managed to survive this long. Isla points out that it has only been a few days since Atu departed. Marie explains that the king has always had the habit of sleeping until lunchtime. Carrie adds that if the king isn't awake by then, they usually go with Atu to wake him up. Isla becomes visibly frustrated at this revelation, expressing her disbelief that the great leader of Managra, the king of ruin, not only sleeps until the afternoon but also relies on two little girls to wake him up. Takuto reflects on the differences between Atu, who allows him to do as he pleases, and Isla, who is straightforward and meticulous. He muses to himself about the irony of summoning her, only to receive a lecture from her. Noticing his reaction, Isla admonishes him, reminding him that he can't act spoiled. He's a grown man after all. She asserts that starting tomorrow he will wake up on his own before breakfast. Just then, Emily arrives in a state of urgency, clinging to Isla and informing her that Gia has once again broken the equipment, causing losses that exceed their budget plan. Isla pats her reassuringly, acknowledging the value of enthusiasm, but also expressing disapproval of breaking things. She promises to scold the warrior captain for the incident. She suggests they review the planning together, though she admits there are many aspects she is currently unfamiliar with. Taking charge, Isla swiftly moves around, calling Marie and Carrie to accompany her and instructing them to guide her around Minagra. Surprised by her request, they comply, leading Isla to the part of the palace where the officials work. One of the officials stands up, addressing her respectfully as Lady Isla, and offers his assistance. Isla responds, stating that she doesn't have any specific requests and is here to learn. Carrie explains to the officials that Isla wishes to be of use to His Majesty and wants to observe them at work so they can determine what role would suit her best. Marie elaborates, explaining that this part of the palace is where they handle budgets and study finances, assessing whether they can achieve their goals within their resources. Carrie adds that, in addition to administrative evaluations, they also hold meetings where everyone convenes to determine their priorities and evaluate resource usage. Carrie then shows Isla some documents, mentioning that Amuru was kind enough to provide this primer document from her work materials. Isla looks at the documents and expresses her gratitude to Carrie. She contemplates that it would be beneficial to have these young girls under her care, as they appear earnest and clever. She considers it convenient to learn about Dragontan from them, given their knowledge and demeanor. Although she has heard about them from Atu and the king, she wants to observe them herself. Meanwhile, in the study room, Takuto remains asleep well into the afternoon. Isla notes that their next stop is the Magic Research Lab, conveniently close to the palace. Carrie informs Isla that the laboratory is typically managed by Moltar, but since he has left for Dragontan, it's currently closed. Just then, two researchers approach them from the opposite direction. Isla asks Carrie about their unexpected arrival, and the researchers explain that they have already finished cleaning the laboratory and are now tidying up the ceremonial site. Isla promptly commends them for their diligent work. After this, they proceed to the warriors' training site, where Gia approaches and inquires if Lady Isla is there to observe. Isla informs Gia that she is here to inspect the equipment. He is taken aback by the mention of equipment issues. Isla explains that upon reviewing the documents, she noticed a significant loss of equipment, prompting her concern. She suggests that there may be issues with safekeeping or oversights in handling equipment. She proposes that they check the storage area together, as it is not a large space, and asks Gia if they should begin the inspection. She instructs another warrior to give his report. The warrior remarks that Gia cannot be stopped once he gets into his Spartan mindset, but adds that Gia really needs to reflect on his actions. Isla decides to take charge of the situation moving forward. She commends Gia for coming up with a better idea and expresses her pride in his efforts. However, the other warriors notice that Gia's expression seems insincere. Isla stands alongside Carrie and Marie while all the warriors stand in front of them with their heads down, indicating a sense of respect or submission. Afterward, they arrive at the government office where the human flesh tree plantation is currently in progress. Continuing their tour, they visit fields where various vegetables and fruits are being grown. Isla walks around the fields, observing the crops. Finally, they reach the medical center, where the brain eaters warmly welcome both Marie and Carrie with excitement. Isla stands before them, observing their actions. Suddenly, someone informs them that dinner is ready, prompting them to head to the food distribution center. In the middle of the area lies a large pit where food is prepared and served. Carrie explains to Isla, Sama, that since they are still adjusting to their lives here, they have decided to do everything together in this central location. They also repair their tools and clothes here. Isla nods in understanding and inquires what they do in their own residences. Carrie explains that currently, their residences are only used as places to sleep. Due to the limited number of houses available, only individuals with families are allocated a house. However, since Carrie, Marie, and everyone else previously lived without any place to rest, they find the current living conditions more than satisfactory. Isla acknowledges this as a benevolent act from their king. She reflects on how they could entrust hard labor to her cute little nymphs, but still rely on the dark elves for skilled labor, which requires intelligence. During mealtime, Marie is so thrilled to see the food that she momentarily forgets she is still giving Isla a tour. Carrie quickly reminds her that they are currently in a work setting and cannot eat just yet. Isla kindly reassures them, saying it's perfectly fine since they're here, and she also wants to give the food a try. She asks if they would enjoy dining together. Marie, excited, rushes to join the line, eager to get some food. However, the issue arises of where they should sit, as there is limited space. The communal dining area is generously sized, with tables and chairs placed for gatherings, but not enough for everyone, so some residents end up sitting on the floor. Carrie acknowledges, a bit sadly, that they will have to wait a little while before they find an available spot. Isla, however, takes a seat on the floor and says she's okay with waiting for some time. Navigating the crowded area, Marie quickly collects 4 or 5 plates of food. Isla instructs her to approach carefully, worried that Marie's clothes might get soiled with food. As a hero, Isla feels it is her duty to safeguard her people, and the first step to doing so is earning their trust. Embracing her responsibility, she gathers the twins in her arms and proclaims that they are entitled to her protection, vowing to safeguard them with her life. Moved by this sight, the onlookers feel safe and begin referring to her as the mother of Minogra. Isla gently pats the twins' heads, appreciating their efforts and showering them with compliments. Marie especially feels loved, as if by a mother, and responds with a happy nod, pleasantly surprised by Isla's warmth. Isla then turns to them and asks if she can get their thoughts on a specific issue, mentioning that Emily assigned her a task. Marie and Carrie look at her with curious expressions. After carefully evaluating the options for the next facility to be built, Isla explains that they have ultimately decided to propose constructing a school. Takuto agrees that it is essential, and they also discussed creating living reeds as an alternative to stone walls. Secondly, an educational institution aimed at enhancing knowledge in the fields of technology and research is also under consideration. Takuto noted that Isla must go through the reproductive process to boost the amount of manpower available for basic tasks. With her presence, they have the ability to utilize the living reeds, and since they are not currently in a state of war, everything should be fine. Isla constantly commends the twins for their input, which helps her come up with new ideas for her assigned projects. Takuto recalls them smiling as they expressed their desire to assist the king. He proposes that the Dark Elves could take on roles as intelligence agents, stating that the sooner this can be accomplished, the more beneficial it will be for them. Takuto feels a sense of relief as he considers Atu, who is currently engaged in an intense battle. She shows no fear, and has no intention of letting anyone who dared oppose her escape. Mayor Antilles is surprised and commends Atu for a successful hunt. Atu announces that she has completed the fight against the monsters. Lady Antilles immediately addresses her as Lady Atu, expressing heartfelt praise and gratitude, her hands trembling as she repeatedly bows with tears in her eyes. She then asks how she could be of assistance, mentioning her strong friendship with the elf sisters, though she admits it might not be the best topic at the moment. She simply wants to find out how near they are. Feeling compassion for the anxious elf, who is making such an effort to impress her, Atu suggests she take a brief rest to relieve her stress, noting that she looks tired. Antilles gratefully accepts the suggestion, and quickly scurries off like a frightened rabbit. Elder Moltar approaches the simple wooden chair where Atu is seated, and comments that she was worried about being ignored, while the people here feared her. Atu admits that the confusion works to her advantage, although she's slightly annoyed that the residents of Dragontan believe she's a half-octopus being. Rumors spread quickly after Pepe jokingly said she resembled an octopus. Moltar agrees, noting that the variety of tribes in the nation has aided their resilience. Atu finds it irritating, but she isn't too bothered by it. Moltar then inquires about the skills she acquired. With a smug smile, she reveals that she acquired a larger haul than anticipated: goblin outdoor pursuits, an orc's enhanced physical strength, and a hill giant's resilience and healing abilities. She even encountered a stone golem and desires to gain its stone-like exterior. She laughs and tells him that Takuto praised her report and that she believes she'll receive even more compliments upon returning home. Moltar acknowledges that this is a positive beginning. The elder then turns his keen gaze toward the hill ahead of them. Atu follows his gaze and notices a small shadow emerging on the hilltop. Moltar wonders aloud if it's another hill giant, mentioning the numerous recent attacks. Atu is annoyed, realizing she hasn't even finished her tea yet. At that moment, the mayor suddenly enters, apologizing to Atu for the threat posed by the hill giant. Atu rises slowly from her seat and positions herself at the entrance of her tent. The mayor shouts from behind, warning her to wait as it's dangerous to move forward. But Atu bursts into a sprint, causing fractures in the tough ground beneath her. Antilles is unable to keep up as Atu rushes towards her prey, thus commencing what she calls the eradication of pests in the name of war. She shouts for the giant to meet its end, leaping up to its eye level and slashing its face with her holy sword after an incredible jump. The giant raises its hands to defend itself, but Atu's strong, slender arms effortlessly slice through its tough skin, severing one arm at the bone. The hill giant swings its massive club in rage, unable to see through the pain. Each time it crashes to the ground, it creates a thunderous noise. Atu dodges the airborne rubble with acrobatic skill, twirling her sword in the distinctive style of the holy sword art. She glances behind her and sees Elder Moltar casting a spell near their tent outside Dragontan. He seems to be using the black magic incantation, Land of Destruction, a spell that turns a designated area into cursed land within a certain range, highly advantageous for the forces of evil. Reinvigorated, Atu decides to put her enhanced physical abilities to the test. She avoids the giant's attacks until she suddenly halts. The hill giant sees this as an opportunity and brings down its huge club, victory shining in its demented gaze. But Atu blocks the giant's powerful attack effortlessly with just one delicate hand. The giant's face contorts in shock and despair. Smiling, Atu says goodbye, then unleashes a full holy sword technique, slicing a straight line from its forehead down to its chest. Breathing out, Atu gazes at the massive, fleshy body of the hill giant's corpse. Since it's so close to town, she decides that the best course of action would be to bury it. The cleanup following a barbarian confrontation often proves more physically demanding than the battle itself. As she contemplates this, Atu watches in shock as the corpse begins to disappear, causing her eyes to widen. She steps back a few feet, watching the body fade away into the sky until it completely vanishes. Atu has never witnessed anything like this before. She notices a small, shiny object reflecting sunlight from the ground where the hill giant's body had been. Carefully, Atu lifts one of her tentacles to pick up the unfamiliar coin. As Atu recalls how it all began, Moltar examines the coin, noting that he has never come across a gold coin like this on this continent before. Atu wonders about the disappearance of the hill giant's body and the sudden appearance of a coin from an unknown origin. She watches as Elder Moltar carefully inspects the coin. Judging from his expression, he also has a bad feeling and suspects it came from a nearby area. Atu clenches her jaw and furrows her brow, realizing that this is unprecedented. Foreign invaders suddenly appearing, currency from distant lands, and bodies that mysteriously vanish. This is deeply unsettling. Suddenly she realizes that this is similar to what occurs in Eternal Nations, and a look of shock crosses her face. Moltar addresses Lady Atu, who still has a puzzled expression, when a frightened Dragontan scout stumbles into the tent, announcing that there is an urgent situation. A huge group of barbarians has appeared, and they are spread across the land. Elder Moltar rushes out of the tent with surprising agility and gazes into the distance. Even with his slightly weakened vision, he can easily see the massive crowd covering the field. They have no idea what could be causing this. Takuto watches the scene through the perspective of a scouting bug, confused by the unusually high number of monsters. He wonders if this might be part of a game event. At that moment, Atu reaches out to him through telepathy, informing him that she has something important to report. Takuto tells her that he has already observed the situation using surveillance devices. Based on the scout's findings, he notes that the enemy force appears to be around 10 times larger than usual, potentially reaching a strength level of 10,000. Atu then tells him about the strange coin that was dropped by the hill giant. She connects her sight to his to show him. She explains that she has never encountered anything like it before and suspects it might have originated from another civilization. When Takuto sees the circular gold coin with sun symbols on both sides, it jogs his memory. He recalls seeing something similar in the past, as the game would occasionally reward heroes who defeated hill giants with a gold coin. Drenched in sweat, he anxiously wonders if this invasion isn't just a random event, but possibly the result of interference from another group outside the world of Eternal Nations. Ayla, noticing his anxious expression, reassures him of their contract and asks if he needs assistance. He acknowledges that it resembles a game event, but their enemies' skills are uncertain, and he is unsure if they will be able to engage with them effectively. He decides to instruct Atu to focus on defending the city. Isla interrupts, inquiring if he has a hypothesis about their enemies. Takuto stares intently, explaining that this enemy is not engaged in a traditional tactical battle, but seems to be using more sinister, RPG-like strategies. In another location, within a barren and dangerous terrain, a saintess gazes up at the sky, lost in thought. At that moment, a person comes into view, singing a morbid tune about death. As the singing grows louder, a figure appears in the distance, approaching the saintess as if heading for a picnic on a beautiful sunny day. It's Arakino, the slurping witch, a woman with a childlike face enhanced by makeup, dressed in a bizarre outfit. Arakino approaches the saintess, cheerfully inquiring about her well-being and expressing joy at seeing her after so long. Although Arakino's appearance is unusual, the saintess firmly believes that the being in front of her brings disaster. Unfazed, the saintess calmly asks Arakino about the 17 divine counts of punishment she has supposedly endured for 2 months, indicating that only death is appropriate for someone like her. Hearing this, the weeping witch raises both hands, feigning innocence, and questions whether the incident really happened 2 months ago, and if 17 deaths would mean killing many people. She sarcastically wonders if the saintess is being excessive, mentioning that while Arakino herself may be poor, she's also quite powerful. She laments that facing a saintess is an unfair matchup and pretends to cry, remarking that this must be her 14th death scenario. The saintess looks sad, reflecting on the fact that just like before, she cannot comprehend Arakino's twisted words. While the previous saintess was ripped into 11 pieces, she has only been given vague information regarding the incident. She inquires if Arakino's abilities stem from some kind of immortality. In response, Arakino, with a grimace, asks why the saintess can't speak like a normal person. Transforming into her evil alter ego, Arakino speaks in a sinister tone, expressing her disdain for good girls. The saintess's perpetual cold attitude frustrates her, making any regular conversation impossible. At Arakino's command, the lifeless bodies surrounding her suddenly come back to life and begin moving towards the saintess. The saintess feels sadness as she contemplates how the people in this city are being controlled. Their brains have been emptied, and they will never return to normal. The people, with the sole intention of harming the saintess, move towards her like zombies. Undisturbed by their presence, the saintess begins a ritual of burying flowers, which creates a protective aura that spreads in a circular pattern around her. Arakino commands her controlled citizens to proceed toward the saintess and launch an attack. The saintess quickly charges at Arakino with her sacred sword, paying no attention to the witch's pleas to stop. She initiates a brutal assault, piercing Arakino with the sacred sword and killing her instantly. As Arakino's body flies through the air, she mutters her final words, predicting her own death and expressing frustration with the game. The saintess, showing her contempt, kicks Arakino's lower half, and comments on what a pitiful sight it is. She strolls through the area, inspecting her surroundings, witnessing the numerous deaths caused by the battle. She offers her apologies to the fallen, taking the blame for not being able to save everyone in need. Meanwhile, during the training session led by Captain Jia, each warrior is drenched in sweat, evidence of the intense exercise. Before dismissing them, Jia looks back and inquires if anyone has damaged any equipment. His soldiers shake their heads, replying in the negative. Jia asks angrily if they are absolutely certain and instructs them to constantly check for any damages. The soldiers, a bit intimidated by his anger, whisper among themselves that it's actually Jia who breaks the equipment most of the time. Still, they're grateful that Lady Isla's advice has had a positive impact on him. Jia, still simmering with frustration, returns to his resting place. Looking up, he notices the sky and thinks he can see the moon clearly. Nearby, he overhears a conversation about their last difficult visit to the forest. Marie reflects that His Majesty, the king, showed mercy by providing them with food. Jia notices Isla and the twins sitting a short distance away, reminiscing about their traumatic past, being forced out of their homeland and eventually finding refuge with Takuto. They express gratitude for finally receiving recognition for their efforts. Lady Isla acknowledges the contributions of the Dark Elves to their new country, noting sadly that the people back in their homeland never appreciated them. She inquires if they were involved in any disputes. Carrie confirms, explaining that their ability to peer into the depths of people's hearts is often seen as a threat by other races. This unique skill, which remains unaffected by any attempts to conceal true intentions, led to their rejection from society and their eventual banishment from their homeland. Carrie adds sadly that only the king accepted them, a sentiment that Isla nods in agreement with. Jia listens quietly as Isla mentions that, even if others could understand the Dark Elves' motives, they might still dismiss them as just motives. She suggests that intentions can be misinterpreted, asking the girls if her overflowing affection for them might simply be seen as kindness rather than love, as she believes love should be clearly expressed. Marie and Carrie assure her that her feelings are obvious, bringing a smile to Isla's face. Jia feels a pang of sadness as he recalls a painful memory. He remembers when Carrie and Marie's mother pleaded with him and Elder Moltar to sacrifice her so that the villagers, and especially her daughters, might survive. The community had run out of food, and their mother, despite being severely undernourished herself, was willing to give up her life in a final effort to provide hope for the others. She claimed to have overheard the warrior captain and the village chief discussing the desperate situation, describing how everyone was so malnourished that some people's hair was falling out, and others couldn't even stand. She insisted that, if her body could offer a glimmer of hope one last time, she would sacrifice herself. Jia, horrified, shouted that such measures were only taken as a last resort. Moltar, meanwhile, had spotted Carrie hiding in a corner, watching her mother, who was prepared to give her life. The mother's feelings were genuine. She was terrified that, if she resisted, her daughter Carrie might be the one chosen as the sacrificial victim. Despite being bedridden and very ill, she wanted desperately to survive and protect her daughter for even a moment longer. Tearfully, she pleaded with them to safeguard Carrie in exchange for her own life. Moltar looked at her with a heavy heart, expressing his understanding and solemnly promising, in his honor, to protect her daughters. With no alternatives, both Moltar and Jia were forced to agree to her wishes. Afterward, Marie, who had once been lively and outgoing, shut herself off emotionally from others. Carrie, feeling responsible, began self-punishing by picking at her wounds and displaying them openly as a form of penance, bearing scars as reminders of their past hardships. Now with Isla around, the twins are finally able to relax, feel loved, and begin to heal. Jia watches the girls grinning in Isla's embrace, and a sense of calm washes over him. He listens as Isla mentions that she has a skill that can compete with theirs. The girls, curious, address her as Mother Isla and eagerly ask her to explain. Isla smiles and explains that her first priority is to bring forth hard-working nymphas. The twins look at her in bewilderment, asking what nymphas are. Isla explains that she has the power to enhance various types of nymphs and insects, making them stronger. Marie's eyes light up, and she excitedly declares that Isla must be talking about insects with powerful limbs. Carrie is equally thrilled to hear this and leans in to listen eagerly. Takuto and Isla are currently having a covert meeting. Takuto explains that the power he's observing doesn't come from a strategy game, but from an RPG. Isla finds this surprising, as they had assumed that the invading force might be from different countries within Eternal Nations, just like Takuto's team. Takuto agrees, noting that Eternal Nations includes various other games, which should have eliminated any issues with other countries. However, the details provided by the Holy Knights didn't match any of the game's units. This led him to believe that they existed in a separate realm and were not part of the game. In hindsight, this could have hinted at the entrance of another game into their world. Takuto, who has prepared multiple plans in the past, finds this turn of events unexpected. Isla attempts to ease his concerns, reminding him how fortunate he is to have this information and encouraging him to reach out if he needs her support. Takuto then contacts Atu, expressing his intention to give her more information about the game. He informs her that the approaching monsters are from Brave Questers, a classic RPG considered the foundation of all computer RPGs. In this game, the protagonist and their companions inhabit a vast enchanted realm, where players take turns controlling units to defeat monstrous creatures and save the world. The game centers around narrative and is designed to immerse players in the hero's journey. It also features extensive customization, allowing players to create unique characters with different stats and abilities. Over time, the game has developed its own universe and cast of characters, with both heroes and villains gaining significant fan followings. The scene shifts to a barren, dangerous land where the demon lords of ice and fire are in discussion. The ice demon inquires if this is the initial offering. The fire demon laughs, saying he's heard it's called the Dragon Den of the Forngone Nation. A captured Beastman scout has revealed this valuable information to them. Both demons are commanders in the Demon Lord army, led by the 4 heavenly kings. The fire demon struggles to understand why the monsters in this area are living peacefully alongside humans, and expresses his mistrust of the situation. The ice demon dismisses his concerns, claiming that these creatures are simply enjoying their freedom without needing a plan. In Dragontan, the city's soldiers are bravely fighting off the monstrous invasion, but the sheer number of creatures is overwhelming. One soldier reports to Mayor Antilles that they will soon run out of weapons. Feeling anxious, the mayor instructs him to ignore the potential consequences and transfer all available arrows to the archers on the walls. She orders additional troops to reinforce the defenses and directs civilians to evacuate to the northwest, hoping to leave the city once a path opens up. A soldier begs her to flee, insisting that the city would fall into chaos without its leader. However, Mayor Antilles deems it impossible, explaining that she needs to manage the battle directly rather than through a messenger. She emphasizes that their main focus must be the safety of the city's residents and urges the soldier to quickly help them evacuate. Watching the scenario unfold, Mayor Antilles is filled with sorrow as numerous powerful hill giants, goblins, and orcs launch a relentless attack. The city's army is too overwhelmed to take a break or adjust their battle tactics. A messenger has been sent to the Crescent Moon, but their hopes are low. They don't expect reinforcements to arrive in time. Dragontan is on the brink of collapse, and they urgently need to find a solution. Desperate, Mayor Antilles tries to harness magical energy to invoke helpful spirits and gain insight into the events on the outskirts of the city. Weakened by exhaustion, she collapses and coughs up blood, but continues trying to communicate with the spirits. Just then, Pepe approaches her, calling her name, when suddenly a goblin rushes toward Antilles, putting her in grave danger. To everyone's astonishment, the goblin is sliced into pieces mid-air. The Mogra scout birds swiftly intervene, eliminating the goblin. Both Pepe and the mayor are left speechless, gazing at the scout birds in awe and fear. The scout birds, in their transformed, terrifying state, stand guard. At that moment, Moltar arrives and inquires about their welfare, advising them to stay calm. The mayor, still shaken, coughs and calls out his name, asking what just happened. Moltar explains that these are the most skilled scouts of their nation, with no intent to harm her or the city. He tells her that their unusual appearance is why they were not part of the main forces. However, the king of Minogra recognized their potential and dispatched them as reinforcements. Thanks to the bravery of one of their nation's heroes, Isla, they will have the strength to endure this battle. The mayor is taken aback by the news that Minogra has sent reinforcements. Moltar encourages her to give her all for this war, reassuring her that his troops will protect the citizens of Minogra in battle. The long-legged bugs, also called scouts, have been tasked with assisting the Dragontan soldiers. Finally, Moltar gazes at the formidable hill giants and declares his intention to weaken the enemy forces and hinder their advance. He instructs Antilles to clear the city streets. Awed by his magic, Antilles expresses her gratitude to Moltar, who remarks that it's hard to show appreciation when everyone is stunned. At that moment, Antilles recalls Atu and inquires about her location. Moltar notes their confused expressions and calmly announces that Atu has set out alone to hunt down the leader of the savages. Antilles shouts in disbelief, questioning how Atu could act without first discussing it with their allies. Moltar responds calmly, acknowledging her concerns and preemptively apologizing. However, the mayor remains troubled, wondering why Atu ventured out alone in the midst of such a horde. Just then, they catch sight of a glimmer of light coming from the mountains. Shielding his eyes to look into the distance, Moltar declares that it seems she has located her target. He reassures Antilles, telling her not to worry because the brave hero general of Minogra will succeed. Antilles coughs, reflecting on how this one person's spirit communicates so much to her. As the atmosphere grows denser and the ground begins to decay, she starts to wonder if this marks the beginning of Minogra's assault. Meanwhile, on the opposite side, the ice demon is terrorizing the people, suspending them in the air as if they were mere toys. At that same moment, Commander Atu arrives at the ice-covered field, fully prepared to engage in battle. With unwavering confidence, she nods and states that it's a pleasure to meet an RPG player. Introducing herself as Atu from a strategy game, her expression turns serious as she sizes up the ice commander. With a slight grin, she declares her intent to eliminate them all. At that moment, a system notification appears, announcing the conflict between Minogra and the Demon Lord army. The ice demon, known as Ice Rock Sama, stutters in disbelief, muttering the word RPG as he senses Atu's powerful presence. His subordinates, wary of the threat she poses, advise their master to proceed with caution. The commander, however, orders them to be silent, declaring that he's not afraid of a hero. He underestimates Atu, boasting about his title as one of the 4 heavenly kings, and vowing to personally defeat the woman before him. The hill giants around him become emboldened upon hearing his words, but Atu simply smirks coldly. Realizing that he is indeed one of the 4 heavenly kings, Atu notes with satisfaction that defeating him would be quite advantageous. Drawing her sword, she employs her skills with grace, effortlessly evading every ice bullet the heavenly king fires at her. Moving as swiftly as the wind, she avoids his attacks with ease, leaving the heavenly king frustrated and clenching his teeth in fury. In a burst of rage, he swings his massive arm, attempting a surprise strike, but Atu dodges once more, further infuriating him. Atu has started to understand his fighting style, which prioritizes attack over defense. Seizing a moment of vulnerability, the heavenly king's subordinates prepare to rush her. However, Atu has already read their intentions. She leaps gracefully through the air, slicing through each subordinate with precision. Then, planting her sword in the ground, she releases her long, powerful tentacles, brutally tearing apart anyone who dares come near. Within moments, her tentacles have shredded the limbs of the heavenly king's followers, leaving a gruesome display of severed faces and spraying blood. The heavenly king watches in horror as his subordinates fall to pieces, paralyzed by shock. With a swift motion, Atu plunges her tentacles into the earth, lifting herself high above him, and then launches herself downward, slashing at her foe with a powerful swing of her sword. The divine ruler, stunned, raises his axe to intercept her blow, recognizing her tactic of dividing his forces. He begins to think of ways to protect himself, but Atu doesn't give him the chance. She briefly studies him, then initiates another assault. Blocking her strike with his axe, the heavenly king wonders if she is targeting his middle ranks, deeming it an impossible goal. He is aware that his army is composed mostly of low-level demons with no true leader to unite them. Without a cohesive command structure, he knows his forces would disintegrate like a swarm of mindless rats. He recalls that he didn't feel this kind of unease when battling against the heroes, and now he's puzzled by how quickly his considerable forces are being wiped out. Observing his expression, Atu smiles, believing that Takuto's prediction was accurate. In Brave Questers, while there are multiple versions of the game, they all share a common game setting with a feature called Engagement Range. If 100 enemies are within this engagement range, only 3 can be targeted on the screen at a time. Likewise, enemies not visible on the screen cannot attack. But in Eternal Nations, which is a tactical game focused on effective land warfare, a single attack can hit all targets within a certain range. This gives Atu an advantage, especially since RPG characters like the Heavenly King may not be used to fighting in this tactical environment. However, Takuto had warned her to be cautious, as their system might not function exactly as anticipated. She reassured him, saying she'd gather as much information as possible, and shared her plan to test her theory. Now, turning her attention to her current foe, she swiftly cuts down the goblins and orcs, leaving the Heavenly King in awe of her prowess. Smirking, Atu taunts him, saying he doesn't need to hold back, especially given the poor quality of his army. Enraged, the Heavenly King summons his ice spirits to confront her, ordering them to advance. Atu grins, recalling Takuto's advice about handling demons and other creatures, while also avoiding being trapped in a never-ending cycle of summoned enemies. She dismisses the ice spirits as a minor inconvenience and quickly dispatches them again. The bewildered Heavenly King curses the demon forces for defying the will of their lords instead of aligning with it. Atu, intrigued, asks if their ultimate goal is to dominate the world. The ice ruler confidently declares that their aim is to wipe out every human being and establish a demon realm. Atu responds by asking what he plans to do after conquering the world, suggesting that even a simple country has its share of responsibilities and issues to handle. She adds, almost teasingly, that even she has to arrive at the office on time and complete paperwork. The Heavenly King looks baffled at the mention of office, which makes Atu give a sly smile, instructing him to focus on more relevant topics. With a friendly smile, she inquires if he has any other dreams or goals beyond world domination, asking what else a hero might aspire to besides constant battle. The ice ruler becomes visibly confused, losing his focus. Seizing this opportunity, Atu launches a surprise attack, assuring him with a smile that he doesn't need to worry, she understands him. He stares at her, baffled by her cryptic words. Atu has already formulated a plan to gauge the true nature of the Heavenly King. She's realized that only 2 of his minions attack her at a time, which indicates a limited command structure. In earlier versions of the game, having only 3 enemies on screen led players to underestimate their intelligence. This setup resembles a classic game in which enemies had to rely on RPG mechanics, while Atu, by contrast, employs strategic gameplay principles. In a darkened battleground, she questions if he truly believes he can conquer the world with such limited power. Spinning gracefully, she concludes that eliminating him would be a significant contribution to her king. She eagerly anticipates the praise she'll receive. With a swift strike, she severs the Heavenly King's arm, taunting him to come at her, declaring that his axe can't reach her and that he's alone without his followers. She dares him to seek help from his demonic ruler. The Heavenly King bellows for his master, declaring that the time has come for him to surpass his limits. He refers to himself as the icy celestial ruler, claiming he can vanquish any opponent. He aims to cleave Atu in half with his powerful ice slash. Atu's body momentarily freezes, encased in ice, and she's caught off guard by the attack. She briefly reflects on how cold her legs feel and questions if it's even possible for her to feel this way. Her anger reaches its peak as she believes his attack has humiliated her. The Heavenly King, standing confidently before her, seems poised to unleash his most powerful move. Summoning all her strength, Atu maneuvers her sharp tentacles, and the king realizes too late that even with his strongest attack, he can't surpass her. Atu, with a menacing tone, commands him to perish, slashing the Heavenly King's face and delivering a fatal wound that extends to his shoulder, rendering him incapable of recovery due to the unique nature of her attack. Suddenly a notification appears, announcing that the celestial ruler Ice Rock has been defeated. Among the items dropped after Ice Rock's demise, Atu notices a glistening coin. Turning around, she sees the remaining giants and goblins, who look at her in terror before retreating, tails tucked between their legs. Watching the fleeing enemies, Atu thinks to herself that it's likely they won't be returning. Relieved that no one is heading toward the city, she reflects that despite being Takuto's hero, her body feels somewhat frail, and she realizes she lacks the vigilance required to anticipate such special moves. This glacial slash ability from Ice Rock's arsenal was entirely new to her, and now she understands why she couldn't move. Recognizing that these RPG abilities can affect her, she feels a surge of anger, contemplating how she could have handled the situation better. The guard of Minogra territory rushes to Takuto's palace to report that the enemy is nearing their borders. Takuto affirms that he is already aware of this, thanks to signals from the long-legged scout bugs. Isla informs him that the invasion has been anticipated by their king and announces that their headquarters will be relocated to the administration building. She orders the guard to return to his post immediately, and he quickly hurries back. Isla then turns to Takuto, expressing that despite his ability to process and share information from various units he controls, she is still somewhat worried. He apologizes, explaining that he hesitated in making a quick decision, confused by why the enemy chose to attack Minogra directly after previously focusing their forces on Funan. He wonders if their intention is to launch a simultaneous assault on Minogra, despite the dense forest making movement challenging. Takuto is also concerned that the cursed land might unintentionally reveal their troops' locations to the enemy. However, without sufficient information, he knows it would be premature to make any decisive moves. He is wary of relying too heavily on traditional rules and norms, and instead approaches the situation with caution and skepticism. He hopes that the enemy's strengths and weaknesses align with his predictions, and believes that by targeting multiple enemies simultaneously, they can turn the tide in their favor. Declaring that they are at a disadvantage but determined, Takuto prepares his forces for a crucial moment. Stepping out of the castle, he gives orders to Isla and the others to begin by quickly checking their defensive positions. Captain Jia and his warriors have completed evacuating civilians to the administration building and are now heading to their defensive locations. The construction of walls is progressing smoothly, assisted by the Dark Elves. Isla notes the swift reaction, attributing it to high morale among the troops. Takuto acknowledges that while they may not match the strength of a single powerful unit, they feel confident in their ability to handle the coming combat, given the current circumstances. He has strategically positioned soldiers across advantageous landscapes to maximize their terrain-based strengths. Brain-eating creatures have been stationed in the surrounding areas to ensure the safe return of civilians. Isla praises his careful planning, and the twins, Marie and Carrie, are equally impressed by the intelligence of their king. Observing their anxious expressions, Isla senses that both girls are still haunted by past traumatic events. At that moment, Takuto inquires about the number of insect larvae Ila has prepared. She reports that she currently has close to 200 bugs, mostly worker insects, though with modifications they could potentially take on goblins or other minor enemies. Isla laments the timing, as if she had created combat insects as well. They would have been sufficient to handle the minor threats they now face. Meanwhile, enemy forces from the south are growing stronger with each passing moment, and the Dragontan warriors are being encircled by barbarians. Atu has been tasked with halting the enemy's advance at all costs, but since they lack information on the identities or whereabouts of the other three Heavenly Kings, retreating is not an option. Takuto is grateful that his decision to summon Isla has proven wise, as her presence allows them to better protect Minogra. Isla kneels before him, addressing him as her ruler. Takuto, filled with determination, bestows his power upon Isla, the Queen of Insects, enhancing her abilities and granting her the powers of parasitic egg manipulation and hunting prowess. He commands her to use these newfound abilities to defend the land and people of Minogra. Overflowing with a sense of purpose, Isla feels more alive than ever, viewing the duty of safeguarding her people as an honor and privilege. She proudly wonders if there is any duty more noble than this. Just then, the twins call out to their mother, telling her not to look so worried and assuring her that they will protect the king and wait for her return. Isla glances at them, noticing how much they have grown. Carrie credits Isla for teaching them well. Isla gently tells the twins to watch over and support Takuto while she is away, then declares her intention to return with both information and the severed heads of their enemies. Takuto respects her power, and Isla acknowledges how much he has helped her. She sees this as her defining moment, a chance to reveal the formidable strength of the Queen of Insects to the enemy. In the depths of the forest, the Chief Flame Knight wonders aloud why they don't simply set the forest on fire. Why follow these bothersome rules? He grumbles. They've been burning things their whole lives. The Flame Mage beside him explains that their leader prefers to avoid drawing attention, but admits that he senses dark energy growing stronger as they proceed further. He speculates that an enemy may be approaching who could pose a threat to their leader, though it likely isn't a hero. The Flame Knight chuckles, nodding in agreement, and reminisces about their arrival in this world. The Flame Mage recalls the moment too, noting that various demons of different levels arrived, including himself. The Flame Knight mentions that both he and the Demon Lord Flamen arrived earlier, hinting that something may have occurred before their own arrival. The Flame Mage, puzzled, asks what he means by this. The Flame Knight hints that the Demon Lord may have been selected by a specific entity, leaving the Flame Mage perplexed. Their conversation is interrupted by the sudden appearance of a massive orc with a grotesquely swollen body covered in boils. Without warning, the boils burst, releasing a swarm of tiny bugs. The Flame Knight rushes to inspect the situation, only to be horrified by the sight of the insects. The bugs begin assaulting the demons, causing their bodies to deteriorate. The Flame Knight, frustrated, realizes he cannot land a solid hit on the tiny creatures, which continue to multiply and swarm. Their large numbers and lack of agility make it difficult for the smaller demons to escape, and the infested scouts become ticking time bombs, their boils on the verge of bursting. As the majority of their scouts fall victim to the bugs, the enraged Flame Knight contemplates setting the entire forest ablaze, but refrains, realizing it would be a disastrous decision. Suddenly, 3 Brain Eaters emerge from the shadows, causing both the Flame Mage and Flame Knight to tremble. The Brain Eaters condemn their attempt to defile the cursed land, calling it an unforgivable sin. One of the Brain Eaters comments to his friend Aikiru that their skins look interesting. Aikiru agrees, affirming that this will bring them closer to becoming human. Ichiro, deeming their escape unfavorable, asks Zaburo if he would like to pursue them. Zaburo agrees with pleasure, stitching his severed arm with thread and remarking that he can show it off to the women later. As the Flame Knight and Flame Mage flee, they are bewildered by the strange abilities of the Brain Eaters and resolve to report back to their boss. Meanwhile, the Brain Eaters taunt them, shouting that abandoning their minions is cowardly. The Brain Eaters chase them with eerie enthusiasm, though the demons manage to escape. Exhausted, the Flame Mage and Flame Knight stop to catch their breath, relieved they have temporarily eluded the Brain Eaters. But just as they start to relax, an ominous voice echoes through the forest, causing them to tremble. Isla emerges from the shadows, her presence striking fear into their hearts. Her dark figure looms over them as she declares that darkness is exquisite, harsh, and absolute. She calmly positions herself before the terrified henchmen of the Fire Demon Lord, who are too paralyzed with fear to even articulate their predicament. A system notification appears, announcing that Isla, the Queen of Insects, has joined the battle. Isla's shadow spreads darkness across the forest, and the unlucky minions realize they have no hope against her. They are quickly consumed by Isla. But just then, the Fire Demon Lord, known as Flamen and one of the 4 Heavenly Kings, appears. He comments on her positive attitude, noting that the sound of her feeding could be heard from afar. Isla, feeling slightly embarrassed, explains that the meat was tough and filled with small bones, which made her chew cautiously. For every enemy she consumes, she regains 10% of her predation power. The Demon Lord grins, revealing that he chose his followers carefully. Setting the ground ablaze with his feet, he studies Isla intently. Isla observes his distinctive appearance and realizes that he is no ordinary demon, almost as if he is a different type of celestial ruler. The Demon Lord Flamen powers up, ready to attack. With a sinister laugh, he declares himself one of the 4 Heavenly Kings. Dodging his sudden assault, Isla dryly comments on his aggression, noting that he strikes without warning. But she is pleased that he has saved her the trouble of searching for him. Identifying herself as Isla, she declares her intent to confront the intruders in the forest. Flamen sneers, calling her defiance useless and asserting his authority over her. Isla's patience wears thin, and she confronts him, asking why he targeted her master and the people of Dragontan. Flamen, irritated, dismisses her question, mocking her for focusing on minor concerns. Isla retorts that their conversation is hardly enjoyable and wonders aloud about his upbringing. Amused, Flamene asks if she plans to remain silent, reminding her that their only purpose is to destroy each other. Isla, unfazed, accepts his challenge and suggests they move on to the main event. In a dark, chilling voice, she promises to savor every last piece of him. Another notification appears, declaring that Bug Queen Isla has officially declared war on Fire Demon Flamen. The decisive battle between the 2 powerful forces has begun in the realm of Managra. Takuto is lost in thought, and Marie and Carrie notice, asking if there's anything they can do to help. He snaps out of his contemplation and asks if they're worried about Isla. However, they are confident that she'll be fine. Takuto himself isn't particularly concerned about her, given her abilities as the Queen of Insects. What troubles him is a vague sense of foreboding regarding the clash between characters from the strategy game and those from the RPG. In their initial clash against the Heavenly King, Ice Rock, Managra had the advantage, and the overall battle has been progressing smoothly. However, Takuto is uneasy, especially about the enemy's fighting abilities, and wonders if Flamene possesses any unique moves. Isla has recently issued a formal declaration of war against Flamen, and the Brain Eaters are standing by to assist, though the scouts have yet to uncover any new information. Despite these preparations, Takuto feels as though he's venturing into uncharted territory. Back on the forest battlefield, Isla continues to battle Flamen with ease, sending her swarms of insects to distract him. However, he remains unfazed and uses his fire powers to burn down anything that poses a threat. Flamen's aggressive attacks include fireballs aimed directly at Isla, but she skillfully dodges them, using her insects to divert his attention. Flamen, relentless in his assault, sets fire to everything in his path, including nearby trees. Suddenly, Isla summons a massive swarm of bugs to initiate a new wave of attacks. The insects swarm Flamene from all directions, leaving him with little room to escape. Flamine is astonished by how quickly she created such a large swarm, but he dismisses them as weak. Annoyed by his arrogance, Isla snaps back, telling him that he should treat a woman with more respect. Amused, Flamen refers to her as a true beast, but notes that it's unfair for her to be the only one using pawns. He then calls for reinforcements and orders them to deal with the annoying insects. As Isla observes the new arrivals, she notes that they've brought additional units into battle, including some under Ice Rock's command. Now it's her, 2 sacks of bugs, and the Brain Eaters against 3 of Flamen's units. She remarks that using insects as her personal army complicates things, likening it to an absurd summoning spell that doesn't require payment. Flamine, unable to understand her words, dismisses her concerns, stating that the weak are destined to perish. Isla smirks in response, gesturing to his reinforcements and expressing her gratitude for the meal he provided. Flamen notices with horror that one of his firewolves has been infected by Isla's bugs. She recalls Takuto's insight that, in RPGs, the maximum number of active enemies on screen is usually limited. With this in mind, she decides to use a single firewolf as a host for her parasitic bugs, leveraging it as a mobile swarm. Flamen sneers, calling her methods disgusting and saying she'll take any pawn willing to serve her. Undeterred, Isla points out that creatures born from parasitic eggs become part of her army, then orders her insects to attack Flamen's reinforcements. Her bugs latch onto his troops, sapping their blood and decomposing their bodies. Mocking him, Isla asks if he's considering fleeing like the previous pair of enemies did. Flamine replies curtly that he has no intention of running. Isla reflects that, as Takuto warned, the boss monsters from the RPG world seem unable to retreat. Playfully, she asks if she can pose a question. As Flamen readies another attack, he remarks that he's only just begun to warm up. Isla blocks his path, pressing him to explain why he and his companions launched simultaneous attacks on Dragonin and Minogra. She points out that dividing their forces wasn't a logical choice. Flamen briefly pauses, then bursts into mocking laughter, calling her clueless. He ridicules her as a stupid and prideful puppet. Isla, unfazed, proudly asserts that she is merely a loyal servant to her king, no more, no less. With a maniacal laugh, Flamen continues to call her conceited and foolish. Infuriated, Isla retorts that she is nothing like him, finding it repulsive that he repeatedly fails against the same enemies. Enraged by her words, Flamine declares that by killing her, he will finally achieve true freedom. As he charges forward, ordering her to burn and disappear, Isla realizes they may never get a clear answer. However, she's now convinced that the enemy possesses knowledge even Takuto is unaware of. It's challenging to get information out of them mid-battle, especially since Flamine continues calling for reinforcements. He fires flaming bullets in her direction, wishing her a fiery death. Isla remains calm, quickly regenerating her burned-off limbs after each of Flamen's attacks. Unfazed, she remarks that he hasn't noticed her regenerative abilities, which will allow her to keep healing as long as necessary. Just as Flamen prepares to launch another assault, Isla surprises him by forming a massive egg sac, which bursts open, showering him with a fresh wave of insects. Disgusted, Flamen screams for them to get away from him. Hovering above him, Isla asks if he has any final words. With a wicked grin, Flamine sneers back, showing no remorse. Seizing the moment, Isla uses her sharp claws to tear the despicable fire demon apart. After the battle, she informs Takuto that her task is complete, though she feels a hint of regret for the loss of her insects. Nonetheless, she believes it was a noble sacrifice. Isla is thrilled, certain that Takuto witnessed her triumph. She proudly mentions that she's leveled up and asks which new skill he'd like her to learn. Just as Takuto is about to compliment her, a mysterious object suddenly drops in front of him, interrupting their connection. Isla is taken aback when she finds she can no longer reach Takuto through their link. Her surprise grows as she sees the twins, Marie and Carrie, approaching her, looking puzzled. Confused, Isla asks why they are here, as they should be with Takuto in the administrative building. Gazing at their concerned expressions, she wonders what could have possibly brought them to her location at this critical moment. Meanwhile, Carrie asks Isla where they are and why she is here, as Isla is supposed to be leading the evacuation. Isla orders Harsha to protect the twins, but to her surprise, there is no response. She wonders if this is similar to what happened during Atu's fight. Isla tries to reach Takuto telepathically, but receives no answer. The twins, confused, ask Isla what they should do. Isla apologizes for raising her voice, reassuring them that everything is okay and that she will protect them. Suddenly, they hear someone laughing. Flamen steps out of the shadows and taunts her, saying it's too bad she thinks she has everything under control. He remarks that, as he said before, this world is beyond redemption, even if she thinks she is living a life of her own. However, Isla notices something strange. Flamen's body hasn't degraded any further in the last few minutes. She wonders if her attacks are being neutralized. Flamen mocks her, saying that she can't kill him. But, he adds, she shouldn't worry, because this is happening only because he is already dead. Isla suspects this must be some sort of system quirk, and asks Flamen if he's trying to teach her something. Flamen shrugs, saying she's free to think that. He calls this a scripted event. Suddenly, Flamen's body begins to disintegrate. He comments, almost casually, that there's nothing he can do to change it. At that moment, Marie and Carrie start moving closer to Isla. Isla, alarmed, asks them why they're moving toward her and tells them to stay back. But Carrie explains, panic in her voice, that her feet are moving on their own. Isla realizes that this must be part of the scripted event, and that they are somehow being drawn toward Flamine. She demands that Flamin stop, but he only laughs, saying it's inevitable. No matter how hard they try, puppets cannot escape their fate. Isla, frustrated, asks him what he means by that, but Flamin, still smiling, responds that they had a much freer world than he did, and that it isn't fair. He says they should be equals. Isla has had enough of his cryptic taunts and prepares to attack, saying this is the best she can do. Suddenly, there's a huge blast. Atu notices the explosion from a distance, and Takuto can see it from his room as well. After the dust settles, Isla asks the twins if they are all right. They reassure her, saying they're fine. The twins are looking at the moon from the window. Marie says that the moon is beautiful, and she tells Carrie that the king once told them that this phrase means, I love you. Carrie smiles and says it's a lovely saying. Marie agrees, adding that she had never heard it expressed that way before. Their king seems to know everything. Carrie reflects, saying that she used to think the world hated them. They were always on the run, with no home and no food. They even had to consume their own mother just to survive. But ever since they've been in Takuto's care, they've had a place to sleep, food to eat, and everyone seems happy now. She thinks maybe the world is finally starting to smile on them. Marie takes her hand and repeats the phrase the king taught them. The moon is beautiful. Carrie repeats it after her, and they laugh a little. They decide to say it to Isla later and keep it as their little secret. Back in the present, Isla is relieved that her girls are safe. But the twins are devastated and panicked to see that one of Isla's arms has been cut off. They say they need to call the king or those birdheads for help, but Isla tells them that this is as far as she can go. She wants to entrust something to the two of them. The sisters are heartbroken as they see the remaining half of Isla's arm detach from her body. Isla tells them that these flames will not stop, and if they stay here, they too will die. Through their tears, Marie asks, why does everyone around them have to die? They hug their mother and continue to cry, saying they just wanted to be together. Is that such a big thing to ask for? Isla gently tells Marie that she is truly grateful to them. She says that they are different from her little bugs because her bugs can only follow her commands. But when she came into this world, she was able to meet the two of them. She cherished their expressions that changed from one moment to the next, the way they tried to learn and do their best. She cannot put into words how much she loved everything they did. Isla thanks the sisters for allowing her to become a true mother. She says that a mother's role is to protect her children, and she will not let them die. Then, Isla takes out her heart with her sharp claws and presents it to the sisters. She apologizes to the king, admitting that she used this skill without his permission, and asks his forgiveness for this transgression. She holds her heart out, the crown of her life now in her hand. The twins, crying, realize what she is asking of them. They are devastated that they have to consume our mother again. They have to do it again. Isla apologizes and tells them that it is crucial for them to survive, and the only way they can escape is by consuming her heart and becoming heroes. She says that she is so happy she could die, even if they might despair at the thought of surviving. Yet, as their mother, she cannot help but wish for them to live. The sisters consume Isla's heart, wondering why this world hates them. All they wanted was to be happy, to be together. That's all they ever wanted. And yet, they could not have that. If this world hates them so much, then they will hate it right back. As they walk away from the lifeless body of their mother, they look up at the moon and whisper to her memory, the moon is beautiful, isn't it? Atu is locked in combat with a group of golems, all the while thinking that she needs to get back to Takuto as soon as possible. Takuto has instructed her that Isla will handle the defense, and he wants her to push forward and eliminate the Demon King. If the Demon King possesses any special abilities, prolonging this conflict could be dangerous. Even though it's a command, Atu feels conflicted. It means she can't be by Takuto's side during this battle. While she understands the necessity of her mission, she doesn't entirely agree with it. She hopes Takuto will stay safe. Suddenly, Takuto contacts her with a sense of urgency, telling her to stay calm and listen carefully. He then delivers shocking news. Isla has fallen. Carrie and Marie, standing over their prey, ask their enemies if they still believe in love. But for the twins, love does not exist in this world. As they finish off their enemies, a system notification appears, announcing an emergency. A new threat to the world has emerged. The Witches of Regret, the Elfer sisters. Atu and Takuto also receive news that the twins, Carrie and Marie, have transformed into the Witches of Regret. Atu informs Takuto that Isla used her skill, Demise of the Crown. Takuto explains that some heroes possess abilities that allow them to transfer their powers to others upon death, and it seems Isla forcefully used this skill on the twins. He remarks that he wasn't sure if Isla would ever need to use that ability. Her level must have been incredibly high after defeating Flamin. Atu then reports that the twins are currently moving south, destroying everything in their path. Takuto urgently requests her to intercept them, to prevent them from continuing their rampage in Isla's name. Atu is a bit surprised by his response and questions him, asking if he's really prioritizing the twins' actions over the safety of Minogra. She suggests he could simply recall them, but Takuto replies that he cannot. He can only monitor their situation from afar, and his commands aren't getting through to them. Atu is even more shocked and exclaims that this should be impossible. They have no need for units that can't be controlled. She cautions Takuto that these RPG mechanics are only leading their hero units to destruction. She urges him to reconsider their use, pointing out that the RPG system has proven to be even more dangerous since the death of Ice Rock. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Atu worries aloud that if this continues, the twins could die, and she herself might be in danger. Worst of all, Takuto could be vulnerable if their forces fail. She can't allow that to happen and desperately hopes Takuto will listen to her. However, Takuto insists that they can't afford to lose units as powerful as the twins, who now possess strength on par with hero units. Above all, he reminds her that the twins are their people, and he wants her to stop them. Accepting his orders, Atu acknowledges that the king's first priority must be the country above all. She tells herself that she has no right to bring her personal feelings into this, even as she feels conflicted. Resuming her battle with renewed aggression, she mutters in frustration that they call themselves the heroes of Minogra, yet Isla is dead, the twins are disobeying orders, and the RPG system continues to obscure information. She apologizes to the king for putting him in such danger and vows to protect him no matter what. Meanwhile, the twins stand before a building, and on its rooftop, a mysterious man shrouded in a black cloak looks down at them. The man addresses the twins, noting that they have struck down all his followers. To achieve such destruction with so little effort, it seems that fate is toying with him. He asks them if they're here to fulfill their side of the deal struck as the Demon Lord. Then, the sky turns pitch black as the Demon Lord raises a barrier of darkness around them. He declares that they will soon be shrouded completely in his veil of darkness. However, just as quickly, the darkness recedes, and a system notification appears, announcing that the power of heroes has cast away the darkness, dispelling the barrier. The Demon Lord, taken aback, realizes that the twins are heroes. He admits he didn't think heroes existed in this world and murmurs that it seems he is being tested. Resolving himself to defeat them, he pauses and poses a question first. Looking at the twins, he asks if they believe in God. Without hesitation, the twins reply, "There is no such thing as God." The Demon Lord declares that the twins might be a trial standing in his path, and he will delay no longer. He claims that this world is free from such limitations, and no one questions its workings. The Demon Lord then unleashes his true form, transforming into a massive, spiky creature. Carrie scoffs, saying that while the world may love him, he is merely selfish. She laments that they, on the other hand, receive no love. Marie adds that she would like to show him what real love is. Unfazed, the Demon Lord challenges the twins to face his trial and attacks them with a barrage of spikes. The twins, however, easily dodge his attacks, which only frustrates him further. He sneers, saying that they are nothing but lumps of flesh with tiny, insignificant bodies that could never reach him. The Demon Lord prepares to attack again, but Marie uses her skill, and a system notification appears, stating that the Demon Lord's weapons have forgotten their purpose. Shocked, the Demon Lord realizes she has an ability that can disable his attacks. In response, he unleashes a more intense attack and taunts her, asking if she can stop him this time. The spikes target Carrie, who does not move to defend herself. Instead, she stands still, saying that everyone hates her, that only her mother ever loved her, and that it was because of her that her mother was killed. One of the Demon Lord's massive spikes pierces through Carrie's body, injuring her leg severely. The Demon Lord laughs, mocking her inability to prevent the attack, and begins to move closer. But before he can strike again, Marie lunges forward and devours his leg. The Demon Lord is shocked by her audacity, wondering how she dared to consume part of him. Yet, as soon as she swallows, Carrie's leg begins to regenerate. Bewildered, the Demon Lord wonders if Marie's consumption somehow contributes to Carrie's recovery. Marie smirks and tells him that she has consumed many parts before, and that she can feel them inside her. She hints that he, too, has a wealth of love waiting to be absorbed. Carrie, now standing, confronts the Demon Lord, saying that despite all the love he's received from the world, he is still breaking her body. She calls him arrogant and, in a sudden burst of anger, declares that even if she is unlovable, she will make him burn. She then unleashes a massive wave of fire. The Demon Lord feels the searing heat and instinctively tries to keep his distance from Carrie, but Marie takes advantage of the distraction and begins devouring him once more. He mutters that he is growing tired of this fight, and realizes that his leg isn't regenerating. He begins to wonder if their blood has some unique power over him. Noticing his frustration, Marie taunts him, saying that he must be struggling, and suggests that maybe he just needs love to forget all the pain and hardship. She offers to help him forget everything. In response, a series of system notifications appear. Grudges were forgotten, followed by curses were forgotten, and finally, pain and suffering are also forgotten. The Demon Lord, however, refuses to yield. He declares that he won't be defeated by such lowly beings, reminding himself of the great desire he has cherished for so long. Rising again, he proclaims that he will not fall here, for God is with him, and as God's chosen in this land, he cannot lose. Another system notification appears. The Demon Lord has gained a second wind through sheer force of will. The Demon Lord declares that he will overcome God's trial and reach a realm beyond this generated world. He envisions a world without conflict, but others mock him, calling him crazy and pathetic for believing in God. Despite their ridicule, the Demon Lord insists that God exists and claims he is living proof. He vows not to fall here, not until he finds true freedom. The Demon Lord then commands the twins, Carrie and Marie, to attack the intruder. But before they can make a move, the Demon Lord is suddenly split in half. Shocked, the twins look around to understand what happened, and soon spot a young man who steps forward, asking if they are all right. Still reeling from the surprise, the twins angrily demand to know how he dared interfere and what he has done to the Demon Lord. The man tries to explain that he thought they were in danger and wanted to help. Carrie, irritated, snaps back, asking if they look like they need help. She tells him they were fighting for their mother, and Marie adds that they intended to defeat the demon lord with the strength of the love they had received from her. Once again, they ask the man what he has done to the demon lord. The man, visibly flustered, insists he didn't mean any harm. As the twins step toward him, he nervously backs away, warning them to be careful because they haven't truly defeated the demon lord yet. Before they can retaliate, Atu arrives and steps between them, urging the twins to stop and not to complicate things for her. She notices the young man and asks who he is. The twins explain that he interfered, so they can't just let him go. Marie, disappointed, asks Atu if he's allied with the demon lord, expressing frustration over the constant obstacles they face, calling it unforgivable. Atu observes that the twins appear to have completely recovered, which surprises her. It seems they've inherited the power of a hero. She grows slightly irritated, wondering if the twins actually think they could be a match for her. But then, to her surprise, she realizes that their newfound power has allowed them to recover far faster than expected. As the twins advance toward Atu, seemingly prepared to attack, the rising sun suddenly alters their behavior. Meanwhile, Atu reflects on her own mistake, shocked by how careless she had been in underestimating them. Suddenly, the sisters' aggression fades. Marie turns to Carrie, suggesting it's time to stop, and Carrie agrees, noting that Atu has nothing to do with their grudge. They apologize to Atu for their rudeness, and Atu, noticing the dawn, accepts their apology. Marie then hesitantly asks Atu if, when their mother sought the king's help, she could return to them just as she had the first time they summoned her with magic. Atu, with a heavy heart, tells them that their mother, Isla, is dead, and that, as things stand, there is no way to bring her back. The twins begin to cry for their mother, but Atu gently reminds them that it's time to return to their homeland, as the king is awaiting their return. Atu contacts Takuto to report that she has found the twins and that their injuries have been healed by the heroic power they inherited. She also informs him that the demon lord, the last boss of brave questers, has been defeated. She notes that they'll gather the remaining items and then return, apologizing to the king if it takes a little longer than expected. The boy who defeated the demon lord, Claus, starts crying and exclaims, "Isn't it too easy to get transferred to another world?" He looks up at the sky and shouts, "That was way too scary." He says he saw some beautiful girls in trouble and felt compelled to help them. Frustrated, he blames God, but admits it's partly his own fault. After being reincarnated in another world and chosen by God, he believed he was destined to save maidens in distress. That was the only reason he rushed in. Suddenly, a girl appears and introduces herself as his humble servant, ready to help him. Then, she notices a huge demon standing behind the boy and tries to warn him. But the boy brushes it off, drawing his sword and slicing through the demon as if it were nothing. The girl is amazed and exclaims that her master is incredible. The boy tries to show off, saying it's not a big deal, it's just a cheat skill after all. As they continue on their way, a mysterious voice threatens that next time he encounters them, he'll force them to grovel and beg for forgiveness if he really intends to save this world. The girl encourages the boy, saying of course he can do it because he's so strong. Meanwhile, at the Elnar Alliance of Elementals, an elf scout observes the boy and his companion through a telescope, reporting multiple unidentified figures ahead. The Alliance leader commands all soldiers to remain on alert, ordering the spirit warriors to prepare for an interception. Soon, they notice a massive swarm of succubi approaching, led by their queen, Vagia. She smirks at the soldiers, remarking that there are so many fine men among them. However, the elf chief warns his troops not to underestimate their opponents, stating that the tribe of elves is proud and holy, and they must stop this invasion. Vagia laughs, saying he must be joking, as they're just here to have a good time. She orders her succubi to let it all out, but the elf chief grows furious, and demands that Vagia control herself. Vagia steps closer to him, and teasingly asks if she isn't good enough for him. The chief stammers, distracted, and Vagia exploits this moment of weakness to attack him. Just then, another elf, named Zaius, steps forward, declaring that by the laws of the spirits set by the Tetrarchy Council, he will protect his people from her evil. He gathers all the nearby spirits and magic power, preparing a powerful attack against Vagia. With a mighty thrust, he hurls his spear at her, causing a huge explosion. The villagers cheer, thinking they may have defeated her. However, Vagia has escaped the attack and sneaks up behind Zaius, striking him with her secret technique, causing severe damage. She sneers, mocking him for trying to challenge her with such a grand attack. Zaius struggles to his feet, declaring that his power is a blessing from the spirits, and that she cannot withstand an attack like this. But Vagia dismisses him, asserting that men cannot win against her. She then rallies her followers, announcing, "It's time to party." Standing atop a tall building, she calls out to the god of excess, proclaiming that the chaste witch Queen Vagia will take over the world. Meanwhile, in the Holy Kingdom of Qualia's northern provinces, the saint, Siolina, appears sad. Ericina watches her from a distance, wondering if she rolled a critical success in her quest. Suddenly, Siolina's mood brightens, and she gazes at a sparkle in the sky, interpreting it as a possible sign from God. She decides that if it's God's request, she must accept it and looks forward to her next destination, Minogra. She declares that she'll do anything for the god of dice and that it's time to set off. Back in Minagra in the treehouse, Takuto sits dejectedly, thinking about the recent events. He worries about the lack of response from the long-leg bugs and reflects that while Moltar and other citizens escaped with only minor injuries, he was too focused on a special skill and overlooked the possibility of a mandatory event. He remembers that in the game, each of the 4 Heavenly Kings had their own events, but only the Flamen event had been triggered here. He laments that if he had realized this sooner or been better at giving orders, Isla might not have died. As Atu returns with the twins, she tells them that even under the influence of a powerful effect, they disobeyed Takuto's orders. The twins apologize, and Atu replies that they are forgiven this time. As they approach the treehouse, they see Takuto on the floor, and Atu notices that the treetop has been destroyed. She rushes over, asking him what happened and if he's injured. Takuto thanks her for her concern and asks her to gather everyone, which surprises Atu, but she complies. Once everyone is assembled in front of Takuto, he acknowledges that they must be tired and expresses his appreciation. Atu then brings up the twins' defiance, saying that to preserve national order, they should be punished accordingly. But Takuto responds that there's no need. There are no charges against them. Everyone is shocked by his decision, and Atu grows angry, warning that if he allows this, others might follow in their path of disobedience. Takuto takes responsibility, admitting that the events are his fault and apologizing to everyone. He confesses that his arrogance and carelessness led to this disaster. The crowd is taken aback, with some exclaiming that a king should not apologize. Atu is especially troubled, thinking that as an absolute existence, Takuto should never bow to his subordinates or admit fault. She believes that a king must maintain his dignity and authority. However, before she can say anything, Takuto announces that he will recover what he has lost and promises to bring Isla back. His declaration shocks everyone, especially the twins. Atu questions how he intends to accomplish this, reminding him that resummoning hero units is impossible. Takuto explains that in their civilization's lore, those who ascend to heaven live forever in ultimate happiness and eternal peace, free from hardship and pain. He speaks of reviving the dead and reaching a new dimension, the Ascension Victory, the most challenging win condition in Eternal Nations. Takuto visits the country's market with Atu and the twins. He explains that they're using the gold coin drops they've brought back to exchange for magic power at various stalls in the market. With this magic power, he plans to invest in the nation using his emergency production skill. Marie then complains that she asked for an apple, but the one she got is blue instead of red. Takuto laughs, explaining, "That's just the kind of place this is." He reminds her that this was originally a state-run resource trading facility. Atu states that they used to rely on whatever little magic power they could gather to trade for resources, so she was surprised when Takuto managed to build this marketplace. She's even more amazed that he can use gold from the RPG system to trade here, and that their trade-in values were higher than expected. Thanks to this, they've been able to fully build essential structures like the training ground, the learning institute, and the living reeds. Takuto notes that any further buildings will require additional technology, but they'll manage with the ones they have for now. However, he cautions that there's a limit to how much magic power they can store, so they'll need to stop exchanging when they reach that limit. Atu agrees, saying that although they've accumulated plenty of gold, they must not waste it. Moving on, Takuto brings up the pressing issue of their combat strength. He mentions that they've been working on it and should check on the progress. When they arrive at the training facility, they're greeted by a man who mentions that Takuto is also here to check on the headhunter bug. Takuto explains that this is the evolved form of the long-leg bug, and that he wants to see if it has improved mobility and performance in action. However, the primary purpose of their visit is to assess the overall progress. The man demonstrates his shooting skills by aiming at a scarecrow on a distant hill. Although he misses, Takuto appreciates his effort, remarking on how much everyone has improved in such a short time. Meanwhile, Marie tries her hand at shooting and impresses everyone with her precision. Carrie says that all she needs to do is imagine the target in her head, and she'll hit it too. She then shoots and also hits the mark. The man, feeling embarrassed, apologizes to Takuto and vows to work harder. Takuto encourages him, explaining that Marie and Carrie are special cases, having inherited powers from the beasts, which gives them an advantage in handling the recoil. The man then asks Takuto about the ammunition they're using. He reports that they've recovered every bullet and casing as instructed, but wonders if it's wise to use so many resources just for training. Takuto reassures him, explaining that they can trade these materials as raw resources at the market, so it's fine. However, he advises caution with explosives, as they're more costly. Still, he emphasizes that he wants everyone to improve their accuracy. With only 3 skilled shooters, including the man and the twins, he hopes the rest will catch up soon so they can start using their power for business purposes. Just then, an elf runs up to Takuto and reports that a messenger from Dragonton has arrived with a letter from their king and from Pepe. Takuto says it's good timing and gathers everyone for an immediate meeting. After reading the letter, Emil asks how they should interpret it, speculating that Dragontan might want to hand over control to them. Atu points out that the letter doesn't mention anything so drastic, only a request for a meeting with their leaders. Moltar comments that on the surface this seems beneficial, but he suspects there may be a trap. Takuto acknowledges that they've only recently formed an alliance, so it's difficult to judge their intentions. He asks Emil about the situation in Foncaven, and she explains that they haven't received much communication from Dragontan's mayor, possibly due to the recent exodus of people leaving Dragontan. Atu adds that while the city itself wasn't heavily damaged, EML suggests that the real issue lies elsewhere. She explains that Minogra's forces were the main defense in the war, and with so little support from their homeland, many people are choosing to leave Dragontan for safer areas. This has led to struggles in maintaining public order, regardless of the city's physical state. Takuto speculates that Dragontan's leaders may see their city as doomed to fall eventually, and are considering joining Minogra for protection. Atu notes that such an alliance would give them control over the city, its people, and the valuable dragon vein. Takuto is confident that Dragontan will try to negotiate over control of the dragon vein, as that was the city's primary asset. Atu asks Takuto if this deal is worth pursuing. He replies that their country has always had a shortage of people, so gaining new citizens would be beneficial for defense against future threats. While they lack the resources to fully resettle Dragontan, he suggests they could supply the city with weapons. Moltar becomes alarmed, arguing that if other nations get their hands on Minogra's weapons, they might exploit them. Takuto explains that as their proficiency with firearms grows, so will their overall strength. Moreover, since he is the only one who can manufacture the specific ammunition, no other nation could replicate it with their current level of technology. The man at the training facility realizes that this is the business Takuto mentioned earlier. Takuto explains that this opportunity arose unexpectedly, and they'll make sure to leverage it. Although they may not get full ownership of Dragontan, he intends to negotiate for at least a co-management arrangement of the Dragon Vein. Selling weapons to Fonkaven would also mean they wouldn't need to keep a constant guard against barbarian attacks. Without Minogra's support, Dragontan would struggle to survive. So Alina, looking at the documents, feels miserable as she thinks she hasn't expected things to blow out to such an extent. She feels sad as she thinks that behind all these documents, people are suffering. She thinks she must leave no stone unturned and make things right. She feels hopeless as she thinks she could have understood the text faster if she were more educated. She thinks to herself that the day would come when she would curse her lowly upbringing. As she is sitting there, someone knocks at the door and introduces himself as Fjord. So Alina tells him to enter, and he enters and informs her that the investigations into the disease Cardinal's estates have been completed. He says who could have imagined that so many assets were hidden. Fjord Weisturk is the captain of the Southern Province Paladins. He further states that if only these could have gone to the needy and vulnerable, then he can only lament his own inability to act. So Alina says that God intended them to be beacons of light so that they can make things right, and says that she'll need Fjord's help for recruiting. Fjord says that it was tough, but they have notified every town and village. So Alina thinks it's suspicious to see so many positions open at once, and thinks that it is obvious that the nobility were deeply corrupt and any potential candidates are on edge. As the silver lining here is that most of the work was completed by the local clergy, citizens are still living their lives as usual. But with all these administrative positions open, this can't last forever. So Alina says to Fjord that it's getting dire. She gives permission to Fjord to use her name to find more staff. Fjord thinks using a saint's name is such a big thing. Fjord agrees and ensures her that they'll respond to her resolve. Before leaving, he asks one question about their report to the Central Branch and asks if they will be able to continue to maintain radio silence. So Alina replies without bothering that it would not be an issue. If the Central Branch starts getting involved, they will only add more fuel to the flames. Arikino meets Fjord and asks why he has bags around his eyes and if he is not getting enough sleep. Fjord tells her to excuse him for a moment, but Arikino tells him to just believe in her. Fjord feels strange while Arikino reads a spell on him, and he forgets everything. Fjord then says to Arikino, "Super game," as he was just feeling a bit busy. Arikino tells him not to overdo his work. Fjord laughs awkwardly as he says it's not good to have a lady worry about him, especially when Qualia is on the cusp of being thrown into turmoil. Arikino calls him Black Company President. Fjord laughs and says that it is the duty of a holy knight to be God's sword and shield in times of need. Arikino says he'll get his wish fulfilled. She gives a list of possessions held by their bishops. Fjord becomes shocked and asks where she found this. Arikino brushes off his question, saying it's not important at this moment. Fjord agrees, and happily leaves, saying he'll get right to these documents. Then Arikino comes to Soalina, saying it feels great to do good deeds. Soalina asks her if she has again brainwashed him. Arikino laughs, saying he was about to snap out. Arikino says if things continue to go well, then all the bad people in this area will disappear. As both are talking, they hear a noise saying, if they keep these things up and keep it going, and if things continue to go well, then there will be no more unfortunate people like her. There is standing a lady fully veiled. So Alina gets excited as she thinks it's the same beautiful voice ever and feels like hearing the voice of a goddess. The veiled lady is one of the 7 great saints of Idragia named Fennel Kamair. Arikino pops in, calling her veiled lady, and says it's nice meeting her. The veiled lady also says that it's nice meeting Arikino and says it's good that she is taking on Soalina. Arikino says yes, and that she is one step closer. But the veiled lady refuses and says that's not what she is talking about. The veiled lady emphasizes it took a while though. So Alina remains silent while she is thinking about the states of Qualia running with a lot of autonomy, and also that there is a culture of everyone staying in their own lands, because Fenesama is from another area under a different jurisdiction. So Alina thinks that she doesn't know what kind of battle she had with Arikino, and tries to conclude, but she gets interrupted by Fene, who asks her what's wrong with her as Soalina is not looking good. Soalina hesitates but asks if Arikino did anything to Fena-sama. Soalina gets the answer, no. Soalina gets shocked as she says if she thinks that she is also brainwashed by Arikino. Fena says if that's what's on her mind, that the veiled saint has made a deal with the slurping witch. A black alley deal behind closed doors. The veiled lady says that is a blind idea as God does not approve of such whims, and she should forget about the notion. Arikino says to Soalina to let them save the people, that's why they are called saints, and were created by God. The veiled lady agrees and says yes, all people deserve to be saved. On the other side in Foncaven Dragonton, Antilles breathes deeply. She thinks they are there at last, and today they will meet with Myongra from the spirits to let this day pass without any incident, but deep inside, she is still confused as they'll decide to ditch her. She reminds the instructions to them again and tells them that Master Tonokapali has said that the king of their nation is beyond their world's reasoning, but they cannot be disrespectful to those they have made an alliance with. She tells them to do what is proper for the people of Dragontan. The soldiers understand the command, and their enemies appear, and the real battle starts. The king of Myongra appears, and Antilles becomes possessed under his spell. She looks at the king and thinks if he is the king of Myongra. She reminds herself to breathe again, and now finally she can breathe and asks others if they can also breathe as well. On one side is the great king of Myongra, and on the other side are all the other distinguished people of Myongra. Antilles introduces herself, saying she has led this humble city of Dragontan and tells her name is Antilles Antique. She says their entire city welcomes them to their home. The king thanks her, calling her guide. Antilles feels moved and thinks that's how he sounds like, and that she can feel concern in his voice for her. Antilles thinks that the black robe must have been made to suppress some of the looming feelings of horror, and that if he had come without it, the city would without any doubt fall into chaos. Antilles thinks even though the king's appearance is crazy, he seems reasonable, so this should be an amicable meeting. Then she remembers clan leader Moltar, warrior Gia, Atu the Lady of Darkness, and a horse which is actually a bug. Antilles becomes worried if really the meeting will go well and if she will be able to address them as equals, Master Tonokapoli. In the meeting, the king of Myongra is welcomed by them, and they show their gratitude to have him. Pepe shows excitement, saying it's been a while since he has met Takuto. He says he'll give him Dragontan and asks if he has anything in return to give him. Everyone becomes shocked at this statement. Takuto says it's nice meeting Pepe and says he is in high spirits. Pepe says he is looking forward to seeing him again. Takuto says to Pepe that he is not sure of what he will give in return to Pepe and asks Moltar about his thoughts on it. Moltar says that their country is still in a phase of growth and that he is not sure what they can realistically offer. Pepe asks Takuto about the big cart he brought with himself and asks what he has brought for him. Takuto says that it's not that big. Takuto asks Moltar if they can talk about it now, and he agrees, hoping they'll like it. Moltar advises first asking other elders about this proposal and their opinion. Tonokapoli says he has convinced them for now and says that it's the least they could do with respect to their future relationship and the earlier assistance in the defense of Dragontan. Moltar says not to mention the Dragon Vein would still be under joint management. If it were to be transferred to them, would it not just become a burden, he asks, and says that he has heard that Dragontan has become much quieter ever since that conflict. Moltar says he will forgive him for being overly cautious, while Takuto tries to calm Moltar down. Dragontan is a nice place. Moltar laughs and asks for forgiveness for his manner of speech. Takuto says that they understand that Foncaven values this city greatly, and says that that is why he is asking them first what they are looking to gain from this. Tonokapoli says they desire fighting power or equivalent knowledge in weapons technology or warfare. The king says in other words that they are looking for something that is equal in worth to this city. Tonokapoli remains silent. The king Takuto feels that he has maintained the initiative since the beginning, but it seems that Tonokapoli really did intend to try and run over them. It is the unbalanced negotiations in a closed meeting between leaders to make things worse. They still don't see all the cards they are holding. The king thinks where should the conversation go now? Pepe talks and says Takuto's country doesn't have enough people, and says that there are a lot of people in this city. All of them remain silent, looking at Pepe. Pepe says they don't have the fighting power, and Takuto doesn't have the people. Pepe says why not trade for what they both need. Takuto thinks that this conversation will be fruitful after all, and thinks if Pepe knew from the beginning. Takuto says he expects no less from their leader unit, and that it is not that simple. Pepe says that they still need to work out how to manage the Dragon Vein, but they can deal with that later. Tonokapoli asks what does he mean by again, or if he is spouting on his own again. Pepe says Grandma will take care of it. Tonokapoli becomes angry, and Pepe tries to explain that he meant they don't have enough food to feed their people, and that he is trying to do his best, as any other option is no good. The king Takuto laughs, and Moltar asks if they are finished. Takuto says it's sooner than expected, but it's better than wasting time. Pepe shouts and asks Takuto what he is going to give them. Takuto clears his throat and asks if he desires power, and Pepe shouts yes. Someone tells the mayor that the draft proposal for the Learning Institute is ready. Antilles thanks him and asks him to put it in the box. She says that they have confirmed that the Learning Institute will be built, but it is not an urgent matter, so they will leave it for now. Then she asks the man if he can deliver these documents. The man comments that she seems different from usual, almost as if she has accumulated a different presence. Antilles says it is thanks to the changes that have happened across Dragontan. She really did not expect things to change this much, but from here on out, their country belongs to Minogra. She remembers what Takuto said, that they will need to restructure the city personnel on a large scale. Right now, it is not efficient for testing and such, but any successful candidate will assist with city administration. Antilles thinks it has only been a week, but it feels like a lot has changed. She realizes how important those changes were. City clerks are skilled and able to both read and write faster. She has never imagined her work could go this smoothly. The new staff are from larger clans, so they were accepted by default back then, making it obvious what would happen now. Improving social infrastructure, distribution, and general literacy. They will be able to do all of this at the same time. It really makes her appreciate Minogra's support. The man who brought the document says everything is progressing at such a rapid pace that it is hard to keep up, but the biggest change of all is the introduction of guns. Suppressing barbarian attacks was always the largest problem at hand, but now it is almost trivial. Antilles says that when they talked about firepower, she didn't know what to expect, but these weapons are incredible. Even with just half a day of training, women and children are able to take up arms. The effective range is incredibly long, and the destructive power is amazing. Thanks to their demonstration in front of the citizens, those who were doubtful felt a surge of reassurance about the city's safety. Antilles reflects that it is hard to keep track of all the minutiae, but overall, it is definitely a positive change. She decides they will have to step up to keep it all running smoothly. The man shows her the documents and asks if they contain intel on other nations. He mentions he will also check with merchants about what they need to purchase. If they can afford to pay a little more, they could get more items in bulk. After the man leaves, Antilles thinks that she should get back to work. With the transfer in a month's time, she needs to make sure nothing falls through the cracks. She decides to do another pass through everything and then looks at the proposal from Minogra. It is a large and well-made piece of paper, so it is easy to find among everything else. Meanwhile, at Minogra, they have allowed some staff from Dragontan to be maintained as a test. However, Atu is disappointed because she thinks they are not good enough. Takuto asks her if she could phrase it more kindly, but Atu says ignoring what they have taught them is unacceptable. She believes it is a matter of intelligence. Atu states that while they have their hands full rebuilding the city, they should nip this in the bud before it causes more trouble. Takuto acknowledges that acquiring a city has its own problems, but he says this is too much. He is willing to overlook some of these issues because the city was in bad shape prior to this. He says this is only a single city, and considering all the factors, this transfer has gone well. Most importantly, they are not doing this out of malice. Once the buildings are complete, they will have enough presence to investigate any rumors that may spread. That way, they can allocate resources to where they are needed the most. Gia says that, as per the king's order, he has done an investigation into the kingdom of Qualia as well as the land of the elves, Elnar. There has been no notable information from either location. He presents a quick summary of what they have been able to glean. Takuto looks at the report and thinks that there is a real fog of war here. Qualia has always been a popular topic, but all mentions of the northern conflict against the witch have essentially disappeared. Atu suggests that perhaps the witch has been defeated, but Takuto asks if that is the case, then where's the talk about the knight who did not come back from their expedition south? If the northern conflict has been resolved, there should be signs of movement south. While the witch is more of a nickname, he is sure they would likely have strength similar to Atu or the twins during a full moon. If such an enemy was defeated, there should be talk about it. Takuto tells Gia that he would like to hear his opinion about the situation in Qualia. Takuto states that he assumes witches are as strong as hero units. Qualia must have been assaulted by a witch. If that is the case, neighboring nations would know they are next to be attacked, and yet Elnar did not go to their aid. But Takuto says that considering the radio silence and what Emle and others have told him about their spirit powers, it is unlikely that they were behind the barbarian attacks either. It is also possible that they encountered the Demon Lord's armies and fought against them, just as Minogra did. It is equally possible they did not fare as well. Gia is surprised and asks if it is possible they have two armies, but in that event, both nations being taken over would lead to them heading south. Atu mentions that these two nations would already have armies of their own. Takuto responds that, given that their riflemen are not fully developed, it could be a very close call. Gia tells Takuto that from now on, he will train his men without rest. If they have access to the king's energy drink, they will make this happen without fail. Takuto tells him to make sure everyone rests properly, as there are too many problems with a plan like that. He then mentions he has been considering summoning a new hero unit. In their current situation, someone comes to mind. Atu becomes angry and says he should not do this. They would be a complete liability, and she would be the one cleaning up after them. Takuto says he understands they are very competent, but their personality is a concern. He decides to put the idea on hold for now, noting that he is more of a scholar than a defensive powerhouse. Takuto concludes that, while these two countries are maintaining radio silence, Minogra will continue to develop its technology. This will give them a large pool of hero units to summon from. Emle asks if Takuto is sure they can handle this so easily. Takuto reassures everyone to relax and says it is fine. Neither side will move for a while. Moltar asks what he means. Takuto explains that, based on the information Gia has provided, It seems like both nations are preparing for something big. There is no need to rush to come up with a hefty plan. They should make sure their foundation is rock solid first. If something unexpected happens, he wants all of them to trust him. When everyone leaves his office, Takuto reflects on the young man who dealt the final blow to the demon lord. Considering the timing of his appearance, Takuto doubts that he is allied with either of the two nations. In the worst-case scenario, the man represents a third, completely separate force. Takuto admits he still lacks enough information, so he will proceed carefully. Meanwhile, in the kingdom of Qualia, people are happy to see their saint, Soalina, and cheer for her. Arikino says to Soalina that she did a good job showing her face to the masses. She adds that everything is starting to look pretty good, but Soalina's face is stiff, so Arikino gives her some pointers. She asks Soalina to smile, but Soalina asks her to stop, saying it is embarrassing. Arikino cheerfully praises Soalina, but Soalina says that all of this peace is thanks to Arikino. Arikino agrees and says they are really best friends. However, she then notes that Soalina's face has gone stiff again, apologizing for teasing her. Soalina replies that she is still trying to get used to this. From today onwards, Dragontan becomes a part of the nation of Minogra. Pepe shakes hands with Takuto to make this official in a ceremony. After the celebration, Takuto takes a sigh of relief and says that he was so nervous as he never imagined that he would be in front of so many people. He thought his heart was going to stop beating. Atu tries to encourage him and says that it was an amazing speech. Emily whispers in Moltar's ear that all Takuto did was shake hands, but Moltar says it seems that their king was very concerned about this. However, Takuto asks them how the handover went. Moltar says it was splendid. They showcased their country brilliantly. The strong Minogra, forging an alliance with Foncaven for such a grand ceremony, leaves no doubt that everyone knows this is happening. Atu says she is sure word has reached other nations as well, and to prepare for future negotiations, it is beneficial for them to show their strength. She continues to say that the guards are patrolling the town and brain heaters are investigating any suspicious visitors. A country that could bring Dragontan back from the brink will not be taken lightly. In other words, this was a success. They are once again one step closer to their goal. As the discussion is still going, Antilles comes to see Takuto and thanks him for coming to Dragontan and joining the ceremony. Takuto asks if dinner is next on the agenda. Antilles says that is correct. They have invited an early renowned chef, so they should look forward to it. He says they will also set off the gift fireworks at the same time. Atu gets excited to hear this. Takuto says he is also glad that he used emergency production for this, and happily remarks that it looks like his schedule is free until then. He says he will put on his robe and take a look around the town, but Atu stops him and says, the king has too commanding a presence. Takuto sighs and says that he knew people were apprehensive of him, but still, it would have been so nice to go around the festival with Atu. However, Moltar thinks that the townspeople are not used to his presence yet, so he will have to endure a bit longer. Moltar suggests they ask the twins about the festival and let them bring back food from the stalls as well. Takuto likes this idea and agrees. Just then, two girls enter the camp. Moltar is alerted by their unfamiliar faces, but he thinks they do not seem hostile. He wonders if he is overthinking this. No one should be able to get past security. Takuto asks the newcomers who they are. One of the girls laughs and says she cannot believe it was that easy. Everyone is surprised to hear that. Meanwhile, the Saint of the Veil, Fene, says to Soalina that she thought she had been brainwashed by Arikino, but she now thinks she must be mistaken. Arikino asks if Fene is jealous, saying that they are both just doing their best to make the people in this country happy. Fene says she will overlook that. Soalina tries to convince her and says that she understands her concerns, but Arikino has kept every promise she has made since coming here. Fene says if that is the case, then she would like to ask something about the management of the southern states and how they will take down Minogra. She mentions the looming disaster, as foretold by the oracles, that cannot be overlooked, and the proximity of the southern provinces to the cursed plants makes it easy to gather information. She also believes Minogra to be dangerous. However, Fene says she believes it is too soon to make a move. They have only just begun to reap the benefits of their societal changes, so they should not rush to destroy another country. But Soalina asks her if she has heard about their king, the king of ruin, Ira Takuto. According to the Book of Oracles, passed down by the ancient saints from the holy god Arlos, there is a dire warning for the saints of the future, and one such message is about the king of ruin. Fene is skeptical and asks to see the document, saying it must have just been gathering mold if they are claiming it is true. Arikino says she has heard about Minogra, but it sounds like Takuto is a player. Then she asks Soalina if she thinks he is bad news. Soalina tells her that she cannot say anything about it. The oracle is quite antiquated, so it is hard to derive meaning from it. She suggests that perhaps Fene can shed new light on it and says she will show her later. However, Fene says that is not enough to convince her. The nation will eventually deal with Minogra, but to act now is very risky. She then asks if that oracle were to be true, would it necessitate the mobilization of every saint in the nation, as such an action could lead to them being in big trouble. Soalina sheds a tear and says that with Arikino's assistance, they can brainwash witches. Fene understands now that Soalina is most concerned about the other saints. She says she understands breaking free from Qualia with the help of witches, and it is no secret that they are on the road to seceding as a new nation. Such an action will never be forgiven by the Pope and other saints. So to think they wanted the head of the King of Ruin for something like this is shocking. Among the gossip in the city, there is talk of the King of Ruin using witches to do his bidding. And if they were to eliminate them, both Qualia and Elnar would be indebted to them and would have no grounds to oppose them. She continues to say that if Arakino's powers are effective against witches, then they should also be effective against saints. She asks if that is what they are betting on. Arakino confidently says that her master's power is flawless. The system is absolute, with no exceptions. Even her master says he is all for it, but she has a kind of bad feeling about this. So Alina suggests they should probably get to the bottom of that bad feeling and asks why they don't just work together. With the two saints and a witch working together, they would be unstoppable. And that way they could make this country truly happy. They cannot allow evil to spread. Arakino says she gets it and agrees with what Soalina has said. She cheerfully says that if they are destined to bump heads, they should make the first move and take that witch off the playing field. She says it is time to power up with her master's gift, and she is confident they will succeed. She says that God does not roll the dice. They just create any outcome they like, and with Atu's power, conquering the world is a piece of cake. After all, she can just keep rolling until she is guaranteed success. Back to the present, Arakino uses her skills on Atu, and Atu has pierced her tentacle into Takuto's body. Arakino stands back and laughs, saying that this was just too easy. She thanks Atu for taking care of her enemy.